Please grant me one night and bless me with your seed. That's what Helena, the most beautiful woman in the galaxy, has said to our main character. Why? A long time ago she challenged him to a fight. Being trained and prepared for generations, she was sure the win was going to be easy. She attacked multiple times with the most powerful angles known to mankind, each foot position more stretched than the other, every camera angle capturing the strength of that fight. But then all of a sudden, this boy destroyed her whole ship with a finger movement, and then stopped her special attack with his bare hands and asked, "You really want to fight me?" From that day on, every time Helena saw this boy, her heart would shake and legs tremble. And who's this unknown dude who's humiliating one of the galaxy's strongest? See, Earth was uninhabitable for more than 2,000 years, until a group of hunters detected a strange life force into it. That should have been impossible. Robert, this old guy, says that no one's on Earth for a long time. But Latex Leggings Captain replies that the detector doesn't lie. Something is there. The assistant tells them to get ready, and they drop to the ground. The captain asks if this is really the right place. Her assistant tells her they're still a little off. Using energy through her device, she fires a huge hole into the ground and exposes a tunnel far below. Sunja checks the instruments and confirms the target is directly beneath them. Without hesitating, Captain Tangsar Young jumps into the tunnel, where she finds a massive gate with a warning on it. She asks Sunja to read the words. Sunja says it's an ancient language from 2,000 years ago. It says, "They locked me in here. Don't open this unless you want to die." Even with that warning, the girl doesn't care and opens the gate anyway. Inside, they're shocked to find a strange furry man sitting on top of a structure. Curious, the girl walks closer and pokes the tip of his nose. The moment she touches him, she feels something weird, and then he wakes from his long sleep. A massive wave of energy bursts out of him. She tries to hold it back, but she isn't strong enough. The blast is so intense it floods the whole cavern and keeps spreading all the way to their ship in space. The shockwave is so strong it almost destroys the ship. Tang Young is thrown back by the blast and can't tell if Robert survived. The furry man stands up and walks toward her, demanding to know who woke him. She says nothing. Then he announces that he'll kill all of them. Terrified, Tang Sarek sees his arms start to lift and attacks first. She unleashes all her power in one huge explosion that lights up the cavern. The attack drains her completely, but when the smoke clears, he's totally unharmed. He tells her it's his turn and starts floating with a powerful purple aura around him. Tang Young is sure she's about to find out what death feels like. Shaking in fear, she falls backward, then stares in shock as the man suddenly drops unconscious. Robert is alive too. He only pretended to be dead. He guesses the man passed out because he hadn't eaten in all those years. Over the radio, Sunja confirms that he's still alive. After a while, they return to the ship with the mysterious man. The whole crew strongly objects, but the captain stands by her choice. She says a creature like this has to be worth a fortune, maybe more than they can even guess. They start talking about who might buy him and for how much. Then they look back at his unconscious body and wonder what to do once he wakes up. Tang Serjung is sure the celestial silk thread binding him can't be broken. Suddenly they hear a strange noise. The man is waking up and trying to attack, but Sunja calmly offers him food and says sausages are better than fighting. Overjoyed in a way he hasn't felt for centuries, he starts to eat. Watching him devour the food, Tang Serjung asks Sunja how she knew that would work. Sunja says it was obvious a starving beast that hasn't eaten in centuries won't turn down food. After eating, the man introduces himself as Lee Mokshin. He learns they're bounty hunters, not tomb raiders. After being sealed away for 2,000 years, he now hears that humanity nearly wiped itself out in war. The survivors chose to leave Earth and live in space. Tang Young explains that once humanity moved there, all violence was banned, weapons, war, even martial arts. She adds that they use a galactic calendar now. Lee is furious. He can't believe humans live in space and threatens to kill them. Instead of arguing, the group points him to the ship's main window. From there, he sees what Earth has become. Tang Young says it actually looks better after 2,000 years of recovering from humanity's damage. Then she tells him he smells awful, which makes sense after centuries without a bath. So they show him the ship's bathroom and shower. When he comes out cleaned up with a haircut, the crew can barely believe it. He isn't some weird beast or disgusting old man at all. He's an incredibly handsome young man. Tang Young is stunned. It's been a long time since she's seen a guy that good-looking. Later, while Lee stares in awe at space, he suddenly feels someone pinch his cheek. It's Tang Young. She just wants to make sure the man in front of her is really 2,000 years old, though she reminds him his time in hibernation doesn't count. While she keeps questioning him, Robert and Sunja watch and think the whole thing is pretty strange. Soon they arrive at a building built into an asteroid in the Pleiades, a space tavern where people come to relax. Inside is an inn called the Wild Crane, packed with people eating and drinking. At one table, Sunja watches in horror, while the new guy stares back at her like it's no big deal. Then the reason becomes clear. He's stuffing 6 hot dogs into his mouth at once with a giant pile still left. Robert quietly asks how one person can eat that much, and Sunja reminds him, Lee's been starving for 2,000 years. Robert worries he might try to make up for all that missed food at once, and Sunja says, judging by the way he's eating, that might be exactly what's happening. A moment later, he clears the plates and looks at them like he expects more. At the same time, the Wild Crane's keeper, Wang the 18th, talks with Tang Young and asks if she's really looking for a broker. She says yes, and adds that it has to be someone rich and strong because what she wants to sell is insanely valuable. He jokes that it must be something huge to make the usually relaxed Blazing Devil act so worked up. Tang Soo-young asks what a full set of original 2,000-year-old S-rank martial arts books would be worth. That gets Wong's full attention. He keeps smoking as he thinks it over. Later, after she leaves, one of the guards asks if her story could be real, saying originals like that should be worth a fortune. Wong keeps smoking and says the books are worth 0 credits. The guard asks again, shocked because he's sure they'd be priceless. Wong repeats himself, 0? If books like that were real, even one could buy a planet and more. So he figures a mid-level bounty hunter like the Blazing Devil must be lying. He tells the guard to stop dreaming and throw them out. Meanwhile, Tang Soo-young comes back to the table and asks where Sunja went. Robert says she went to get more supplies, then asks how the talk with the innkeeper went. Tang Soo-young lights up and says it went well. Wong promised to contact them if he finds someone. Then something else grabs her attention. Lee is stretched out on a bench with a mountain of empty plates in front of him. She asks Robert if he really ate all that, hoping she's seeing things. Robert says they're lucky he finally stopped. Tang Soo-young grabs her head in regret and says if not for the money, she'd have handled this very differently. Right then, the tavern door slams open. Everyone turns to look. A group of dangerous-looking men walks in. Tang Soo-young immediately reacts, recognizing them as members of the Heavenly Demon Sect. Their leader scans the room through a futuristic lens, and Tang Soo-young identifies him as Sanjeon Muak, leader of the Red Wolf Squad. Robert nods and says the Red Wolf Squad are the sect's inspectors. Since they specialize in tracking, Tang Soo-young figures they must be hunting someone. She quietly warns him not to make eye contact. Lee overhears that and asks if they just said Demon Sect, making Tang Soo-young turn to him in surprise. With hot dog crumbs still on his mouth, he asks if they mean the Heavenly Demon Sect, and from the sound of it, he knows exactly who they are. The captain asks how he even knows the Heavenly Demon Sect after sleeping for thousands of years. Then it hits her. The sect must have already existed back in his time. He looks shocked and asks why nobody is running from the Heavenly Demon Sect. If those people are really from the Demon Sect, everyone should be panicking. Sarah Young asks why they would run. She says the Heavenly Demon Sect has problems. Sure, but it still sees itself as the top orthodox sect in the universe, and honestly, it has the power to back that up. That only confuses him more. He can't believe Demon Sect and Orthodox are being used together. Then a thought hits him. Maybe that strange dream of his really has come true. While checking the room, Sanjeon Muak notices someone suspicious and pauses. A nearby couple turns, thinking he's staring at them, but they aren't his target. He's focused on a man sitting alone with his head down on the table. Sanjeon Muak walks over and orders the man to raise his head so he can inspect him. The system scans his face and shows 52.7 C of internal energy. It also lists his martial arts and flags him as wanted for level 2 robbery and assault. Sanjeon Muak tells him it's his lucky day. They aren't here for him. Still, he orders the man to report to the Martial Alliance at once and turn himself in, warning that he'll suffer if he refuses. Then Sanjeon Muak suddenly stops mid-sentence, eyes widening as he senses something strange. A hand has landed on his head. He goes blank for a second, stunned that someone dared to get that close, let alone touch him. It's our martial arts master, casually patting his head like a cat. He says the young man looks admirable, then adds that his impossible dream really seems to have come true. Everyone in the tavern freezes. No one has ever seen somebody act this boldly around a member of the Demon Sect. Even the card players stop, knowing this can only end badly. The martial arts master keeps praising them, calling them youngsters, and saying they really made his dream come true. He even pulls Sanjin's head into a hug, saying they must have suffered a lot to build the Heavenly Demon Sect into what it is now. The man Sanjeon Muak had been threatening can only stare, completely lost. Still trapped in the hug, Sanjeon Muak asks if this weird newcomer is some kind of foolish child. Robert quickly steps in and says their friend isn't exactly unstable. He just has absolutely no social sense. Sanjeon Muak calls him a brat and says it's his lucky day too. He tries to pull those hands off his head and warns that if he'd sensed even a little martial power from him, he would have torn him apart. Yongjok-san grabs at the hands, but removing them is harder than he expected. He struggles harder, shocked that even with more power, the kid's grip won't budge. Robert notices the Red Wolf leader grunting and asks Tang Soo-young if something's wrong. She admits she isn't sure. Sanjeon Muak puts more force into it and uses his martial technique, but the hand still won't come off. Now he's openly cursing, so he activates his internal energy drive, pushing a technique called Blood Wolf Art to the max. Sanjeon Muak's eye turns completely white as he shifts into another state. He bursts out with a huge wave of power, forcing the new guy back and yells at him to quit playing around. The energy floods through the whole inn and blasts several tables away. The people watching recoil in fear, realizing things are about to explode. No one looks away. They all want to see what happens next. Even his own subordinates are staring from behind with their mouths hanging open. The martial arts master calmly steps back toward his friends, leaving a short gap between himself and Sanjeon Muak. Sanjeon Muak starts to settle down, then notices two things at once. His opponent is totally unharmed, and the inn is a wreck because of him. Tang Soo-young tells Robert the Red Wolf leader may not be in top condition lately, which would explain why he couldn't remove the newcomer's hands. Meanwhile, our guy just stares at Sanjeong Muak. The squad leader scans him and demands to know who he is. He can't understand how someone could stand there untouched after that much power, especially when he meant to kill him instantly. The scan makes it worse. It shows no internal energy, no martial arts data, and no record of him in the database at all. Sanjeong Muak can't figure out how a natural human with zero internal energy is even alive. Before he can think longer, our guy cuts in and says the Bloodwolf demon art he used is a lower-tier move from the heavenly demon sect's body cultivation style. Still, he praises them for keeping it alive this long. Then he points out the real problem. His internal energy and chi are out of sync, so his training method must be flawed. He even tries to reassure him, saying today is his lucky day, because he gets to meet someone who can fix that problem personally. That only makes Sanjeong Muak more annoyed, and he snaps that the guy is insane. He immediately calls up a stream of liquid-like fire to kill the martial arts master on the spot. Next comes a flaming hand technique, the first form of the Red Wolf demon claw. He lashes out fast, but our guy dodges by bending backward without even moving from where he stands. The attack tears past him and wrecks part of the inn, sending people into a panic. Sanjeong Muak keeps attacking with another move, Red Wolf Explosion, but our guy slips past that one too, hands still in his pockets. Now furious, the squad leader unleashes multiple techniques at once, Red Wolf Tremor Wave and Red Wolf Ghost Claw, but the martial arts master dodges them like they're nothing. The veins on Sanjin's head bulge as he throws in all his strength and focus to bring this guy down. He even turns one hand into a demonic claw and wraps himself in a storm of demonic fire, dead set on killing him. Through all of it, our guy keeps watching closely. He can tell Sanjin Moak has enough internal energy and his form is sharp, so he studies every move. Soon he decides the problem lies in how the technique is being used. Meanwhile, Sanjin Moak goes all out, eyes glowing red as he maxes every attack he knows. That finally annoys our guy. He slams a hand down on Sanjin's head and tells him that's enough, crushing it down like a marshmallow. Sanjeong Muak crashes into the floor and our guy coldly says his martial arts are crude. The impact blasts a huge hole into the stone floor like a comet just hit the inn. The rest of the squad can only stare at their leader with stone in his mouth, horrified. The people in the tavern are even more stunned, wide-eyed at how suddenly everything turned. Tang Soo-young and Robert are just as shocked. This is their first time seeing members of the mighty heavenly demon sect get beaten like this. Sanjeong Muak stays planted in the crater, his head buried in the space he made on impact. Our guy stands over him with his hands still in his pockets and says, he learned those skills like a parrot. Real martial arts aren't about copying moves, they're about changing them and making them your own. After correcting him, he tells Sanjin Muak to get up and attack again if he understands. Sanjin Muak doesn't move, and the martial arts master angrily tells him to stand up. The rest of the Red Wolf squad just stare, speechless, trying to process what they just saw. Then they snap and demand to know how he dared attack their platoon leader. Calling him a brat, they rush in to kill him. They charge with weapons drawn and martial arts activated, while the MC just stands there with his hands in his pockets. A little later, the story jumps to the 32nd district of the Heavenly Demon Sect. Every sect member who was in the tavern is now injured, still lying inside with handprints pressed into their skulls. The district commander watches it all on a screen, completely stunned. A robot scans the unconscious Sanjeong Muak and lifts his eyelids to check if he's alive. Blood runs from his nose and mouth, and he's missing a few teeth. Sanjeong Muak and the others are carried away on stretchers, while more sect members seal off the area so nobody crosses into the scene. Commander Jong Retak keeps watching and can only say one thing: this is unbelievable. A district elder, Joe Chunrock, says they were lucky. The men only suffered heavy bruises and none of them are in danger of dying. Jong can't believe that. To him, they look so badly wrecked they should all need surgery. What bothers him most is that an unknown stranger did this. Looking at the newcomer's photo, he seems harmless, but they have no idea he's carrying 2,000 years of skill and strength. Jong asks again if one random outsider really reduced the Red Wolf platoon to this state. Then he asks whether this man truly has no record in the Martial Alliance database. Joe confirms the stranger doesn't, though his companions do. Joe explains that the others belong to a bounty hunter group called the Cess Devil. They usually deal with small B-class criminals or weaker. He adds that their leader is Sar Young, the Blazing Devil. Meanwhile, aboard the Cess Devil aircraft, the newcomer sits at the table with a napkin tucked in and utensils ready, clearly waiting for food. Across from him, Sar Young and Robert just stare, unsure what to ask first. Back in the Heavenly Demon District, Joe wants more on Sar Young. Joe says she's a famous bounty hunter who moves between the orthodox and unorthodox sides. He also reports that her group left the Wild Crane Inn, but they can still be tracked. Joe asks if they should send people after them. Joken says no, he'll deal with it himself. Joe can only stare, confused by what that means. After that, he bows and leaves, letting the commander think. Joken then presses a button and decides to contact an ally. The system starts connecting the call on the large screen. He waits quietly for someone to answer. Soon a priest-like man appears. Kim Sung-bom, leader of the Greenwood group, smiling at him. Kim greets him warmly, says it's been a while, and asks if Joken has a request. Joke only frowns and stays silent for a moment. Elsewhere, Rang stands by the aircraft window looking out and trying to clear her mind. Back in the 32nd district, Joan seems to have explained the situation, and Kim asks if he wants Greenwood to take care of it. At the same time, the S-Devil aircraft keeps speeding through space. Inside, Lee starts getting annoyed that the food still hasn't arrived. Rang and Robert remain seated across from him, watching in silence. They keep staring while Sunja grills the hot dogs and somehow nobody says a thing. Robert finally leans toward the captain and quietly asks if she's really as scared as he is. Irritated, Rang asks what he's even talking about. He reminds her they both saw what happened. Sanjo Muak and the Red Wolf platoon were all A-rank martial artists, and Lee dropped them with one strike of his hand. That single move also smashed through Sanjin's men, sending them flying and knocking teeth everywhere. Robert still remembers them getting blasted away like insects, with one of them crashing into a pillar. Young stays quiet, then says she could have beaten them too if she got serious, since they were the bottom tier of A-rank. Robert admits he couldn't do much. Even risking his life, he thinks he would have only managed to scratch them. He points out that the protagonist swatted them aside like flies without any effort. Tired of hearing it, Young walks over to the protagonist. She slams her hands on the table, and he looks up at her like he's wondering what she wants now. In a softer voice, she says they need to talk. He just keeps staring. The silence drags on until he finally answers, saying he'll talk after he eats. Rang sits down across from him, folds her arms and says they talk first. Then bluntly, she asks his name. Robert quickly tells her to use honorifics, but she ignores him, asks if Lee is deaf, and demands his name again. Just then, Sun Jiao arrives with a big plate of freshly grilled hot dogs, and MC's focus shifts instantly. The captain stops him right there. He's not eating until they're done, and she wants his name now. He only stares back without answering. Trying to calm things down, Robert whispers that even people say not to bother a dog while it's eating, so maybe they should let him eat first. Ryong isn't convinced. At last, he answers, his name is Lee Meg Jin. Ryong asks who he is and what he used to do. Trying to understand how he pulled all that off, the protagonist just keeps looking at her, still holding his knife and fork. She waits for an answer, and the two end up locked in a silent stare. Finally, MC speaks and says he's a heavenly demon. Not just any heavenly demon, but a supreme heavenly demon. Ryong repeats it in disbelief, wondering if he really called himself that. She thinks he's talking nonsense and jokes that maybe the hot dogs went bad if she heard him right. Suddenly, alarms start blaring through the aircraft and warning lights flash on. Everyone goes on alert, while a nearby ship reports that the target has been found. Sun Jiao rushes to the system and says someone close by has locked onto them. Ryong gets up to check and groans that the heavenly demon sect must be coming after them for what Lee did to the Red Wolf platoon. She realizes they're in serious trouble. But Sun Jiao checks again and says it isn't the heavenly demon sect. A huge ship marked with a skull appears, and Sun Jiao identifies the attackers as Greenwood. Outside, Greenwood aircraft close in and surround the Sept Devil ship. Inside one of those ships, Kim is informed that the S-Devil craft has been confirmed as the paid target. Kim, leader of Greenwood's Galaxy Division and known as the Black Tiger of the Crescent Moon, watches in silence. A military captain asks if they should fire the EMP capture round. Instead, Kim asks if they've confirmed these people are bounty hunters. The captain says yes. They mostly work on the edge of the galaxy, and their leader is the Blazing Devil, Sire Jung. Kim finds that suspicious. Why would the Heavenly Demon sect care about such a small group? He thinks back to his talk with Yang, who offered him this job. Kim had gladly accepted the bounty and asked what counted as mission success and what to do after capturing the targets. But Yang told him not to capture them at all. He wanted them erased completely. That shocked Kim, and he asked if Yang meant killing the targets. Back in the present, Kim says the whole thing feels wrong and suspects something else is going on. The Heavenly Demon sect is better at killing than Greenwood, so if they hired outsiders, there has to be a reason. The captain hears that and grows just as uneasy. After thinking it over, Kim says there may be a trap waiting for them inside the Sept Devil ship. Inside that ship, Sir Yang looks out and sees the fleet closing in around them. She says Greenwood are just bandits here to rob them, but Robert doesn't buy that. He points out that no one would send a fleet this big just to rob people as broke as them. There'd be almost no profit. Sir Yang winces at being called poor, though she admits he has a point. Still, she brushes it off, calls Greenwood filthy thieves, and says she'll beat them and throw them out if they try anything. Robert just watches her make bold claims while Lee admires the ships around them. Sun Jiao finally cuts in and says this is far more serious. These ships are part of Greenwood's Galaxy Division, and it looks like a whole division came to capture them. That shocks Sir Yang, and she asks if their leader Kim came too. Meanwhile, he keeps watching the scans and casually comments on how cool it all looks. Sir Yang thinks of the Black Tiger Kim Sung-bom and admits even she can't beat him easily. Robert bluntly says she can't beat him at all. She'd die in 3 moves. Annoyed, Sir Yang argues it's not that hopeless, and says she might still have a chance if she really tried. Robert cuts her off and tells her to forget that. He says they should surrender fast and not panic, since they don't have much to lose. The captain can only frown after having her confidence crushed. Then she pulls herself together and starts giving orders. She says Greenwood will probably fire an EMP round first to shut down their ship and leave them helpless. Then they'll come aboard armed, and she's expecting that too. She finishes by saying they can search the ship and if they want, take any extra supplies the crew doesn't need. Robert asks how that's any different from surrendering, and she snaps at him to do as he's told. Then she walks over to Lee, who's still staring up in awe, and warns him not to panic when the EMP hits, since the ship will shake a bit. Tang Soo-young adds that the EMP isn't meant to destroy anything. Space laws don't allow them to use real ship weapons, and she smugly says the protagonist clearly didn't know that. She tells him not to interfere, they'll leave after taking what they want. The only problem is if someone starts a fight and things get out of hand. Tang Soo-young then asks Sunja if they have a lock and tells everyone to brace for the EMP shot. But Sunja suddenly shouts that it isn't an EMP round, it's a photon cannon, and the system starts blasting a danger warning. That makes Tang Soo-young spin around in shock. Sunja says it's a ship-killing photon cannon, so the enemy isn't trying to capture them, they're trying to wipe them out. Tang Soo-young goes stiff and says this is insane. Meanwhile, back on the Greenwood ship, the captain warns Kim that this breaks space law and could bring trouble later. He says it would be smarter to capture the targets first, then quietly get rid of them. But the division leader refuses. He says he has a bad feeling and wants the ship blown apart now. If it causes problems, they'll pin it on the client, the Heavenly Demon Sect. Kim orders the cannons fired as soon as they're ready. Inside the Zelf's Devil ship, Tang Soo-young asks if they can warp away, but Sunja says no, they're boxed in on every side. She then asks about the shields and Sunja admits they won't work because parts of the ship were sold to cover living costs. The captain freezes in horror, no longer knowing what to do. A moment ago she had a plan, now they're about to be blown to pieces. On the Greenwood ship, the captain reports that the photon cannon is fully charged. Kim gives the order to fire. The cannon launches at the S-Devil crew, who can only wait as the blast rushes toward them. Tang Soo-young and Sunja stare at it. Certain death is coming. Robert screams at the top of his lungs, while Lee just keeps watching, still not fully getting what's happening. Then the photon cannon hits and explodes, making it look like this is the end of the bounty hunters. Kim watches from his ship as the blast tears through space. The flash is so huge its light reaches his ship. Then his eyes widen when he notices something strange. Once the flames fade, the S-Devil ship is still there, completely unharmed. It keeps flying through the attack like the blast never touched it. A much bigger round ship has appeared in front of it, taking the photon cannon head-on. It slipped in at the last second and fully blocked Greenwood's attack. A woman in white armor holding a white spear stands on top of the new ship. Tang Soo-young clings to Sunja and asks what she's looking at. Kim goes pale when he recognizes the woman, the 8-foot fighting ghost. Elena stands there with her spear behind her, staring straight at the Greenwood fleet. Inside the S-Devil ship, Lee looks outside in shock at what's happening. Next to him, Robert and Tang Soo-young stay glued to the window, trying to figure out how they survived. Elena keeps her back to them and faces Greenwood, ready to block another attack. It's one woman and one ship against around a dozen ships, yet nobody dares make a move. Kim tenses up, wondering why Elena showed up here. She just stares back at him, waiting to see what he'll do next. The Greenwood captain says Elena is using a terraformation-grade shield. They can break it by maxing out the photon cannon, and he asks if they should recharge. Kim says no. Starting a space war over one cockroach isn't worth it, especially against someone this dangerous. Instead, he orders them to prepare teleportation so he can speak with her. As they set it up, he keeps wondering why this monster came here out of nowhere. Meanwhile, Robert explains that Elena, the 8-foot fighting ghost, is an S-class bounty hunter, so wild that even major sect leaders stay away from her. He can't figure out why she's here, and Tang Soo-young says she doesn't know either. But Elena clearly just saved their lives. If she hadn't stopped that photon cannon, they'd be atoms by now. A little later, Kim teleports onto Elena's ship to try having a calm talk. He greets her as Sister Elena and says, "It's been a long time." Elena doesn't answer. She just stares at him in silence, like she barely remembers him. Kim asks if she forgot him, then introduces himself as her 55th younger brother. He reminds her they met at their mother's birthday 2 years ago, but Elena tells him to get lost. That hits his pride, but he holds himself back. So he introduces himself again, this time as the leader of Greenwood's Galaxy Division, making it clear he's not here to joke around. Kim says that rejecting him is the same as rejecting all of Greenwood, and he can't let that slide. Elena says nothing. She just keeps staring and activates her martial art, ready to fight. Robert notices and says it looks like they're about to throw down. Tang Soo-young says Greenwood won't have an easy time. Elena is not someone people can touch easily. She adds that Elena alone is bad enough, but things could get even worse if her mother Lioness shows up too. Still watching closely, Robert asks what she means by Mother Lioness. Realizing things are going south, Kim jokes that Elena hasn't changed. She still uses her fists to talk. He lifts his hands and says he surrenders, trying to calm things down. He tells her to relax because he doesn't want to fight, but Elena stays in her battle stance. Kim thinks this job isn't worth taking losses over, so he suggests settling it peacefully and asks why she stepped in. The Black Tiger asks if the several bounty hunters are her targets and says Greenwood will back off if their goals overlap. Elena turns away and walks toward the Asura ship, telling Kim to get lost one more time. Kim frowns, knowing there's no point talking to her, and keeps wondering why she came for something so pointless. Meanwhile, the Asura crew keeps watching the whole thing from their window. Elena approaches and opens a comm line ordering them to hand over what they have or die. Her voice booms through the ship speakers, and everyone hears it. Tangsari Young looks confused and wonders what is happening now. Robert starts panicking, asking why Elena wants to rob them too when they don't own anything valuable. He even asks the captain if she hid something expensive on the ship without telling them, then answers himself in his own panic. He keeps saying there's nothing here worth an S-rank bounty hunter's attention. Then Lee's eyes suddenly widen. Robert and Tangsari Young instantly look at MC because he's the only thing on this ship that might matter to someone like Elena. He keeps staring out the window. Tangsari Young asks if he knows Elena, then even jokes that maybe they had a messy romance before he ran off. Lee tells them Elena isn't here for him. That only confuses Tangsari Young more. The protagonist turns and says Elena is probably here because of the child behind them. They spin around, but no one is there, leaving them completely confused. The captain asks what he's talking about when there's nobody there. MC tells the child to come out and says there's nothing to be scared of. For a moment, nothing changes. Then a young girl slowly starts appearing out of thin air, with her head showing up first. The bounty hunters are stunned and turn to stare at her. A moment later, she fully appears inside the ship. Tangsari Young is shocked to see this random girl, and Robert totally freaks out. The girl only looks at them and stays silent. Tangsari Young grabs Lee and demands to know who this little girl is and where she came from. He says she followed them from the inn. He sensed her presence even without seeing a body, but let her stay. He adds that she hid her breathing really well, an impressive trick. Then the girl remains silent. Sunja says it isn't a stealth technique at all. The girl is using a stealth ring to hide herself. She explains that the ring is expensive, quantum tech. The captain doesn't care how pricey it is. She marches up to the girl and demands to know who she is, why she snuck aboard, and what she wants. The girl nervously introduces herself as Zhonghua Ren, but the captain cuts her off and says she didn't ask for a name. Instead, she asks if the people outside are hunting her, if she's their target. Nearly in tears, Hua Ren says they're probably after her. Outside, Elena keeps waiting for an answer. Hua Ren says that as long as she's alive, they won't stop coming for her. Robert suddenly freaks out when he hears the girl's name is Hua Shrin, catching the captain off guard. Still stunned, she asks if he knows her. He goes full fangirl and says of course he does. Hua Shrin is the main singer of a group called the Pernosian. Sarah Jung gives him a blank look and asks who the Pernosians even are. Clearly, they aren't as famous as Robert thinks. Robert insists they're the hottest rookie idol duo in the galaxy. He brings up their song Dynamite Dudado, then reminds her it's the group he always plays, the one she dances to. He rushes to look her up online, confirms it's really her, and blurts out that she's even prettier in real life. Then he keeps reading her profile like a total weirdo. She's from Manhwa, 166 centimeters tall, 47 kilos, blood type AB, and EFSP, and allergic to cats. Elena finally loses patience and warns them over comms that this is their last chance. They have 10 minutes to hand over whoever they're hiding. She makes it even clearer, give the girl up or everyone dies. That snaps them back to reality. They stop messing around and remember Elena has them cornered. Holding back tears, Robert asks Miss Wazrim Ryan why all these people are after her. Sarah Jung stays quiet for a moment, realizing what kind of choice they have to make. Then she tells Robert it doesn't matter, they have no choice but to hand the girl over. She makes it clear to Wazrim that she boarded their ship without permission and has nothing to do with them. Even so, the captain reluctantly says she has to leave before she gets them all dragged into this. Robert immediately protests, clearly not okay with giving her up. Sarah Jung turns away and says the decision is final. She's the captain. Hua Ryan says nothing. She just stares, knowing they're about to send her back to the people chasing her. After they place Hua Ryan in the release chute, Robert tells the captain, this feels wrong, especially since she's the main singer of Pernodian. Sarah Jung says they can't protect her. Greenwood alone is bad enough, and Elena is on a whole different level. She explains that even if they resist, Hua Rin's fate probably won't change. They'll just die with her. With obvious reluctance, Sarah Jung presses the red button. As the door starts opening, she admits to Robert that this hurts her too, but there's no other option. Hua Rin waits in silence while the system announces that the lock has been released and the gate is opening. She steels herself for whatever comes next. Then a hand suddenly lands on her shoulder. Startled, she turns and sees Lee beside her, wearing that same strange look he gets when things turn insane. He reminds her that he told her not to worry. She can only stare, shocked that he came with her while Elena is waiting outside. Looking through the glass, Sarah Jung sees the protagonist standing with Hua Rin and panics, wondering when he got in there. Robert is just as shocked. Sarah Jung rushes to shut the gate, baffled by how reckless Lee is. Robert stops her and says they should wait. MC is strong enough that he might even beat Elena. Sarah Jung calls him crazy. They're in space and he doesn't even have a shield, so he shouldn't be able to breathe. As the gate opens, it looks like space itself will kill him before Elena can. The captain orders Sunja to close the gate right away. Sunja looks surprised and says it's already too late. Stunned, Sarah Jung moves to the window. There, she sees Lee and Hua Rin already outside, drifting through space. Horror spreads across her face. She knew the protagonist was reckless, but she still can't believe he actually went out there. Outside, MC and Hua Rin move toward Elena's ship. Hua Rin grips herself tight, bracing for what waits ahead while he keeps one hand on her shoulder. She thanks him for coming with her, then warns him that the people on that ship are powerful martial artists. But when she looks at him, she notices his bloodshot eyes and blank stare. Lee can't breathe. He starts choking, trying to hold on with what little air he has left. Alarmed, Hua Rin asks what's wrong, then realizes the truth and begs him not to say he came out here without a shield. The protagonist starts coughing and flailing, trying to get back to the ship. It doesn't work. Hua Rin stares in shock as she realizes her would-be savior is about to die. He keeps struggling to return, but gets nowhere, and Hua Rin has no idea how to help. From her ship, Elena watches the two of them in silence. Someone yells at Lee that it's 300 degrees outside and the pressure will destroy his organs in seconds, asking why he went out there with no shield at all. At this point, it's obvious MC knows absolutely nothing about surviving in space. He keeps coughing, turning purple as he waves his arms wildly, still trying to get back. His body swells, his eyes redden, and he looks seconds away from bursting. Then his eyelids start to close, like he's finally blacking out from lack of oxygen. Suddenly, the person shouting at him grabs his face with both hands. It's Saechri Young. She came out herself to save him. She quickly puts a nano shield over his face and activates it so he can breathe. When he still doesn't move, she keeps yelling at him to wake up and breathe. As he stays limp, fear creeps in, and she asks what he's doing and why he isn't answering. Then Lee suddenly opens his eyes. Saechri Young lets out a breath of relief. She says she thought he was dead and calls him a bastard. He says she's worrying for nothing. He's the supreme being of heaven and earth, and nothing in this world can threaten his life. Cedric just stares, shocked that's his response. The protagonist then looks toward Elena's ship and sees Hua Rin already there. Walking up to Elena, he asks Cedric Jung how to get over to that ship. Back inside, Robert is relieved to see Lee survived and glad Cedric Jung reached him in time. Sunja bluntly says she was actually late. Even a top master shouldn't last a full minute in space without a shield. Yet MC endured 6 minutes and 13 seconds, and somehow all his organs still look normal. As Saechri Young helps him over, Hua Rin is surprised to see him again. Sunja tells Robert that he has gone far beyond normal human limits. On Elena's ship, Elena waits for Hua Rin and the others, while Kim still stands behind her despite being told to leave. The protagonist takes the front. Hua Rin stands a little behind him, and Saechri Young stays farther back. Elena says nothing, only staring at them while Saechri Young watches her carefully. One look is enough for Saechri Young to tell Elena's aura is terrifying. She really does live up to her name as a battle maniac. Then she notices Kim behind Elena and realizes the situation is even worse with Greenwood here too. She tells Lee not to start anything, steps forward and says she'll handle this herself. Forcing a smile, she greets Elena and awkwardly asks if she's been well. She keeps going, saying she's heard a lot about them, then introduces herself as Senrai Young, leader of the S-Devils, also called the Blazing Devils. Elena just stares back, clearly having no idea who she is. Greenwood stays silent too. Meanwhile, Hua Rin grabs Lee's hand out of fear. Feeling it, MC glances back at her over his shoulder. She's completely terrified, like she's barely even breathing. He tells her she doesn't need to be afraid. He's here with her. Hua Rin says Elena isn't human, clearly shaken by what she can do. She explains that Elena has traveled the world since childhood, hunting worthy opponents. No one who met her has survived, and she even built a spaceship just to keep traveling and fighting. Lee sounds impressed. He calls Elena a remarkable child, someone young who devoted her whole life to martial arts, making her a rare talent. Hua Rin says that's not what she meant. She's trying to warn him that Elena is truly dangerous. Meanwhile, Senrai Young keeps smiling and says that as people from the Central Plane, they should settle this calmly. Elena answers by firing a deadly wave and says she speaks with her weapon. The blast tears past Senrai Young's spot, races down the ship, and ends in a huge explosion. It looks like Elena swung her spear to wipe Senrai Young out right away. She clearly has no patience for talking. Her blue eyes glow as she waits for the smoke to clear and reveal Senrai Young's body. Elena stays frozen in place, still watching the smoke. The smoke hangs there because that move wasn't meant as a warning. It was meant to kill anything in its path. Then Senrai Young drops back down. She was fast enough to avoid the energy wave entirely. Senrai Young complains that she had just suggested talking, so why did Elena suddenly start swinging? From the back, Kim admits to himself that Senrai Young is pretty impressive. Even if Elena didn't use full power, that attack was still hard to dodge. Senrai Young glares, waiting for an answer. Elena asks for her name again, then says she would have been better off not dodging. The 8-foot fighting demon begins to change and activates her martial skill. Kim figures Senrai Young should know better. Elena is like a mad scorpion, and the more you provoke her, the worse your death will be. Just then, a hiccup comes from the smoke behind them, catching Senrai Young off guard. The hiccup keeps going, and Kim looks over to find the source. It's Hua Rin. The smoke is making her choke, so Lee pats her back to help. He tells her not to panic over something this small, and calls Elena's attack a childish trick. Kim is stunned by what he's seeing, and can't understand how it's possible. The protagonist keeps patting Hua Rin's back, saying the attack looked flashy but was really just a loud firecracker. He tells her not to be scared by empty noise. Kim figures MC must have been right in the attack's path, yet he's completely unharmed, while Elena keeps powering up. MC just helps Hua Rin steady her breathing and ignores the fight. Elena keeps staring at them as her internal energy rises higher. Then she climbs to another level, and bright pink lightning starts pouring off her body. He still pays her no attention and focuses on stopping Hua Rin's hiccups. That only confuses Elena more, and she stares at him in silence. Once Hua-rin settles down, the protagonist steps forward and addresses Elena like a child. Sen-Rai-young gets annoyed and reminds him she told him not to interfere. Ignoring that, Lee asks Elena why she's here. If this is about Hua-rin, she should speak to him instead. Kim tries to scan MC, but nothing comes up, no identity, no data, not even an internal energy drive. At the same time, MC makes it clear that Hua-rin is under his protection, so any issue with her goes through him. The Black Tiger is shocked. No ID and no drive. He starts wondering if he is some nameless natural from the outskirts. The protagonist goes on, saying that if Elena has no business here, she should leave, and he casually waves her off. As he says that, a bright light suddenly flares up in front of them. Something shining like a star appears on the radar. The glow is so intense that Se-Rai-young, Kim, and Hua-rin all turn toward it. The light bursts across the ship, then calls down a streak of blue lightning onto the top of it, a clear display of overwhelming power. At the center of it, Lee catches Elena's glowing spear with one hand. He stops it barehanded, and it doesn't hurt him at all. Elena is still gripping the spear, showing that this was a direct attack in answer to his order to leave. With one hand in his pocket and the other holding her spear, MC asks if she came here to fight him. Kim is nearly speechless. He can't believe someone blocked a strike from Elena with just a palm, especially someone with no internal energy. Lee calmly studies her technique and points out how strange it is to use Xian Diamond Kang's radiant sword style with a spear while powering it with Shaolin's great Brahma divine art. Then he asks how someone so young already has internal energy beyond 3 cycles. He wonders if she had some lucky encounter. As he speaks, Elena pushes her internal energy drive past 90% and even more lightning spills from her body. The protagonist is genuinely surprised. Reaching 3 cycles at her age is already shocking. And now she's switching to Wudong's red sun art. He finally takes both hands out of his pockets and watches her push the drive even harder, up to 95%. Kim can only stare and wonder whether Elena was always this strong or if something has changed. Lee stays quiet, watching how far she intends to take this. He asks if she's really going all out, and his own martial energy starts to rise as his hands glow with heat. Suddenly, the ring on Elena's hand begins to shine and vibrate. She keeps her stance and pours in more energy, while the ring glows brighter. Then the ring gives off a warning sound, and Elena is visibly shaken because that sound means danger. We cut to the past, where Elena speaks with her mother. Her mother says she won't stop her from leaving and chasing her dream. Kneeling before her, Elena listens as her mother says she may fight to grow stronger, but she must not get herself killed. Her mother goes on to say Elena is already powerful. In the whole world, fewer than 10 martial artists can even hurt her, and even they shouldn't be able to push her to death's door. Reaching toward her, Elena's mother tells her to never forget who she is. Then she places a ring on Elena's finger and says there is one rule she must obey if she wants to leave home. If the ring ever sounds, Elena must run no matter what. That warning means her opponent is far beyond her, and if she ignores it, she will die. Back in the present, the fighting demon goes still in shock as the meaning of the ring hits her. She stares at Lee, who looks like nothing more than a weak young boy. Even so, she refuses to retreat, and painful memories start rising up. She remembers cruel voices from when she was younger, people mocking her, asking why she was hesitating, telling her to run, know her place, and hide if she wanted to live. Those memories take her back to childhood, standing among her mother's many children while they taunted her. She hears her mother telling her to greet them as her siblings. Her mother said they all had different fathers, but the same mother. She remembers standing there alone as her mother said they should stay close because they shared her blood. Then the other children sneered and asked what her name was again. Back in the present, Elena chooses to fight to the bitter end. She forces her energy drive from 98% to 100, then 110. She pushes it all the way to 120, something that shouldn't even be possible. Power floods out of her, and the whole ship nearly catches fire. Lee frowns, now clearly more concerned by how far she's pushing herself. Se-Ryan watches in surprise too. Kim is just as stunned. MC waits and lets her finish whatever she's becoming. Her suit transforms into something new, making her look almost like a panther. Her hands turn unnatural, like she's become a high-level killing beast. Lee mutters that he's never seen anything like this. A transformation through transcendental awakening is new even to him, and he realizes martial arts have changed a lot over time. While he's thinking, Elena launches straight at him. He feels martial arts may have advanced a little too much, but he still doesn't move. He stands there with his hands in his pockets until Elena closes the gap and swings. He slips past the strike with ease and notes that the move is the chaotic storm sword of the AIM sect. She follows with a fiery spiral attack and he dodges again, identifying it as Kunlun's sun and moon twin wheels. Elena grows furious and raises her output to 125. She unleashes several attacks at once, but Lee still avoids them all while naming each one the sun-piercing spear and the falling sunblade from Xian Diamond Kang's sect. Elena pushes even higher, reaching 140, and sends a twisting fire tornado at the protagonist. He simply leans back and avoids it, calmly recognizing the moves as the beggar's sect's dog-beating stick and drunken 8 immortal steps. Still crouched, MC frowns. He's shocked that she also mixed in the esoteric sect's 4,000 red needles. Not slowing down at all, Elena jumps to 170. She charges with twin iron claws and explosive force in both hands, while he keeps retreating and dodging, staying on defense. Finally, he yells that enough is enough and swings a hand forward. A heavy blast of fire pours out and shoots straight at Elena as she leaps in. The hit triggers a huge explosion that swallows the whole ship, making it seem like no one could survive. As thick smoke fills the area, Lee waits to see what happened to Elena. Then something moves inside the smoke and catches his attention. Even Kim is shaken by what appears like he's never seen anything this strange before. Yang Hua-rin and Seo-jung stare in the same disbelief. It's Elena, but now she has around 8 arms, each holding a weapon, floating in the air with 8 glowing swords. She looks almost like a god of war. A second later, she flies at Lee, trying to strike him from every angle. Now she's at 190, and still not stopping. She brings down a blazing overhead attack, but the protagonist only watches her. Elena keeps coming, fully armored now, looking less and less human. MC looks up at her and frowns, wishing she would stop before going too far. But she does the opposite and rushes in even faster. He admits her talent is incredible, yet she's already crossed the line. As she charges, Lee realizes her awakening is dragging out all her wounds and desires. She's being swallowed by herself. Watching her close in, he can tell she's carrying far too many inner demons. Power suddenly bursts into his hand. He thinks that if she pushes any farther, he'll have to kill her to stop her. Behind him, Hua-rin watches Elena rush in. A strange heavenly sword forms in the protagonist's hand, and he reminds himself he promised to protect Hua-rin. Seryong and Kim are stunned when they realize Lee is holding a heart sword. Elena doesn't care and keeps charging, bent on killing him. It feels like only one of them will walk away. Just before she reaches him, MC swings in anger and tells her to stop. The burst of power is enormous, so bright it nearly blinds everyone watching. Even Robert can barely see through the light. From where he is, he watches an explosion erupt over Elena's ship. The heart sword's impact is so destructive that it tears the ship into several pieces. The whole ship explodes in space before the Greenwood fleet, shining from afar like a star. From the main Greenwood ship, the captain stares in horror at the place where his boss was. The blast was so violent, there seemed to be no way Kim could have survived. Then he hears a cough nearby. Kim had teleported back at the last second, just before the ship blew apart. Bloody in panic, Kim calls out Lord Cheju's name and says he's not dead. Cheju moves in to help him stand. Leaning against a wall, Kim looks out at the shattered remains of the ship. He says if he'd teleported even 0.1 seconds later, he would have been ripped apart. Flames still spread through space as wreckage drifts around. Standing on a large broken piece of Elena's ship, Sikryung asks Lee if he's crazy. They could have been killed. She snaps that people stranded at sea don't burn their own ship just because they're mad, and says he should have held back. Blood at his mouth, he struggles to answer, and says restraint wasn't an option. Seeing the blood, Cedric Rumney rushes over and asks if he's hurt. Lee keeps looking upward, and says Elena's power was stronger than he expected. Cedric Rung follows his gaze, and realizes what he's staring at. Elena's naked body and broken weapon are drifting through space among the wreckage. The captain asks if she's dead since she's floating there without moving. Still watching Elena, the protagonist says she's not dead yet. Then a strange woman appears and takes Elena's unconscious body. MC realizes the sword strike didn't kill the 8-foot ghost, because this woman protected her with greater power than he expected. The woman looks at Elena with pity and covers her body. She keeps staring at Elena in silence, full of sorrow. Then light from a huge ship above them shines down, and the woman carries the 8-foot fighting ghost away. Tang Seo-young recognizes her at once as the West Heaven Sword matron, and Kim realizes she's his mother, the same one who gave Elena the ring she ignored. The West Heaven Sword matron takes Elena into her ship without saying a word to anyone. Lee only stares after her in surprise, still holding the heart sword. Inside the West Heaven Sword matron's ship is a pool of green liquid. Elena's unconscious body floats inside it, and the liquid seems meant to heal her injuries. Her mother stands in front of the container, waiting for Elena to wake up. The worry on her face is clear as she keeps watching Elena inside the tube. Soon Kim, Tang Seo-young, Yang Hua-rin, and Lee appear behind her, apparently called in for a talk. Kim bows to his mother at once. At the same time, Tang Seo-young holds Hua-rin's hand, trying to calm her fear. Kim says he didn't know she was coming and asks her to punish him for failing in loyalty and filial duty. She cuts him off at once, saying this is not a place for him to step into. Her tone makes it clear little children like him shouldn't speak. She tells him to act like he isn't there, and Kim silently endures it from his mother. Then she approaches Lee, gives a respectful greeting, and introduces herself as the West Heaven Sword matron. Kim is stunned to see his mother showing him respect, and Tang Seo-young is just as shocked to see her act this courteous at all. The West Heaven Sword matron apologizes for breaking the dueling code by stepping into their fight, saying family feeling drove her to it. She even offers to cut off her arm if he wants, but the protagonist says there's no need for that. He asks if Elena is her daughter and notes that Elena is in a tube. Tang Seo-young leans in and whispers that he's speaking to the West Heaven Sword matron, so he should show more respect. She confirms Elena is her daughter. Lee answers that if so, it's fine. Family comes before the dueling code. Around them are many other empty tubes like Elena's. Tang Seo-young whispers again, begging him to speak politely because this woman is one of the 5 immortals. She adds that the West Heaven Sword matron's temper is so terrible she could split someone in 2 with a glare. Then something shocks her so badly that she stops talking. The West Heaven Sword matron drops to her knees before Lee, leaving Sibur Triyong stunned. Outside, ships from the 72 strongholds of Greenwood still wait for Kim. Later, on top of her ship, the West Heaven Sword matron speaks privately with MC. She says Elena still hasn't regained consciousness, so she doesn't know exactly why she attacked their ship or Hua Rin. She adds that Elena had passed through Mount Hua before coming here, so she was likely hired there by someone to track down Hua Rin. He only stares out into space and says nothing. The West Heaven Sword matron says she recognized the art he used, the demon heart Asura Buddha sword, and addresses him as a revered master. Then she asks if he has any ties to the heavenly demon sect. Lee doesn't answer clearly. He says he doesn't know. There was once a deep link, but too much time has passed to be sure. Now, he goes on to say that time wears down even the strongest bonds like rust on iron. Nearby, Hua Rin and Seryong wait in another part of the ship. The protagonist adds that time can even erase ties dearer than life itself, while Kim listens in secretly from inside the ship. The West Heaven Sword matron simply studies him, unable to fully understand him. To herself, she admits he truly is extraordinary. His chi and martial arts are flawless, with no sign of being forced or fake. She can't understand it. Reaching that level should have only been possible in the golden age of martial arts. Kim keeps staring off into the distance, ignoring her, and she wonders if this young-looking man is using some kind of age-reversing art. Breaking the silence, she respectfully asks Lee if she may make a request. MC reads right through her and asks if she wants a real duel. She's stunned he caught her intent so easily. He says her manners are polite, but every word carries killing intent, like a blade being sharpened more and more. The West Heaven Sword matron praises his hearing for catching even her quiet mutters. He says he never turns down a challenge, but if they fight, one of them will die, and the survivor won't walk away whole. Something too strong can't bend, so it breaks. The West Heaven Sword matron begins raising her inner energy and accepts that outcome, still hoping for a chance to fight. Suhui notices the matron's energy rising and starts to worry that trouble is about to start. While she continues, Lee asks if there's any real reason for them to fight. That question catches the West Heaven Sword matron off guard. The protagonist finally looks at her and says they can fight later if there's a reason. For now, he'd rather keep seeing more of the world. His words interest her enough that she stops gathering power. In the end, she fully lets go of the transformation and accepts his offer. Not long after, the West Heaven Sword matron's ship and the Greenwood fleet remain spread through the area. A moment later, the Cess Devils leave, showing their talk is over. Later, Kim speaks with his mother and tells her the kill order came from the Heavenly Demon Sect to keep a secret from getting out. Still kneeling, Kim firmly repeats that the Heavenly Demon Sect was behind it. She says she can't understand why the Heavenly Demon Sect would want everyone on the S-Devil ship dead or what secret mattered that much. She points out that Lee clearly used the sect's highest martial arts, so wanting him dead makes no sense. It also doesn't fit that they'd hire Greenwood to handle it. Kim says there's recent news that the Heavenly Demon's Red Wolf squad was wiped out by an unknown force, and these people may be connected. His mother tells him not to think too hard about it. She says no amount of guessing will solve this, and that hits Kim hard. Instead, she orders him to track their movements carefully and report back. That alone should be enough for him. Kim proudly says Greenwood is unmatched at tracking, and reminds her he's part of Greenwood's command. His mother only looks at him. Kim stays on his knees waiting for her answer. At last, she says she'll trust him with the tracking, but he must not interfere with their affairs. She adds that she doesn't want her child getting hurt, and Black Tiger's eyes go wide at the sudden motherly concern. He glances back and quietly says, "Mother," and it's clear the West Tiger line is huge since she has so many children. Before leaving, she asks him one last thing. He quickly turns, eager to hear it. Then she asks for his name, leaving Kim frozen in shock. Back on the S-Devil ship, Kuya hides behind Lee, while Sahui yells at her, demanding to know what kind of trouble she's dragged them into now. Sahui is furious. She asks what Hua did to get tangled up with Greenwood, the giant fighter Elena, and worst of all, the Heaven Sword matron. Did she flip the whole world over before coming here? Outside, everything is finally calm. No ships closing in and no martial artists trying to kill each other. Hua looks down and sincerely apologizes for all the trouble. She admits she doesn't even know why everyone's after her. She explains that after finishing her tour, she went back home to Mount Hua, and everything had changed. As they sit to talk, Sunja piles up hot dogs for Lee. Hua says that the moment she returned, people from her own hometown tried to kill her, so she ran all the way here. Meanwhile, MC stuffs down 7 hot dogs at once and grabs 4 more with his other hand, completely ignoring the talk. So Hua says none of this makes sense to her, then turns to Sunja for help. Sunja looks just as lost and says she can't make sense of it either. Hua falls silent, unsure how else to explain it, while he keeps eating so wildly that bits of meat fly everywhere. Then a piece of meat accidentally lands in Hua's mouth. As she tries to spit it out, Robert slams both hands on the table and demands to know if she just said Mount Hua. He shoves Suhui aside and asks if she means the planet Mount Hua, his hometown too. Hua accidentally swallows the meat and starts choking, but Lee doesn't notice at all. Robert urgently demands to know what happened at Mount Hua, while Hua keeps coughing. Watching the chaos, Sunja frowns and mutters that humans are seriously abnormal. Elsewhere, one of the large tubes on the West Heaven Sword matron's ship has shattered. Elena drops out of it, conscious at last, and collapses to the floor, coughing in front of her mother. The West Heaven Sword Matron watches her with concern, giving her a moment to recover. Then she immediately asks what happened on Mount Hua, but Elena is still coughing too hard to answer. Still struggling for breath, Elena finally steadies herself and looks up at her mother. Next, the story returns to the Wild Crane Inn, where Lee previously met the Red Wolf Squad. Inside, the innkeeper Wang the 18th watches footage of the protagonist's clash with Elena. He studies the recording as Elena attacks and MC slips past every strike. Then he sees him use the heart sword after getting tired of dodging, causing the blast that tore through space. Wang watches in excitement while his guards stare in shock behind him. He remembers talking with Sohui, especially when she asked how much a full set of 2,000-year-old martial arts manuals would be worth. She had told him they were all original S-rank texts. Now he's stunned to realize she was telling the truth, and he let a fortune slip through his fingers. From there, we move to Heavenly Demon Sect, District 32. On a screen, Elena charges at Lee while he simply stands there. Soon, she's throwing strike after strike, and the protagonist avoids them all with ease. District 32 Commander Jung Ri-tak slowly turns pale. He watches in horror and asks what's happening, as MC brings out the heart sword to end the fight with Elena. From behind, the West Heaven Sword Matron asks what he thinks of the footage, saying that martial art looks strangely familiar. He turns toward her. She keeps her eyes on him, waiting to see if he'll realize the technique is tied to the demon sect. Jung admits the martial skill is beyond anything he's ever seen, but says he doesn't get why she'd call it familiar. The sword matron studies him, wondering if he truly knows nothing about this new figure who has suddenly appeared. Hual holds his ground and repeats that the art means nothing to him. To herself, the sword matron concludes that he really has no clue. Lee's martial art is connected to the Heavenly Demon Sect, so she asks why he went after him, and why Greenwood was involved. The commander says it's an internal sect matter, and none of her concern, even if she rules the West Heaven Cosmic Zone. He stands firm, but in the next instant, the side of his neck is sliced open. Blood starts to run as the sword matron holds her blade out, showing she cut him from a distance in a blink. A dark, dangerous aura rises around her, making it clear she'll get the truth whether he wants to speak or not. Jung's skin is only lightly cut, and his collar is sliced through, proving she could have gone much deeper if she wanted. Pressing a hand to his neck, he asks if she's declaring war on the demon sect. She lightly asks if he really thinks she'd be afraid of bloodshed. Still holding his neck, Jung thinks she'd rather die than back down. A woman so obsessed with martial arts, she'd even consume her own children. He realizes she's the type who never cares about gain or loss when martial arts are involved. Elena clearly inherited that madness from her. The sword matron's blade ignites with bright red fire, ready to come down. She starts to wake, purple flames spreading through the room, and asks if he'll answer her question or choose death. Jung says the answer is obvious. Even if all 1,076 fighters in District 32 attacked together, they still couldn't match the sword matron, so he's chosen death. He ignites fire in both hands and tells her to start. He knows he'll die anyway, so if she plans to kill all 1,076 of them, she'd better hurry. The West Heaven Sword Matron smiles, impressed by his nerve. Since people already say the Heavenly Demon Sect keeps getting stronger, she decides to let the matter pass. Instead, she reveals that the unknown fighter's art is the Demon Heart Asura sword technique. Jung, still ready to fight, is stunned to hear it linked to the demon sect. He asks what she means. The sword matron says the heart sword that killed her daughter was the Demon Heart Asura sword technique, the second highest art in the Heavenly Demon Sect. Jung is genuinely shocked. He says that's impossible. The Demon Heart Asura sword technique has been lost for thousands of years, and no one in their sect has used it. She shrugs that his lack of knowledge isn't her problem. She's told him what she knows. Now she wants to know why he went after that person. Pointing to Lee's image on the screen, she asks why he was being pursued. Jung stays silent for a moment, weighing whether to tell her. Then he says the protagonist was never their target. He points at Hua and explains she was the one they were chasing. Meanwhile, in the Televiatra orbiting star system, the S-Devils arrive at the home planet of Robert and Hua, Mount Hua. Their ship enters the atmosphere and lands on the planet. They head to Hua's hometown, Huahum County. But the place is unnervingly empty. The lights are on and the homes look untouched, yet not a single person is anywhere. Once they arrive, Saha asks Hua what's wrong and why the whole area is deserted. She wonders if maybe there's some kind of holiday. Robert looks around in horror and says no. Every shop door is wide open. Through the camera, they spot open stores and market tools left behind on the ground. Sunja reports that the town should have over 10,000 people, but she can't detect any life signs at all. Robert panics and grabs the captain, saying something terrible must have happened. He begs them to get down there fast. Either everyone died or ran. So Hui tries to calm him and asks why he's suddenly losing it. He shouts that Mount Hui is his hometown and that they have to save it. So Hui struggles in his grip, coughing and telling him to let go because she can't breathe. As So Hui tries to pry him off, tears fall from Hui's eyes while she stares at her empty homeland. Hui breaks down while Lee quietly studies the planet below. He asks her what happened and tells her to speak if she knows why the place is abandoned. She hesitates, clearly knowing more than she's saying. Before she can answer, Sunja announces that she found a life signal, and everyone turns to her at once. The signal is coming from Jiaha Pavilion, inside Mount Hawa's main headquarters. Robert stops struggling when he hears that name and says Jiha Pavilion is where the leader of the Manhwa sect lives. Sunja confirms it, but warns them the signal is strong and seems to belong to only one person. Hawa says nothing, but it seems like she already knows who it is. Later, they reach Jiha Pavilion. By night, the place feels eerie, with smoke hanging around it. They stop at the entrance, tense about what might be inside, when Sahui hears a loud noise behind her. It's Robert in a combat suit, and she asks what he's doing. He says whoever's in Jiha Pavilion is tied to what happened to his homeland, and he won't forgive them. Sahui asks if that suit even still works. She thought he stored it away after his discharge and later sold it. Robert proudly says a Special Forces soldier is always a Special Forces soldier, and he's kept the suit maintained every day. As they near a tunnel by the pavilion, the captain contacts Sunja. She asks if the signal is still there, just to make sure they're not chasing nothing. Sunja says the life signal is getting stronger, but warns them it doesn't seem human. Sahui takes that in and suggests sending a recon drone first to identify it before they go inside. Robert blurts out when he hears the target may not be human. Before she can finish, Robert charges into the tunnel, yelling that he'll kill whatever is in there, and demanding the monster come out because special forces are here. Sahui and Lee can only stare. Sahui mutters that he's acting strangely just because this is his hometown. Since Robert already made enough noise to alert the target, she gives up on the drone idea and tells everyone to stay sharp. Just as they move in, a wave of fire bursts from the tunnel and rushes at them. Sahui sees the flash and freezes in shock. The blaze tears through the tunnel and burns everything in its path. She can only hope they're not facing a dragon. The flames shoot far past the tunnel and reach the houses in front of the pavilion. Then the fire pulls back into the tunnel and the area goes still again. Sahui is left speechless. Hua is just as stunned that they survived such a massive blast. The reason is awkward. They've both been pressed tightly together to avoid the fire. Lee had lifted both of them with his legs and raised a shield to block the flames. Not even noticing the awkward position, MC keeps looking into the tunnel, trying to figure out where the fire came from. Sahui snaps out of it and asks where that sudden blast came from. He tells them to move, then drops Sahui onto Hawa. She lands hard on her back and groans in pain. As they push forward, they find Robert. His suit is badly scorched, and they can't tell if he's alive. Sahui kneels beside him and tells him to respond if he can hear her, but he stays stiff and silent, like he's been roasted alive. She contacts Sonja and asks for a scan. Sonja checks and says he's fine. Luckily, the combat suit protected him. Sahui wonders why he still isn't talking. Sonja says he's probably scared out of his mind. Realizing that's the problem, Sahui gives Robert a moment to recover. Meanwhile, Lee studies the tunnel, still searching for the source of the fire. Then he notices a streak of pink lightning overhead. Looking closer, he spots something scattered near the end of the tunnel. They're small pink flower petals, and they're creating those flashing streaks. One lands in Lee's hair and crumbles right away, which confuses him. A second later, thousands more petals suddenly fill the tunnel. As they move ahead, they find the petals pouring from a man seated on a throne. He's the leader of the Mount Hawa sect, sitting with his eyes closed, wrapped in powerful energy, seemingly unaware they're there. The protagonist frowns, still trying to understand what's happening. Sahui sees him too and asks Sonja if this man is the source of the life signal. Sonja confirms it and says he must be Mount Hawa's leader. She identifies him as the flourishing blossom sword sovereign Jeksan, shocking Sahui. Staring harder, Sahui realizes he's really the sword sovereign of Mount Hawa. Lee reaches out, catches one of the plum blossom petals, and examines it. He says blossoms opening from heat means the user has mastered the plum blossom heavenly fragrance heart technique. When the petal crumbles in his hand and releases a purple glow, he wonders why it's purple. That can only mean the plum blossom heavenly fragrance technique has mixed with another art, the purple mist divine heart. All the while, Joksan remains seated in silence, as pink and purple streaks of light pour from his body. Meanwhile, Hawa calls him dad through her tears. The sword sovereign still looks completely unaware of everything around him. That's when it becomes clear. Hawa is Yong's daughter. Lee stares at him and realizes this is bad. Yang stays on his throne like no one else is there, lost in his own state. Sahui steps up to MC and asks what's wrong. He explains that the plum blossom heavenly fragrance heart technique is extreme yang, while the purple mist divine art is extreme yin. Even Mount Hawa's elders can only master one. Fire and water don't mix, so what happens if someone forces them together? He answers right away. When a martial artist pushes past their limit, a demon can grow in their heart, and they stop being human. Then the protagonist begins summoning the heart sword, like when he beat Elena, ready to bring Yang down. Since Yang has become something else, Lee tells Sahui to take everyone and run. This won't be an easy fight, and his aura starts rising fast. He warns her that even he can't promise their safety if this battle starts. But before he attacks, Hawa runs straight to Yang, crying out for her dad. Sahui yells at her, telling her not to go any closer, but Hawa ignores every warning. Lee gets ready to move, then realizes there's no time left to get anyone out safely. Sonja watches in shock, unsure what's about to happen to the girl. With only 2 seconds left before 18, Sonja realizes everyone there is in danger, still ignoring them. Hor reaches out and hugs her father, even with that wild energy still pouring from him. Sonja's screen ticks down to just 1 second before 18. Inside the tunnel, Hora hugs him, and somehow the energy doesn't harm her at all. So Hori stares in disbelief, while Lee stays focused to see what happens next. Then the blossoms and light around the throne suddenly turn bright yellow and start fading. Yongtuz rises from his seat and hugs Hora back, like he can finally sense her now. He looks down at her with clear fatherly love and gently holds her head. The captain is completely shaken, asking how this terrifying monster suddenly turned into a caring father. Over comms, Sunja says this is normal now because the world has gone back to normal. Aboard the ship, Sunja stares at the screen in disbelief as Sahui asks what she means. Sunja says everything is normal again. The display now shows the time has passed, 18 by a few seconds. Out in the city, people are walking around like nothing ever happened. Sunja keeps checking the cameras. She tells them she can see people back on the streets. Every place that looked empty before is active again. Couples are out, people are shopping, and the missing citizens seem to have returned. At the same time, Yong keeps holding Hor. Sahui watches the screen, unable to understand how every missing person came back at once. Lee, though, doesn't look relieved at all. He just keeps frowning. The townspeople move through the morning as if they have no idea the whole city was empty just moments ago. Later, Robert, Sahui, and Sunja sit in a restaurant, still troubled by everything that happened. Sahora asks Sunja why she detected no life signs earlier and whether the bioscanner failed. Sunja, sipping her drink, reminds her they already checked it together. She links to the scanner again and confirms it's still working perfectly. But while scanning the people around them, Sunja notices something strange. Everyone's internal energy is drained. Adults and children alike show no internal energy at all. Robert says that might not matter if they seem fine, but Sahori still can't shake the uneasy feeling. He tries to brush it off. They thought these people were dead and now they know they're alive. Then he decides he's hungry and wants to order. Robert calls over a server, and Sahui points out how he was panicking earlier, but now acts like nothing's wrong. As the waitress heads their way, Robert tells the others she's finally coming. When she gets close, he starts ordering a double serving of noodles and a large special dong pork, then suddenly cuts himself off. She walks right past him without reacting at all. Robert freezes, hands still raised, wondering if her service is awful or if she just didn't hear him. He turns and sees her helping other tables, then asks why she ignored him. When she comes back their way, he brightens and loudly tries to place his order again. She passes him a second time without a word, like he isn't even there. Robert goes stiff again, then blurts out in confusion, asking why she keeps ignoring him. Sunja explains it's not that the woman didn't hear him. It's more like the people here can't see them at all. No one in the restaurant has looked at them once. Even up close, people move past them like they're background objects. In other words, these people aren't aware of them at all, as if they don't exist. Sahui gets a very bad feeling but says she doesn't want to jump to conclusions yet. Elsewhere, Yang has already moved on and is calmly having his morning tea. He pours tea into small cups and settles in like it's any normal day. He drinks in peace, even with guests right in front of him. Hoi tells Lee her father would never normally drink alone while others are present. Nervously, she calls out to him, but he still can't see or hear them. She says he's been like this ever since she returned from her trip, while Yang quietly keeps sipping tea. Hoi tells Lee the strange part is that her father still handles all his usual duties. He inspects things, eats, and tends the garden at the exact same times every day, like clockwork. MC walks up to him, unsettled, and waves a hand in front of Yang's face. There's no response and Hui says it's useless. She warns that interrupting his routine can cause trouble, but he doesn't wait and snatches the teacup from Yang's hand. Hui panics, shouting that this was a terrible idea and telling the protagonist to move. Caught off guard by her reaction, MC almost misses Yang swinging a sword straight at his neck. Before the slash can land, Lee bends back and narrowly dodges it. The blade sweeps past him and Yang instantly turns the sword down to pin him where he is. He rolls away in time, avoiding a string of fast follow-up strikes. Yang moves with blinding speed, but Lee keeps up. The attacks come so fast it looks like several swords are cutting at once, leaving the protagonist no choice but to keep dodging. Then Yang gathers force in his palm and tries to unleash it at point-blank range. MC gets serious and rushes in, saying that's enough, he can't let that attack fire off. He slams his palm into Yang's to stop the technique, before it fully erupts. Even so, the clash sends out a huge shockwave that tears through the room and nearly hits Hui. Watching in fear, she screams for Lee to stop. The blast throws Yang back into the smoke, but he holds his ground. Yang rises again with killing intent, lightning flashing around his body, all because his tea was interrupted. The protagonist notices the same sign as before, extreme yang and yin acting together. Hui yells that the only way to stop him is to give the teacup back, while Lee keeps his eyes on Yang. He says that when someone tries to pass an impossible limit, the body shouldn't be able to handle it. They should fall to inner demons, burst apart, and die. As Yang's power keeps growing and he walks forward, MC can't understand it. This level should be impossible. Yang should already be dead. Yang keeps advancing, wrapped in fire along with purple and pink light. Then a giant plum blossom appears again, its pink petals stained with purple, floating in front of Yang as he moves ahead. He stares at Yang and feels something is deeply wrong. He looks human, but not fully, and he starts wondering what happened to him. Huarin yells at Lee to hurry, warning that waiting any longer could be dangerous. The deadly plum blossom rushes at the protagonist while he stays low. Watching in fear, Hwa-rin can only hope he throws the cup in time. MC suddenly pulls out the teacup and gets ready to throw it. He draws his arm back to put more power behind the throw. Then he hurls the cup straight at Yang. The cup shoots toward the huge plum blossom in its path. It flies right at the center, as if the flower might block it, but the cup punches through the middle and keeps going. The moment it breaks through, the flower bursts into dark purple gas. Hwa-rin watches nervously, praying the cup reaches her father and ends the fight. Then Yang snatches the cup out of the air, showing that this was what he wanted all along. As soon as he gets it back, the pink flames and lightning around him start fading fast. The wild energy disappears, and everything begins to calm down. Yang returns to normal and sits back down to drink tea like nothing happened. He calmly pours himself another cup, acting like Li and Hwa-rin aren't even there. He frowns, realizing someone almost died over a teacup. Hwa-rin finally starts to relax now that the crisis is over. Later, night falls and the world grows dark again. Hwa-rin tells Li she came back home half a month ago after finishing her interstellar tour. At the same time, Sunja, Yang, and Robert move through the crowd. Hwa-rin says that when she returned, everything had changed. The three keep walking through town, wondering if anyone can even notice them. Hwa-rin explains that the townspeople act like wind-up dolls, repeating the exact same words and actions over and over. Robert reaches out and stops one of the men in the street. Hwa-rin says things get even stranger when someone interrupts the townspeople. The man Robert stops freezes in place without even turning around. Robert tries asking him what's happening on the planet, but the man stays focused on his iPhone and gives no response. Robert cuts himself off. When he realizes the man isn't just ignoring him, he's completely frozen. Hwa-rin tells Li that whenever someone interferes with them, they stop. Robert waves at the man but gets nothing back. Then he notices everyone else has stopped too. Hwa-rin says that's when the next strange thing happens. All those people start fading away. The man Robert touched vanishes right in front of him. Robert can only stare, stunned. He turns to Sunja and asks what just happened. Did they all teleport? Sunja watches the disappearances and admits she doesn't know. Saraya looks at her in disbelief and asks how even she can be unsure. The android says it does resemble teleportation from the particle pattern, but the scale is way too large. Saraya asks what she means by that. She hadn't even noticed everyone else was gone too. When she and Robert look around, they realize they're completely alone. She asks Sunja where everyone went. Still scanning the area, Sunja says every life sign on the planet has disappeared. The captain is shocked and asks her to say that again. Hwa-rin tells Li that after the people vanish, something even worse appears. She points outside and says strange creatures show up once the streets empty out. Out in town, Yang, Robert, and Sunja begin noticing something strange ahead. A whole army of robots starts marching toward them. They move in perfect order as mist spreads across the ground. The trio stares in horror, and Robert blurts out, asking what those things are. Each robot carries a sword as they keep marching closer in rhythm. The fog thickens and soon hundreds of robots close in from every side. The captain says she doesn't know what they are, but one thing is clear, they're in serious danger. She freezes watching the robots close in with nowhere left to run. Still staring at them, she asks Sunja if they're androids. She also wonders why they look unfinished, with only an iron rod where their abdomen should be. Sunja scans them and says they're not androids, they're construction droids. She explains these are early labor models made for simple work like planetary development with weak AI and limited thinking. Ramp lets out a small breath, saying she panicked for nothing if they're only construction droids. She reminds them that under the 3 laws of robotics, droids can't harm humans, but Robert isn't convinced. They're carrying swords and he asks why construction droids would need those. Yang guesses they're using them like tools. She walks up and tells the droids there are people here, ordering them to move aside and find another route. Instead, one droid charges at her and tries to slash her face. Before she can react, it swings again, aiming to cut her in half, but she fires an energy blast at it. Luckily, the blast pushes her back just enough to dodge the strike. She glares at the droid and demands to know what it's doing, wondering if it's broken. Her answer comes fast. Several more droids leap at her with swords drawn. They move like ninjas, swarming in to slice her apart. To stop them, Young unleashes a huge energy blast with her martial arts. From the Jaha Pavilion, Hwa-rin and Li notice the massive explosion tearing through the city. Hwa-rin tells the protagonist those are the things she meant. They always appear after the people vanish. Back in town, Cedric keeps blasting the robots. Sunja clings to her waist, and Robert runs for his life. Hwa-rin explains the robots attack any living thing they find. Meanwhile, the trio jumps onto a roof, but the robots keep chasing them. Robots swarm the rooftops and the streets below, leaving them with nowhere to escape. Hwa-rin says the same thing happened to her when she came home from her tour. She glances toward where her father usually drinks tea and realizes he's gone. The spot was empty, and she tells Li she would have died if her father hadn't stepped in. Yang returns to his seat and resumes meditating. Hwa-rin says the robots never come near her father for some reason. Yang settles back onto his throne and rests his arm on it. Then pink fire begins to rise around the place again, just like when they first arrived. He closes his eyes and the pink flames surround him once more. As his meditation deepens, the light flares and plum blossoms appear again. Rin adds that when everyone else disappears, only her father remains, but in that unreachable state. Looking at Young, Lee says he's trying to hold on. She turns to him and asks what that means. MC explains that Young is burning both his internal energy and his soul, even risking inner demons just to endure. That's probably the only reason he hasn't been destroyed. He places a hand on Rin's head and says Young is clearly protecting something at all costs. She stares at her father with pity, wondering what he's suffering through. Lee says the Sword Sovereign's resolve is truly admirable. Then he suddenly heads out and tells Rin to follow. He's going to put an end to this. Startled, she asks where they're going, and without looking back, the protagonist says he wants to see the face of the scum behind all this. Meanwhile, Cedra Yang, Sonja, and Robert run into a dead end, with no choice left but to face the robots. Surrounded on all sides, they desperately try to think of a way out before they're killed. The droids stare at them with glowing red eyes, and it's obvious they didn't come to play. Cedra Yang starts stammering, asking why they're attacking humans. She turns to Sonja and asks if that should even be possible. Hiding behind her, Sonja says it shouldn't be. Android systems aren't supposed to break the 3 laws of robotics. She says attacking humans isn't even an available option for them, but that's clearly what they're doing. The captain asks why they're acting like this and whether they're malfunctioning or just don't recognize them as human. Using his special forces background, Robert figures these things aren't normal androids. If robots can't hurt humans, then they must be the combat models he once heard about. The robots suddenly rush them from all sides, trying to skewer them, and the group braces for the hit. Cedra Yang draws her sword and tells Sonja to stay low, hold tight and avoid the blades. Then several light beams blast the charging robots out of the air. The shots hit hard enough to tear some apart and knock the swords from others. A huge blast follows overhead as many of the robots explode. Cedra Yang and Sonja freeze in shock, wondering who just stepped in. It's Robert. Back in his combat suit, he opens fire and says these things aren't droids. He explains that they're called Iron Jiangshi, basically reanimated corpses. Even after being exposed, the Iron Jiangshi regroup and prepare to attack again. Far away, Count Richel Archimon watches the whole battle on a screen. An aide identifies the people on it: Blazing Devil Tang, Cedra Yang, and beside her, PL-0316 KBT Intelligent Android Sonja. She adds that the third one is Robert Carlyle, former First Sergeant of the Northern Galaxy Combat Unit's Special Tactical Division. The one giving the report appears to be an Iron Jiangshi too, and she says the S-Devils are bounty hunters, who mostly work around the galaxy's outer regions. In her view, they aren't a serious threat, and could be wiped out in 10 seconds. Richel stops at one detail. Did she say Robert came from the Northern Galaxy Combat Unit? Watching Robert tear through the Iron Jiangshi, he asks if he was also in the Special Tactical Division. The Iron Jiangshi asks whether she should give the order to kill them. Richel studies the screen with his half-metal face and thinks it over. Back at the scene, Lee arrives where the others were fighting the Iron Jiangshi. Seeing broken machine parts on the ground, he asks what happened. The battle is already over, so MC wonders how it ended so fast when they were fighting just moments ago. Robert answers right away, bragging that he went all out this time. He says he'd been waiting for a day like this, which is exactly why he never got rid of his suit. To prove it, he shows the suit off a little, proud that it still works perfectly. He boasts that he kept everything maintained for this exact moment, and Lee stares at him before asking, a little sarcastically, what he would have done otherwise. Robert says things would have gone badly if he had listened to someone and sold his gear secondhand. Cedra Yang just folds her arms, tired of hearing him talk. He explains they only tried to sell it because they were broke and needed money for food. While Robert keeps bragging that they'd be done for without him, he picks up one of the metal hands and studies it. Sonja cuts in and tells Robert to calm down. They didn't beat the Jiangshi. They pulled back on their own, and if they had kept attacking, the group would have died. Holding up the metal hand, Lee wonders what it is and guesses it might be part of armor. Cedra Yang tells him it's not armor, it's a droid, or more simply, a robot. The protagonist repeats it wrong and calls it a drobot, then tells her to explain it in words he can understand. In his world, robots don't exist. Too tired to deal with it, Cedra Yang says he still wouldn't get it, even if she explained. So she asks Sonja to keep it simple. Sonja says a robot is basically a machine that can think and act like a person. MC is stunned. He says the world may have changed, but there's no way a piece of metal can act human. Then something happens that completely throws Lee off. To make her point, Sonja takes off her own head and holds it out to him. He completely loses it. He screams, jumps behind Rin, nearly knocks her over, and demands to know what Sonja even is. Tang Se-ryung asks Sonja if she never told him she was an android, and Sonja says they've been too busy. At the same time, one of the destroyed Jiangshi still has an active intelligence unit, its eyes open, locking onto the group while no one notices. It records Lee hiding behind Rin, then the Jiangshi reporting to Count Richel Archimon, links into the live feed. She tells him the protagonist doesn't exist in their database. In the hidden base, they review the footage, and she adds that MC doesn't appear to have an internal energy drive, which means he may be a pure natural. Richel gets up to leave and says that judging by his foolish behavior, he's not worth worrying about. The one they should watch, he says, is Robert. If Robert came from the Special Tactical Division, then he must be an elite soldier. Richel goes further. If he made First Sergeant, he's likely top class. A man like that wouldn't end up here by accident, so he orders them to stay alert and investigate him fully. Elsewhere in space, a bright light appears in the distance. It isn't a star at all, but a transport ship moving through space. Its destination is the 32nd District of the Heavenly Demon Sect. There, District Commander Shang and Elder Zhou wait to greet an important guest. Soon the transport arrives and its doors open. The guest steps out in flip-flops, looking completely relaxed. He walks up to the commander and elder, who bow to him out of respect. The commander thanks him for coming all this way and addresses him as officer. The officer yawns and agrees. It was a long trip. This officer looks like a bossy little kid, but he makes it clear the trip had better be worth it. He is Zhou Dan, first-class officer of the Disaster Safety Headquarters, Central Committee of the Heavenly Demon Sect, and he gets right to work. Zhou inspects the swollen red mark on Jiang's head left by Li's slap. Jiang is still in a wheelchair, showing he hasn't recovered from that beating, body or mind. Commander Yang asks Officer Zhou if he notices anything. Zhou looks alarmed and leans in for a closer look at the strange hand mark. Since he's so short, he climbs onto a stool and keeps staring at it in silence. At last, Roy places a hand on the mark and asks Sang if it hurts. Sang says the pain is mostly gone, but his head still feels hot all the time. Zor asks him to repeat that, puzzled by how there can still be heat without pain. Looking down, still shaken by what happened, Sang confirms that's exactly what he's been feeling. Then Sang suddenly cries out in pain. Zor presses the spot again and uses the same move Li used, making Sang groan loudly. His scream echoes through the whole medical room. Over the protagonist's large handprint, Zor's much smaller hand leaves another mark, though Zhang can't protest against his superior. When Zor pulls his hand away, smoke rises from the spot just like before. He strokes his chin and keeps thinking. The commander thinks he understands and says the two marks seem different. The first is swollen, but the second is sunken, so maybe they aren't the same technique. Without even looking at him, Zor says they are the same. The first mark also came from the 9-yin palm. The commander is shocked because that confirms the sword matron's claim that this unknown man is tied to the Heavenly Demon Sect. He tries to explain that 9-yin palm is just a basic martial art taught to beginners, while this new version looks far more advanced. As they talk, Elder Zhou goes to prepare food for their guest. The commander adds that he himself mastered 9-yin palm when he was only 7. While the elder sets the table, Sang points out that the 9-yin palm mark still looks different from the original wound. The officer agrees. He says the core of 9-yin palm is cold energy, but this attack left heat behind, so of course the scar looks different. He explains that whoever did this reached a level where he could completely suppress the technique's natural coldness and leave only the heat from the strike. According to Zhou, that was actually an act of mercy. The attacker held back so the enemy wouldn't suffer worse damage. The commander is stunned and asks if it's really possible to reverse a martial art's basic nature, like making fire from ice. Zhou says it should be possible in theory. Then, as he waits for the food to cool, hunger wins out. He tells the commander they can pause the talk and eat first, even offering him black bean noodles. Commander Zhang frowns, amazed that Zhou can think about food right now, but finally agrees that an empty stomach won't help them think. Meanwhile, back on the S-Devil ship, Robert explains that the things they fought are called Iron Jiang Shi. Shanja drops off another huge pile of hot dogs, and Tang gapes at how fast Li is eating. She starts eating too and asks Robert what Iron Jiang Shi really are. He says it was a rumor from back when he was still serving. From what he heard, they were making a new combat android meant to kill humans. Tang calls that nonsense. Robot minds are built around the 3 laws, so they shouldn't be able to hurt people. At the same time, MC still can't accept that Sanja isn't human, so he tugs at her cheeks to check. She only gives him an annoyed look. Robert says they got around the 3 laws by swapping out the AI circuits with dead human brains, and that completely shocks Tang. That's why the project was called Iron Jiangxi. Still poking at Sunja's face, Li asks again if she's really not human. Sunja asks if he wants her to take her head off again, and even offers to remove her arms and legs so he can be sure. He hurriedly says that's not necessary. Stunned, he mutters that this world has gotten way too strange. He finally stops bothering her and turns back to the food. Tang tells Robert his story does fit what they saw, but it still sounds too crazy to believe without seeing it firsthand. Then Li notices the plate is empty. They finished all the hot dogs while he was busy with Sunja. Tang catches him looking her way and comments that using dead people's brains is seriously messed up. The protagonist answers with a cold, horrified stare. There's no food left. Not understanding the look, Tang asks what his problem is and why he's making that face. Then she looks down, sees the empty tray, and finally gets it. To avoid trouble, she quickly tells Sunja to make more hot dogs for him. Sunja blankly says they're out. Tang just brushes that off and says then it can't be helped, turning back to figuring out what's happening on the planet. She says it feels like they got dragged into a really bad situation. Behind her, Li suddenly shouts that they're shameless, and his body starts to flare up. Tang spins back around. Furious, he says maybe the old martial world's manners are gone, but she still dared to steal his food. Alarmed, Tang asks Robert what he's talking about, but he has no idea. MC's power starts rising as he says she can't pretend she didn't know who he was. He already declared himself the supreme heavenly demon, so how did she dare do this? Tang puts a hand on her hip, remembering he really did say that. Robert remembers too. Even so, Tang can't make any sense of what that title is supposed to mean. She ignores him and says they can sort that out later. Right now, bigger things matter. Lee keeps burning with anger. Robert gets too uneasy to stay at the table with him and stops Tang so they can leave together. Sunja also quickly heads out, clearly not wanting to deal with his mood. Soon the protagonist is left alone, and with no one there, his anger dies down and the awakening fades. He looks at the tray again and spots some grease and a few tiny pieces of hot dog left behind. Staring at those scraps, Lee gets an idea. He reaches down and takes them. It's all that's left, and even the supreme heavenly demon can't starve. Still frowning, he eats the scraps, seeming to accept that this is life among such lowly mortals. Outside, the wrecked iron Jiangshi parts are still scattered around. Sunja picks up one of the robot heads to inspect it, hoping they can learn something useful. Tang looks over the wreckage, unsure where to begin. Their ship stays ready overhead in case they need to flee, while the ground is covered in robot debris. Robert examines a robot arm and notices the joints are flimsy. He wonders why it's built so badly, and why the alloy is so weak. Looking over the head, Sunja says that's because these aren't finished units. They're only prototypes. She studies the head and scans it with her eye sensors. After a while, Sunja goes silent mid-thought. Tang notices and asks if she found something in the robot's head. Sunja says yes. She adds that its neural network is very simple, then starts opening the head. When the compartment opens, an intelligence chip pops out. Sunja identifies it as a primitive M207 chip. She says it's so crude it's embarrassing to even call it AI. According to Sunja, the M207 is made to receive commands, not think for itself, so it doesn't count as real artificial intelligence. Following her logic, Tang asks if the robots were being controlled from afar. Sunja confirms it. Each unit was remotely operated. She quickly scans the area and says 9,817 droids attacked them. That means at least 9,817 humans had to be controlling them. Elsewhere, a lab is filled with tubes of liquid. Wires run into every tube, and something sits inside each one. Richel and his robots head into the lab to check on the experiment. He studies the rows of tubes with a cold, determined look. Inside them are naked people with their brains wired up, making it clear this is how the robots are controlled. One unconscious man, clearly a townsman, floats in the liquid looking badly worn out. Back on the street, Tang asks Sunja for the total population of the Manhwa district. Sunja answers that the exact number is 9,818. Meanwhile, back at the Jiaha Pavilion, Yang is still burning away his inner energy along with his soul. The others realize only one person is missing, the Sword Sovereign. He's still unconscious as pink fire and plum blossom petals surround him. Near the throne, Hua sits down and watches her father in pain. Elsewhere, Commander Jiang is stunned by what Cho says and politely asks him to repeat it. While wiping his mouth, Cho repeats his order, full immobility and lockdown for all of District 32. No one is to move, no one is allowed in, and every dispatched unit must be called back at once. Still shocked, the commander asks why he made such a sudden call. Cho says the times are too dangerous to do anything less. He explains that 2,000 years of peace have lasted too long, and the authority of the martial alliance has faded. Then he asks what happens when the tiger ruling a mountain loses its fangs. Commander Jiang answers that the wolves take over. Choi says not exactly. The wolves try to become tigers themselves. He reminds him that wolves made packs because of the tiger. Once the tiger is gone, they start comparing themselves to each other. Other wolves look weak and that weakness makes them attack. In times like that, the first target is the strongest wolf, because everyone is fighting for power. As he heads for his flight pod, with the commander walking beside him, Cho says the wolves will use the pack tactics they learned to bring down the strongest one. His point is simple. Their sect is the strongest wolf in today's martial world, so they must be extremely careful. The commander asks if that means the unknown person using their sect's martial art is tied to this danger. Cho admits he doesn't know, and that's exactly the problem. Stepping into the pod, he says he got an emergency message before arriving. An unknown person is heading toward Mount Hua. Commander Yang is startled and asks if he heard that right. Mount Hua? Cho confirms it. An unknown factor has landed on a powder keg, and the martial world is one spark away from exploding. That's why he says they need to understand the situation first and avoid acting too soon. Then he enters his pod and departs, hoping the truth becomes clear soon. The commander watches him leave, unsure what to think. All he can do for now is frown and wait. At Mount Hua, Zheng and the others head to the Jiaha Pavilion to meet Hua. Zheng asks her to confirm that the missing people always return at night. Hua says they do, except for her father, who always stays behind after everyone else disappears. She says her father always stays behind in that burning state, sitting on the throne. Sir Zheng just stares, totally unsure what to make of the Sword Sovereign. Zheng remains seated in the flames and still doesn't notice any of them. Sir Zheng asks Sunja how long is left before sunset, since that's when the missing people should appear again. Sunja says Mount Hua switches from day to night every 6 hours. By her count, sunset is only a second away. Then in the very next moment, something happens that shocks the captain. Right on cue, the Sword Sovereign stands up, pulls Hua Rin into a hug, and cradles her head just like before. Hua Rin explains that he does things like patting her head without any awareness. She says he also drinks tea, looks around the area, and later reads in the garden. Those are the exact same things he was doing before she left for her birthday tour last year, so this has been repeating for a long time. For some reason, the cycle starts again every sunrise. Still looking down, Hua Rin adds that everyone else repeats the same routine every day too. Over the comms, Robert warns the captain that something's off. None of the people are appearing. From a rooftop, he reports that the streets are still empty. Sir Yang gets uneasy and asks Sunja if she's picking up anything. Sunja says she's detecting something else instead. Looking at the captain, she says that rather than the people returning, Sir Yang seems to be fading away. Sir Yang starts vanishing before their eyes, stunned by what she just heard. She looks at her hands, sees them turning see-through, and wonders what is happening. Then her hands vanish completely and she cries out. Sunja says the captain's vital signs are disappearing too. A second later, Sir Yang vanishes completely, leaving only a faint glow. Meanwhile, Hua Rin is still in her father's arms. Outside Mount Hua, a Greenwood ship drifts in space. Inside, Kim, leader of the Galaxy Division, studies Mount Hua and its twin moons. Captain Chaiju rushes in to report something. A teleport signal was detected from the center of Mount Hua a short while ago. Their analysis confirms the person moved was the Blazing Devil, Sir Yang. Kim asks where she was sent. The captain answers that she was teleported to Genta, Mount Hua's second moon. Meanwhile, we shift to Genta, the second moon of Mount Hua. Somewhere on its surface is a deep hole. From inside that dark pit, a shocked scream rings out. The light left behind when Sir Yang disappeared suddenly appears in the hole. She keeps screaming that her body is disappearing. At first she's invisible, then her body slowly starts forming. With her legs still missing, Sir Yang panics and wonders if she died and turned into a ghost. Thinking she's talking to God, she begs to be brought back because she still has too much left to do. But when she lifts her hands to pray, she sees they've fully returned, stops yelling, and wonders what's happening. Now visible again, she keeps asking what the heck is going on. Then she notices people in front of her and realizes this probably isn't the afterlife. Sitting before her is Count Richel Archimond, with his android assistant at his side. Count Richel Archimond says nothing, and simply watches her settle down. Sir Yang stares back and asks who he is. He stays silent. He only frowns, giving her a cold, sinister look. The room stays quiet, and neither of them speaks. Back on the Greenwood ship, the captain tells Kim the teleportation looks unusual. There are no signs that the person being moved gave consent. If that's true, then this may have been a forced transfer unilateral teleportation, which is banned by galactic law. He warns that this is serious and suggests reporting it to higher authorities. Without turning around, Kim asks if there's anyone above him. The captain gets the message and falls silent. Then he quickly says no, bows and declares the Black Tiger as his only command authority. Kim approves and tells him to keep watching for now. It's too early to say anything. After all, if someone is using technology banned by galactic law on that moon, they may have powerful support behind them. He orders the captain not to interfere carelessly and to investigate first. They need to know whether learning more will help them or hurt them. The captain answers with a sharp yes, sir. Kim keeps watching the twin moons, quietly wondering what this all means. Not long after, new intel reaches the West Heaven Sword matron, and she asks if she heard that right. Elena has just told her about the man she met at Mount Hua, so she asks her to repeat it. Still kneeling, Elena says the man claimed to be her father. She makes it clear he said he was the one who fathered her. Then she adds that she even lost to him in a duel. That shocks the sword matron. Since beating Elena is no easy thing, she thinks of Mount Hua and realizes the man who defeated her daughter and called himself her father is now there. Back on Mount Hua, Robert slams his hand on the table. He shouts that they have to save the captain, getting just as worked up as usual. Furious, he yells that some bastard dared to kidnap their captain, while Lee quietly listens. When the swearing keeps going, MC admits he can't understand what Robert is saying and asks Sunja what he's talking about. Sunja says she'd rather not translate because it's mostly cursing, so she keeps working instead. Harin says the place where Sir Young was taken may be tied to what's been happening on this planet. She thinks the others may have been taken the same way, though they still can't prove it. Sunja cuts in and says they actually do have proof. The disappearances on Mount Hua match a forced teleportation, taking someone without consent, and that kind of one-sided teleportation is illegal under galactic law. Robert yells that this means everyone is trapped somewhere. He says they can't just sit there, and this time he grabs Lee by the shirt. He turns to Sunja and asks what's wrong with Robert, but she just walks off and ignores them. She tells the protagonist that Robert seems to have PTSD from his military days, so stress makes it hard for him to control his anger. Meanwhile, Robert keeps cursing right in MC's face, still gripping his shirt. Lee looks at him and tells him to let go. Sunja says it's useless. Once Robert gets like this, he doesn't listen to anyone. Then he speaks to him in his martial form, and Sunja notices that might actually work. Robert immediately apologizes and lets go of the protagonist. Sunja just stares, thinking Robert could enter an anger management contest. After that, they get back to the real issue. Sunja explains that forced teleportation has a distance limit, a long-range jump isn't possible, so they can rule out another planet. That leaves 3 places, Mount Hua itself, or one of its 2 moons. Lee steps over to the window, looks at the moons and asks if she can tell which one the captain is on. Sunja says she scanned Mount Hua and found no life signs besides the Sword Sovereign, so the planet itself can be crossed off. That means only the 2 moons are left, Genta and Sikaris. She adds that both moons have life signs, but because they're so close together, it's hard to tell exactly where they're coming from. Lee looks at her and asks if that means they have to make a random choice. Sunja says yes and thinks it over. Then she remembers the captain loves gold. Since Suryang is obsessed with it, Sunja picks the golden moon, Sycharis. But she couldn't be more wrong. We head to Manhwa's second moon, Genta. There, Count Ritual Archimon is still staring at Suryang, who was just teleported into his facility, and he still hasn't spoken. Suryang asks who he is, but he gives her nothing. Ritual's android scans Suryang and finds an externally mounted 1.4 giga internal energy drive. It also detects a 3.3 giga ultra-high-density internal energy drive embedded in her body. The android adds that her only outside weapon is the electronic soft sword at her waist. At last, Count Ritual Archimon speaks, bringing up her 3.3 giga internal energy drive while sipping sparkling water. He remarks that a backwater bounty hunter is carrying something she can't even use. Suryang asks again who he is, then bluntly asks if he's deaf. Somewhere else in the universe, a beam of light falls on a tiny sprout. The little plant is growing in what looks like sand, living off the strong sunlight. An old man crouches beside it, quietly watching it grow and admiring life. Nearby, Officer Cho walks up and calls him master. Cho arrives with a serious face and says there's a problem he needs to discuss. The old man cuts in right away. He already knows about the Manhwa incident and that Cho was sent to handle it. The master tells him not to rush. He says they need to wait until the bud fully blooms. Only then can they know what kind of tree it really is. In other words, they should wait until the forces behind Count Ritual are fully exposed, then strike for real. He reminds Troll that he raised him to understand that much, then asks if he's being impatient or if something else is wrong. Troll stays silent. Sensing more is bothering him, the master asks what's really causing this childish behavior. Troll explains that during his investigation, a mysterious person appeared in the case. According to him, that person used martial arts at the level of reversing the energy flow. He also knows their sect's secret art, the demon heart Asura Buddha sword technique. The master's face suddenly turns horrified, making Cho hesitate. Then he adds that this person has reached the peak of mastery. Worse, Cho says this man does not belong to their sect. Now grim, the master flatly orders him to kill that person. At that moment, the seedling behind them suddenly withers and dies, seemingly from the master's influence. Cho asks him to repeat that because he can hardly believe it. The master turns red with rage and calls the man an anomaly, a monster. He orders Cho to find him and kill him no matter what. It seems the leaders of the heavenly demon sect are hiding something. Cho is clearly shocked, but he says nothing. Later, he returns to his travel pod and resumes his mission. The pod moves through space with Cho riding inside. Soon he settles into the pod and continues his journey. Meanwhile, on Genta, Tang Seryong asks Count Ritual Archimon again who he is, and whether he can hear her. Ritual Archimon ignores the question, tells his android to inspect her, and keeps sipping his drink. The android vanishes from behind him, moving at blinding speed. In an instant, it appears behind Tang Seryong, while she's still facing the other way. Unaware it's there, she senses it, spins around, gathers an energy blast in her hand, and demands to know what it thinks it's doing. But when she fires, the android is already gone. A second later, it's behind her again and grabs the back of her neck. Tang Seryong is stunned by how fast it moved. She can't believe the android is this quick. She's never seen anything like it. Ritual Archimon calmly tells her to give up. Resistance is useless. He says he'll ask a few questions, and if she answers well, he'll spare her from endless suffering. Fed up, Tang Seryong tells him to shut up, and shoves the android back. That makes the Count take notice, and he wonders if she can use an adaptive style of martial arts. Tang Seryong grabs the electronic soft sword at her waist and swings to cut the machine down. She whips the blade around, making a storm of slashes, but the android quickly pulls away. Thanks to its speed and tracking ability, it dodges every strike. Then it spots an opening and moves in to touch the captain. The android closes the gap and nearly reaches her, but Tang Seryong sees it and aims her sword at it. The machine slips past the cuts and tries to seize her arm. Count Ritual tells her this is pointless, because the android holds data on every martial art in the world. Tang Seryong keeps attacking, but the robot gets past every blow. She starts to realize he may be right. The machine is reading her moves with ease. Even so, Tang Seryong doesn't back down and tells the Count not to make her laugh. She rushes in head-on, but the android sidesteps and avoids the blade. Then it catches an opening and strikes her in the back. The hit lifts her off the ground and throws her across the room. Tang Seryong crashes face first, unable to stop herself after the sudden blow. The android stays ready, waiting to see how she'll respond. She quickly gets back to her feet and raises her sword again. Taking her stance, she signals she's still ready to fight. Ritual keeps drinking, though he's surprised she got up that fast. The android watches her closely, ready to pressure her again. Tang Seryong holds her stance and waits for it to move. Sweat starts to show as she realizes this fight is tougher than expected, and her usual martial arts won't be enough. She needs something new. While she thinks, the robot disappears again at incredible speed. It slips behind her, but this time Tang Seryong senses it right away. As the android reaches to grab her from behind, she stays perfectly still and acts like she hasn't noticed a thing. The moment it commits, Tang Seryong vanishes and turns the trick back on the robot. She jumps high out of its sight, leaving it searching for where she went. Spinning in the air, she lines up her sword for a strike on the way back down. The android quickly finds her and leaps up to meet her. Tang Sero uses a move called Bullet, firing the sword straight down like a shot, trying to pin the android to the ground. The soft sword straightens and dives with deadly force. It shoots right at the robot's face, and for a moment her plan looks like it might work. But the robot blocks with its hands and knocks the blade toward the ground. Everything happens in an instant, and the android keeps rising to catch Tang Sero in midair. It closes in, and nearly grabs her as she falls. But because the sword is adaptive, it wraps around the android's arm, showing this was part of Tang Sero Young's plan. The robot heats its arm, aiming to burn through her stomach area, while the captain seems stuck in midair without her weapon. Then the sword coils around the arm and redirects itself upward. The soft blade shoots back up at the android. A second later, it pierces the android's head and destroys it before it can react. The light in its head goes dark. Its intelligence unit is gone. All of this happens in midair as both bodies begin falling. Seeing his prized android destroyed, the Count smashes his cup in anger. Then he stares in shock, recognizing the move she used as the Dark Heaven Blood Dragon dagger of the Sichuan Tang clan. The android drops lifelessly, and Count Ritual Archimon can only stare. Tang Seryung hits the ground right beside it. She quickly rises, clutching her stomach from both the fall and the heat the robot struck her with. Now it's Ritual Archimon asking who she is. Sir Young only glares at him in silence, blood starting to run from her mouth. Still shaken, the Count says the Sichuan Tang clan was wiped out 10 years ago without a trace, and demands to know how she learned their martial arts. Sir Young still doesn't answer. Instead, she says she'll have to use stronger methods now that it's come to this. She activates the 3.3 Giga energy drive inside her body, the one Ritual Archimon claims she couldn't use, and decides desperate times call for desperate measures. The drive is the Shanhua Divine Art Drive, powered by a Qi Internal Operation System, or QIOS. She pushes it to full power. That shocks Ritual Archimon even more, because the Shanhua Divine Art is a secret passed down only to the Tang clan's head. With the second internal drive now running at max, Sir Jung launches up with explosive force and tells him to shut up. Count Ritual Archimon stays put and watches her rise, realizing she plans to take control of the sky and attack from every direction. Wrapped in bright green light, Sir Young lifts off the ground. Then an explosion bursts out, releasing thousands of green and white arrows like a giant firecracker. Ritual Archimon stares in shock as he recognizes the technique, the Infinite Rain Blossom. All the arrows fly at him at once, and he still doesn't move. The sheer force of Sir Young's attack causes a huge explosion inside the facility. Back on the West Heaven Sword matron's ship, Elena tells her mother that the way she met that mysterious man was strange too. Elena says she went to Manhwa to collect a bounty. When she arrived, she blacked out. The next thing she knew, she was standing right in front of him, just like always. Count Ritual Archimon sits on the couch, silently watching her with a cold expression. Elena says she still doesn't get why their first meeting had to happen like that. For a moment, they just stared at each other without saying a word. That makes the sword matron realize Elena is describing one-way teleportation. In the memory, Count Ritual Archimon tells Elena not to be shocked. He says he brought her there to grant her wish. Elena stares at him, confused about what he means. He asks if she doesn't want to grow stronger and stand above the world. Ritual says that dream is why Elena earned the name 8-foot fighting ghost and even turned her ship into a dueling arena, chasing battle after battle. He says the closer she got, the farther the goal seemed, leaving her in despair and crying alone at night. Then he offers her power, the kind that would let her look down on the world. Elena admits he knew far too much about her. In the flashback, she demands to know who he is and what nonsense he's talking about. What bothered her most was how accurate he was. Ritual rises and says she'll understand better after a fight. Back in the present, Elena says they fought, but there was one problem. Meanwhile, Count Ritual has already crushed Tang Seryung and is holding her by the throat. Elena tells her mother that against him, nothing she tried had worked. In the present, Ritual keeps Tang Seryung lifted by the neck. Her green flames have burned away much of his clothes. Underneath, his whole body looks metallic, just like the androids. Tang Seryung struggles to breathe under his grip and starts bleeding from her mouth, the same way Ritual once held Elena by the throat after beating her. In that memory, he told Elena he would make her strong like him. He even claimed he was doing it because she was his daughter, though Elena clearly didn't buy it. Back in the present, Ritual orders the weakened Tang Seryung to answer him. He says if she talks, he'll make her frail body strong. The only price, he adds, is throwing away her useless mind. Hearing all this, the sword matron is genuinely shaken. Elena says Ritual gave her something. Then her body suddenly shines with bright blue light, stunning the sword matron. Elena tells her this power came from him. The sword matron stares in shock and realizes the ability is steel fortification. At the same time, Sunja keeps scanning for the captain while the ship gets ready to depart. Robert starts yelling again, asking why they still haven't left, and telling Sunja to move the ship already. She checks the radar again and sees a new signal appear. A red dot shows someone is close and heading straight for them. Because of that, Sunja halts their trip to the Cicerus moon when she spots the approaching ship. A small pod appears in front of them, and it looks like it belongs to the Heavenly Demon sect. Both crafts stop in the air, and neither side makes the first move. On the S-Devil ship, Robert demands to know what's blocking them and says they should tell it to move before he crushes it. Sunja says they can't do that, and he asks why. She explains that even though it looks tiny, it's a Celestial-class battleship, far beyond what their ship can handle. Worse, she says, it belongs to the Heavenly Demon Sect. Robert is stunned and wonders what the Heavenly Demon Sect wants with them. A moment later, Officer Cho teleports into their ship, startling both Robert and Sunja. He looks straight toward Lee and ignores everyone else. MC doesn't even notice him. He's too busy trying to cut a single hot dog with a knife and fork. Cho keeps staring at him and quickly realizes he is the same person he saw on the district screen. Robert walks up and politely asks why someone from the Heavenly Demon Sect came aboard their ship. Without even turning, Cho heads for Lee and introduces himself as a first-class officer of the Disaster Safety Headquarters, Central Committee of the Heavenly Demon Sect, then calmly takes a seat. He tells the protagonist to speak freely with him, but the protagonist just keeps eating and says nothing. Robert is baffled that a kid this small could hold such a high rank in the Heavenly Demon Sect. Cho cheerfully says he has an urgent request and came to discuss it with MC. He tells Robert to stay out of it, then continues speaking with Lee. Cho says the one behind this whole incident is Richol Archimond. He explains that Richol used to be a leading scientist who oversaw military weapon development for a defense company tied to the human government. The project was called Steel City, which explains the Iron Jiangshi that attacked them on Manhwa. Cho says Richol was cast out for his brutal methods, then vanished. Now he adds, Richol is hiding here and running experiments on an even bigger scale. While Cho explains all this, Lee doesn't even look at him and keeps eating. Cho goes on, saying Richol wasn't merely expelled, he was secretly funded to keep working, likely by factions inside the human military. After finishing the hot dog, he simply asks Sunja for water, ignoring everything else. Cho stares at him, shocked that he gets no reaction after dumping all that information. He can't help wondering who the protagonist really is. Robert cuts in and asks if Cho really means a military faction is behind all this. Part of the human government's military. Cho confirms it and warns him to stay out of it, because this is beyond civilians. Meanwhile, Sunja hands Lee some water, and he still says nothing. Robert asks about their captain, reminding Cho that she was kidnapped. Cho says there's nothing they can do and that all they can do is pray for her. That sets Robert off. He slams the table, calls it nonsense, and tells Cho to shut up and leave. They're rescuing their captain, and he doesn't care who Cho is or whether he tries to stop them. Lee finally speaks and tells Cho to listen. He says Cho may not be interfering, but they still won't follow his orders. MC says he's been thinking about why Cho would hand them such valuable information in detail. The only reason, he says, is that Cho wants to use them as tools and avoid the burden himself. He sneers that a bald little kid is trying to play him. Cho only asks who he is, calling him Noble One. The protagonist doesn't answer that. Instead, he asks if that was Cho's real reason for coming here. Cho says nothing and stays silent. Lee gets up from the table and says that if not, then they have nothing to do with each other and never will. At last, Cho asks the question hanging in the air. Does MC have any link to the Heavenly Demon Sect? He flatly says he has none. Cho says he'll accept that for now, but asks again to be sure. If the protagonist truly has no ties to the sect, then whatever he does next is entirely his own, and the sect will say the same. Without even turning around, Lee says that's fine and tells him to leave because he's busy. Soon after, Cho returns to his ship and departs. MC watches him go, seeming more interested in the officer than he let on. To himself, he thinks it's a relief that the demon sect still has some capable people. As Cho travels on, trying to sort things out, he thinks the boy has talent, but he's still too green. Then they get back to the main issue. Robert says it's time to handle this properly and save their captain. Sunja agrees but says the coordinates have changed. Their target is no longer the moon Sycharis, it has shifted to the moon Genta. It seems Cho had something to do with passing them those new coordinates. The story then moves to Genta, the second moon of the Manhwa planet. Deep in its surface is the massive shaft Richie carved out for his facility. Inside, Tang Suri-young lies on the ground, weak after her defeat. Count Richik drags her deeper inside toward his private lab. There, a large operating table waits near the entrance, fitted with restraints to lock someone in place. He drags Suri-young in and straps her onto the table. She asks what he's planning, and he glances back at her, asking if she's finally awake. She only answers with a hard glare. Ritual says she woke up faster than expected. He seems impressed, saying there really is something unusual about noble bloodlines, especially a lady of the Sinchuan Tang clan. Sayer-young asks where they are and what he plans to do to her. Ritual tells her not to be afraid. He claims he's going to free her from pain by wiping her memories, even the worst parts of her past. His real plan is much worse. He wants to add her to the people in the tubes and turn her into an iron Jiangshi, a mindless servant that only obeys. Hearing that, Sayer-young clenches her hand and tries to gather energy, but nothing comes out. Ritual says it's pointless. He's sealed her meridians and shut down her nervous system. As he opens the restraints, he explains that her body won't answer her anymore because he paralyzed her brain and spine. Sayer-young struggles harder to move, but it still doesn't work. He coldly tells her to stop wasting her strength. Then something unbelievable happens. Sayer-young rises anyway. Even after her central nervous system was blocked, she tells him not to be stupid, People of the Sichuan Tang clan can be killed but never controlled. Then she uses a strange technique. Her eyes turn red and blood starts running from her eyes and mouth. Before Ritual can answer, she plants both hands on his chest, and he catches a strange smell. A bright yellow substance pours from her palm. It burns through his steel body and slowly forces its way inside. Ritual realizes too late that it's poison, as her hands sink deeper into his chest. She tells him it's called pigeon blood poison. Every Tang clan child is born with a tiny piece of deadly poison in the heart, a final gift meant for the moment they die. As she says it, more blood spills from her eyes. The poison starts wrecking Ritual's body, and he grabs her arm to pull it away. Sae-young says that's useless. The more her heart burns, the stronger the poison gets, strong enough to melt metal. Just like she said, the hole in Ritual's chest grows wider. Calling him a disgusting monster, she says she has one last thing to tell him. He stares at her in fear, waiting. Smiling through a face covered in blood, she asks him to die with her. Then a sharp blade flashes between them and slices through Sae-young's hand. It came from Ritual's android, so it wasn't destroyed after all. Ritual yanks her arm and tries to tear it completely off. Barely alive, Sae-young looks down and sees the android. She realizes it ruined her chance to kill Ritual. Blood pours from the severed hand and splashes across the room. At that moment, a warning alarm blasts through the facility. Annoyed, Ritual looks up and wonders what set it off. The system keeps repeating that intruders have been detected. Outside, Lee puts on a space shield and he's clearly in a bad mood. Robert gears up too and stands behind the protagonist, who still has his hands in his pockets. Then a huge wave of iron Jiangshao bursts out of the hole and lines up to fight the Cess Devils. Thousands charge with swords, while more keep jumping out to join them. Robert readies his weapons and tells MC he'll handle the robots, so MC should go save the captain. He doesn't hesitate. He takes off at once, leaving Robert to deal with the androids. He shoots over the incoming army and dives straight toward the underground base. Robert is stunned by how fast he left. The protagonist flies into the shaft and runs straight into more robots coming up as backup. Then he releases his form and a blinding light erupts around him. The blast tears through the shaft, wiping out the robots inside and even smashing apart the hull itself. Robert can only stare in shock. Rocks blasted loose by the explosion crash down on several bots and crush them, but plenty are still left. Robert grumbles that Lee could have helped a little before leaving instead of taking his words that seriously. The Iron Jiangshi rush him with swords raised, and once he realizes he's alone, Robert starts cursing and opens fire with everything he has. Inside, Ritual watches the battle on a screen, badly hurt but still alert. He sees Robert going all out against the Iron Jiangshi. Robert fights like crazy, determined to wipe them out. Ritual's android scans his gear and identifies one weapon as the MZCT-106 recoilless laser. It also detects the TTR-8 automatic laser multi-missile system. Robert fires those missiles and tears through the Iron Jiangshi. When some get too close, he lifts off the ground. The android identifies the device as anti-gravity rockets. It reports that all of Robert's gear is Special Forces equipment, though outdated and no longer in active use. Ritual figures Robert isn't an active soldier, just a retired one, and decides he worried for nothing. He orders the android to kill Robert, and the others too. Then another alarm suddenly sounds, catching Ritual and the android off guard. He looks over, confused about why a second alert went off. The android reports that an intruder has entered District 8. Seconds later, it says the intruder already passed District 8 and entered District 7. Ritual is alarmed, unable to understand how anyone moved through security that fast. A moment later, the android reports the intruder moving from District 8 to 7, then 6, then 5. It keeps going, 4, 3, 2, before suddenly stopping when it can no longer track the intruder's position. Ritual is stunned. He snaps that no one should be able to break through all their security that quickly. The android starts rechecking the data to find the intruder. Then a bright burning light appears behind it. The android tries to announce the intruder's current location, but it freezes and instantly explodes. Steel fragments scatter across the room as Ritual looks around, trying to find where the attack came from. Meanwhile, the alarm triggers a response in the holding room, and the tubes begin filling with gas. The gas rises almost to the top, like part of the emergency system. Then the alarms suddenly stop. The tubes return to normal oxygen flow. Smoke from the blast fills the room while Ritual stands there, still trying to figure out who the intruder is. Then he sees a huge breach in the wall. Through that opening, Lee steps into the facility with his hands still in his pockets. Ritual realizes this is the person who tore through all his defenses, and he can only stare. MC calmly stares back, almost looking harmless. A moment later, he walks farther into the room toward Ritual. Lee says nothing. Ritual is still in shock, wondering who he is and how he got past every bot to reach this place. While Ritual is still staring, he moves in an instant and appears behind him. He heads towards Sarah-jung, who is strapped to the table, and Count Ritual turns to follow him. She is covered in blood and bound with one arm. The other has already been cut off. Ritual finally breaks the silence and demands to know who the protagonist is. Lee ignores him and keeps looking at Sarah-jung's blood-covered body. Then he says, Ritual has ruined a girl who had only just entered her youth. He adds that Ritual doesn't even treat people like people, pointing to the thousands trapped in the tubes. Looking straight at him, MC says he's nothing but a monster. Ritual just keeps staring, too surprised to react. Lee's glare alone shakes him. Ritual rudely asks again who he is and what he wants. The protagonist answers by raising a hand and using a martial art. Sacred Jung's soft sword, lying on the floor, suddenly reacts and scrapes against the ground. Then it lifts up and glides forward on its own. Lee tells Ritual he doesn't speak to things that aren't human, while continuing to call the sword. The blade leaps from the floor and flies between Ritual and MC. Instead of driving it through Ritual's head, he guides it past his ear, a warning of what he can do. The sword returns to the protagonist, and he catches it. Shocked, Ritual recognizes the technique as void manipulation. Ritual scans Lee and freezes. There's no internal drive in him, yet he just used void manipulation, a skill only someone at the transcendent level should be able to use. He checks again through the scanner in his eyes, then starts to wonder if MC is using ancient martial arts. Ritual holds his position, but he knows he's in trouble. Of all times, this guy had to show up now. He glances at his damaged body, still messed up from Sacred Jung's attack, and regrets getting hurt by her. He steps closer, still staring him down. Then he raises the sword toward Ritual's neck, making the Count flinch. Lee tells him he's not just inhuman, he's not even a real martial artist. He goes on, asking how Ritual can think about pointless things in the middle of a fight. That finally sets Ritual off. He snaps at the protagonist to shut up and charges in, throwing a deadly strike. A second later, Ritual sees blood pouring from his hand. Lee had already slipped past him and sliced off his left arm. Ritual turns and sees his arm lying on the floor. MC says that cut was for what he did to Sacred Jung. Cedrigan still lies unconscious on the operating table. He adds that now Ritual has to pay for making him angry. As he starts powering up, Lee warns the Count to get ready. The price for that is very high. A huge wave of energy pours from the protagonist into the lab, and things get even worse for Ritual. Ritual bitterly thinks he must be the unluckiest man alive. First the woman from the Sichuan Tang clan, and now this monster, all in one day. His internal drive is below 40% because of the chest wound Cedrigan gave him, so he knows he has almost no chance of winning. With no other option, he decides to gamble everything. Ritual activates his internal drive and forces it to maximum output. At once, the system sends out a danger warning. His damaged body can't handle that much power. It warns that he's past the safe limit and the heat is out of control. But Ritual ignores every alert and keeps pushing the drive at full power. Lee notices it and finds the technique bizarre. He wonders how the world got this twisted, with people using power their bodies can't handle, and thinks back to the old days of martial arts. Then a weak voice nearby tells him to kill Ritual. MC glances over to find where it came from. It's Cedrigan, awake now, but clearly in terrible shape. She warns him that Ritual is about to trigger a self-destruct, so he has to kill him first. Lee looks back at the Count, but he's already too late. Light starts pouring out of every opening in Ritual's body, like he's about to blow apart. He realizes there's no stopping it. Ritual takes his own life, and a blinding light swallows the facility as the explosion begins. Elsewhere, Robert's weapons start giving out. He's burned through all his ammo. His TTR-8 missiles are empty, and the system tells him to reload. His photon cannon runs dry too, and that needs reloading as well. Even his V-10 Laster Claymore starts failing, and the system reports it needs repairs. His fireproof suit is also breaking down and needs replacement parts. Worst of all, hundreds of bots are still surrounding him, ready to attack. Robert grumbles that he warned the protagonist about this. If the protagonist had stayed to help earlier, they could have cleaned this up easily. The machines don't care. Once they notice he stopped firing, they slowly move in. Robert yells for them to stop and says everyone should take a short break, calling them scrap metal bastards. Then he asks if they even know who he is and starts taking off his combat suit. He drops the front armor like he's done relying on it. Throwing the suit aside, he stands there and declares himself Robert Carlyle, Sergeant Major of the Special Tactical Unit of the Northern Galaxy Combat Forces. He pulls out 2 daggers and tells the bots not to get too scared. Then Robert leaps at them and shouts for all of them to come at once. The bots pause in surprise, then prepare to meet him head-on. Suddenly, a huge explosion erupts in front of him, and Robert is stunned by what he's seeing. The blast is coming from the underground facility. It rapidly spreads across a huge part of the moon's surface. The flash is massive and blinding. For a moment, it washes everything out. Robert stares at the blast, still trying to understand what just happened. He looks around in shock, mouth hanging open, still clutching his weapon. He just stands there, stunned by the sudden turn of events. The blast rises like a mushroom cloud, almost like a nuke hit the site. It's so huge it can be seen from far away, with debris launched out into space. Even the Greenwood ship notices the explosion. Kim, who had been secretly watching the S-Devil bounty hunters, is shocked by the sudden blast. Captain Cheju reports that they've detected a gigaton-scale electromagnetic explosion from Mount Hwa's moon. Kim says this is becoming far more serious than expected. He explains that an electromagnetic blast this big could only come from military forces, which suggests the human government may be involved. Then he orders the captain to erase every record of the incident, including the footage. As far as they're concerned, they saw nothing. The captain is stunned, especially since Kim had earlier wanted this reported to higher authority. Nearby, Officer Cho's celestial battleship also picks up the event. From his ship, he detects the massive explosion on Mount Hwa's moon. Watching the screen, he wonders what happened. Back on the moon, Robert is still standing there, completely confused. He finally asks what's going on. There was an explosion, and now every bot has shut down because the base can't command them anymore. Then he remembers why they came here in the first place, to save the captain. Since she was inside the facility, he worries she may not have made it. He takes off running toward the ruins, desperately wondering where she is. But another bright light suddenly appears and makes him stop. He can only hope the facility isn't exploding again. He looks up at the light in the sky, trying to figure out what it is. It grows brighter and starts moving toward him. Then Lee comes out of the light, standing on the operation board with Captain Tang Seri in his arms. Robert sees right away that she's badly hurt and missing an arm. MC looks down at her wounds, clearly heartbroken. Robert can only stare in shock. He stays silent, looking between Lee and the captain, just hoping she survives. Later, Officer Cho returns to his master and reports that Manhwa has gone back to normal. The master is calmly tending to a growing plant among the flowers as Cho adds that the test subjects have all gone back to their normal lives. Luckily, none of them remember anything, as if nothing ever happened. The master says it all sounds like some strange ghost story, and asks how Ritual could pull something like this off. Cho says the only possible answer is that they succeeded in commercializing entropy inversion. The master admits he has no idea what that means and tells Cho to explain it in normal words. Not everyone is a genius like him. Cho says entropy inversion is a technology that can reset time itself. Because it could create multiple universes, all experiments on it were banned. But Ritual didn't just finish the technology, he used it on all the test subjects at once. On top of that, he created other forbidden tech like one-way teleportation. Cho calls Ritual a genius greater than himself. The master says that with power like that, the human government's military factions would definitely back him. He calls them greedy and warns that playing with fire can burn them and the whole world. Then the master asks if Ritual is dead. Cho says he isn't completely sure. The master decides that means Ritual is still alive. Cho agrees. The master orders him to make sure Ritual is eliminated for good. He also tells Cho to get rid of the one using their sex martial arts, Lee. Cho doesn't argue. He only says he understands. Even though the order clearly bothers him, he keeps his thoughts to himself. Later, Cho returns to his ship and sits down as usual. He stays there for a while, lost in thought. Meanwhile, life on Manhwa seems to have gone back to normal. Sovereign Yang serves Lee some tea and says his daughter told him everything that happened. He tells Lee he doesn't know how to repay him for saving his daughter and the ones accused of rebellion. Lee says they weren't rebels at all, they were being controlled like puppets. He adds that from what a little kid told him, there are bigger villains behind this whole mess. Sovereign Yang agrees. He says that much is obvious, even with Manhwa weakened. Even so, nobody could break the planet's laws without backing from powerful people. Lady calmly sips his tea and says it sounds like the Sovereign plans to pretend none of this happened. That catches Sovereign Yang off guard. He's stunned that Lady saw right through him. Lady doesn't even look up and keeps drinking. Yang also notices how calm he is while talking about something this serious. Despite being so young, it makes him wonder who Lady really is. Yang finally answers that his top priority is protecting the nearly 10,000 members of Manhwa. If he has to throw away his pride to do that, so be it. Striking back right now would only hurt his people. He also points out that Lee doesn't seem nervous around him at all. After rising to the top, everyone treated him with careful respect. But with Lee, even the rude attitude somehow feels natural, and that confuses him. Lee tells him not to think too hard about it. He chose to live while looking down on the world and on everyone in it. That's simply how he lives. That answer hits Yang hard, and he starts wondering if Lee sees himself as some absolute being. After all, he just said he looks down on the whole world. So the Sword Sovereign asks who he really is. Lee says it's better not to know. Since Yang has chosen to keep his eyes closed to these things, he should leave them closed. Opening them will only bring more trouble. Sovereign Yang can only stare at him, puzzled. Lace may be the strangest person he's ever met. Lace gets up and heads outside. Before leaving, he says he wants to ask something. Since he doesn't know much about the world in this era, he asks if there's any technology that can restore a severed arm. Yang admits the question sounds absurd, but lately nothing has made sense anymore. At the same time, the Sev Devil ship has already left Manhwa and returned to space. Inside, Se Rang lies unconscious. She's sealed in a life support unit that keeps her breathing and barely alive. Sun Jia stands nearby, watching her vital signs. The readings are bad enough that Sun Jia leaves the medical room in silence. Robert stops her right away and asks how the captain is doing. Sun Jia bluntly says the captain is in serious trouble. Robert can't understand why. He says she only lost an arm and that should be fixable. Sun Jia explains that Tang Suryung's blood is filled with poison made by her own body, and the worst part is that this poison has no antidote. She's done everything she can to slow it down, but it keeps spreading into her organs. Panicking, Robert grabs her and says they need to rush to a major hospital. He demands to know why they haven't left yet. Sun Jia repeats that there is no cure, and the nearest big hospitals are far away, in places like Kina and Nebula. She's not sure the captain would survive the trip. Robert lets go and quietly asks what they can do now. Walking away, Sun Jia says they should get ready to say goodbye. She reminds him that the captain always joked that after she died, they should strap a shield to her and send her into space so she could explore forever. She says she'll save up enough money to buy good armor for the send-off. Robert just stands there, crushed by what she means. The ship feels empty now. Sunja goes to get some water, but she just stares at the cup, then she pours it over her head. The water runs over her eyes, the closest thing she has to crying. Then her eyes widen when she notices something strange. A large ship is outside, belonging to the West Heaven Sword Matron. Sunja is alarmed. She has no idea why the Sword Matron has come after them again. On that ship, the Sword Matron watches the Cess Devil. She seems deeply worried, as if she already knows about what happened, and it's clear she wants to speak with the bounty hunters. Back on Manhwa, Sovereign Yang notices something unusual in the sky. The West Heaven Sword Matron's ship has entered the planet's airspace, and no one knows why. The Sword Sovereign is clearly unhappy about this sudden visit. A Manhwa security enforcer, Man Sanjo Muak, comes to report that the ship belongs to the West Heaven Sword Matron. The Sword Sovereign recognizes her as Kim Yanhua. Sanjo Muak says they tried contacting her several times, but the ship never replied. Yang says she clearly didn't come to see him, so he tells him to leave her alone. That frustrates Sanjo Muak. He argues that this is Manhwa territory, and being the West Heaven Sword Matron doesn't give her the right to disrespect their sect. Yang only smiles and tells him to calm down. Manhwa is rebuilding, and this is the worst time to start trouble with another sect. It's obvious Senjan Muak still doesn't know how badly they were hit. When he tries to protest, the Sword Sovereign cuts him off and says patience is their strongest weapon right now. As he walks away, Yang adds that they have to endure it until the sect is strong enough to fight back. Senjan Muak is left standing there, confused, but he has no choice except to obey. He still doesn't understand what Yang means by saying the sect is rebuilding. Meanwhile, the West Heaven Sword Matron's ship stays in orbit and still ignores the planet's security calls. Inside, the Sword Matron tells Li she came to meet him about an important matter, calling him revered master. She says she may be able to offer unexpected help. It turns out she has already taken Seryong's unconscious body from the Sebdevil ship. She tells Li she can heal the girl who came with him, Tang Seryong. Li asks if that means she can reattach the severed arm, wondering how advanced technology has become. The Sword Matron says restoring the arm is easy, basic medicine really. The hard part is removing the blood poison in her heart that has already spread through her body. Lei didn't know about that poison before. Hearing it, he says Tang Seryong must be from the Sichuan Tang clan. No wonder she's reckless and hot-headed. The Sword Matron praises his sharp insight and says the blood poison in her heart is a secret art of the Sichuan Tang clan, allowed only to its nobles. Li asks how she knows that, but in the end he accepts her offer and asks her to save Tang Seryong. She doesn't answer right away and simply waits for him to respond to what she said earlier. Then Li tells her that since she helped him, she can go ahead and name her price. He asks directly what she wants. The Sword Matron says there's someone she wants to meet, and she's sure Li can open the way. Li notes that her voice is full of killing intent. She's furious. He says it sounds like she means someone he's met before. Not long ago, he met a man who made him want to beat him to death too. Li adds that if she means that person, she's too late, because he already died. The Sword Matron solemnly says Ritual is still alive. The real problem is that he's hiding somewhere much deeper. He's apparently concealed in a place called the Galactic Nebula in the Vista Union system, on the 108 Zu-R4H moon. That's exactly why she needs Li's help. Meanwhile, on the 108 Zu-R4H moon, there's a military droid dump owned by the human government's Southern Galactic Corp. A strange woman walks up to a pod standing in the middle of the site. She carries a cloth, ready to cover whoever is inside the pod, and waits patiently. The pod slowly opens and a bright light spills out. It keeps opening, draining the liquid inside. The setup looks like something from Ritual's lab. The fluid spills across the ground and runs past the woman's bare feet. When the pod fully empties, the figure inside is still hidden by the light. As she steps closer, a naked man is revealed, crouching inside. He tries to cover himself and looks like someone who's been through experiments. The woman approaches, wraps him in the cloth, and welcomes him back to life, calling him the Count. Count Ritual looks at her, completely confused. He asks who she is, clearly not recognizing her. She introduces herself as Ritual Archimond, one of his vessels. Even stranger, Ritual shares the name Archimond, and Ritual looks exactly like the West Heaven Sword Matron. She tells him to wait until his memories come back. Ritual can only stare at her, totally confused. Ritual says nothing else. In her heart, she believes he'll love her again once he remembers everything. Elsewhere, the Sword Matron shows Li the moon where Ritual is hiding. She explains that it's a military droid dump site, and she's sure that's where Ritual is staying. The problem is that the place belongs to the human government, so the planetary defense forces guard it. He asks if the human government is an official authority. He adds that a child once told him something similar, meaning trouble. The Sword Matron lightly jokes that nobody has used the term official body in thousands of years, then says he really knows how to make people curious. She confirms that the human government is an official power, and its relationship with the martial world is distant but not hostile. Li says that means they keep some space but never fully separate. To him, it proves the ruling class still protects its power the same way. She glances at him, wondering why he talks like someone from ages long past, and who he really is. The protagonist tells her to stop circling around it and say what she wants him to do. Meanwhile, Major Bernardo, commander of the Planetary Defense Forces, looks out from his office. The Sword Matron says she wants Lee to distract the Planetary Defense Forces so she can reach Ritual. At the same time, Major Bernardo watches activity inside the facility. He speaks to someone behind him, saying he just got word that the lab was completely destroyed. Behind him, Ritual is seated while Ritual Archimon stands at his back. He tells the commander they ran into an unexpected issue. Ritual explains that he had to wipe out the evidence because keeping the project secret matters most. The commander mocks him, saying his tongue seems fine if he can still talk so smoothly. Then he asks if Ritual will sound that calm in front of the investors, doubting even all his lives would be enough to cool their rage after the lab was destroyed. Ritual replies that the project hasn't failed. Steel City was only one part of it. He says they already collected enough test data, so in that sense the operation was a success. Now they'll move on to the real goal, the Iron Jiangxi project. With that, he starts to leave, but Major Bernardo stops him with one more request. He asks Ritual if he can make another copy of the thing beside him, meaning Ritual Archimon. Ritual is clearly offended, though he doesn't turn around. The commander complains that he's been posted in this remote place for too long and he's bored. If making a new one is too much trouble, he says Ritual can just lend him this one for a few days. Ritual says he'll think about it, then leaves with Ritual Archimon. He's deeply irritated by the request, but decides not to make a scene. In his mind, Bernardo is pure trash. Bernardo, meanwhile, can't understand why Ritual treats something non-human like a real person, and he finds it insulting. Somewhere else, heavy rain falls. Tang Young seems healthy again, and she still has her soft sword with her. Soaked by the rain, she stands there blankly, looking around. She wonders why all her memories feel so dark. Then the Sword Matron appears before her and says Tang Young may seem careless, but she's been hiding behind a thick mask this whole time as a noble of the Sichuan Tang clan. Tang Young only stares, not really understanding what she means. The Sword Matron tells her to come with her. She's here to take her back. Tang Young refuses, saying she has to protect the transference gate behind her. The Sword Matron says this isn't reality. It's just her delusion. She has nothing left to protect. Having lost everything, she's trapped in that illusion. So the matron tells her to return with her. Tang Young angrily snaps back that she'll guard the gate even if it kills her, because no one can pass through it. Then her eyes widen at what happens next. The Sword Matron drives her sword into her chest. Tang Young stares at the blade in shock. The Sword Matron says that if she keeps resisting, she'll take her by force. At that moment, Tang Young wakes inside a tube. She becomes aware and starts struggling through the liquid, wondering where she is. Later, the Sword Matron returns to her charging terminal to refill the internal energy she spent saving Tang Young. The system reports the internal energy drive is recharging, 3.6 cycles restored, bringing it to 84%. Then Tang Young enters, and the Sword Matron asks how she's feeling. Tang Young stays silent at first. It's rare for someone like her to meet the Sword Matron alone. The Sword Matron tells her the reattached arm will feel strange for a while, so she should focus on rehab until her neural network stabilizes. Tang Young thanks her for saving her life and vows to repay that debt. The Sword Matron says she's thinking too highly of herself. Debts only exist between equals. She adds that no matter her tie to the Sichuan Tang family, she's too insignificant for even her peers to notice. There was also no real reason for the Sword Matron to spend so much energy saving her. Tang Young asks why she saved her anyway, if that's the case. The Sword Matron doesn't avoid the question. She says the Sichuan Tang family is truly cruel for raising the half-blood poison inside her heart. Removing it was so difficult she almost failed. Then she looks into a nearby cup that holds the parasite behind the poison. She says the rumors were true. The deadliest poison passed down only to the head of the Sichuan Tang family really does exist. Tang Young grows uneasy hearing such private clan matters discussed. Politely, she asks for the poison back, saying it's her soul. A moment later, the system announces that the internal energy drive is fully charged. The Sword Matron removes the cables and tells her that when she chose death, she already activated the half-blood poison, meaning she had abandoned it, so now it no longer belongs to her. Tang Young can only stare in despair, realizing she can't fight back or argue. The Sword Matron says the poison is hers now, but to Tang Young's shock, she says she'll return it to her. In exchange, Tang Young must tell her everything she knows about that man without leaving out a single detail. Tang Young freezes, wondering who she means. Then her eyes widen when she realizes it's MC. Elsewhere, MC returns to the Manhwa planet to speak with Sovereign Yang. The Sword Sovereign says he wanted to meet again to repay the kindness they received, addressing him as revered master. The protagonist tells him to let it go. He helped because he wanted to. A cup of tea is enough for him. But the Sword Sovereign says debtor and creditor don't see things the same way, and Manhwa isn't used to owing anyone. So Sovereign Yang offers honest advice as repayment. Stay away from the West Heaven. Sword Matron. He calls her a poisonous spider living in the deepest dark. At the same time, Tang Young leaves the room after speaking with the Sword Matron. As she walks, she notices someone strange nearby. When she looks over, she sees Elena standing there with a sad expression. Back on Manhwa, the Sword Sovereign tells Lee that the Sword Matron spreads darkness to everything she touches. Tang Young ignores Elena completely and keeps walking, wanting no trouble. But Elena suddenly warns her not to feel safe just because she lived. One day she'll die by her hands. Even the matron's own flesh and blood is affected by that darkness. On the ship, Tang Suri-young asks Elena why she's threatening her. Did they really have some score to settle? She says she doesn't remember anything like that. Elena answers that the only reason she hasn't acted yet is because her mother saved her. The two women fall into a tense silence. Tang Suri-young finally walks off, saying Elena really is just like her mother. Elena angrily tells her not to ignore her and repeats that she'll die by her hands. Tang Suri-young keeps brushing her off and says Elena can say whatever she wants. Before leaving, the captain turns back and asks one question. She faces Elena, who waits closely for what she's about to say. Tang Suri-young asks why Elena keeps speaking to her so casually, and just how old she is. On Mount Hua, Li thanks the Sword Sovereign for the warning, but says he'll deal with it his own way. Sovereign Yang adds that he doesn't know what favor she asked of MC, but her real goal must be something else. He believes she's chasing someone important to her. Then he tells him an old Jiang Hu saying, any man who meets the West Heaven Sword Matron never escapes her grasp. That's because of how extreme the ideal she's chasing really is. He says he met her too when he was younger. Back then, she told him she wanted to bear his child, believing a child made from both their bloodlines would be the most perfect being in the world. He says she was stunning, and even though he was already engaged, turning her down wasn't easy. He even admits that part of him still regrets saying no. Young adds that rumors say more than 100 men fell for her. At the same time, Richel enters his lab on the moon in Nebula, while the Sword Sovereign explains that those men all gave her their genes. Inside, Richel checks on Richel Archimond, a copy of the Sword Matron he created. Seeing her brings back ugly memories and his face immediately sours. The Sword Sovereign goes on, warning Lee that she always leaves those men behind once she gets what she wants. That's why people call her the Black Widow. Like the spider, she uses her mate and then destroys him. The protagonist asks if that means she has a lot of children. The Sovereign says yes, over 100, maybe one for every sample she took. Shocked, Lee wonders how she could give birth to that many when she still looks so young. Young tells him she doesn't have them the normal way. He explains that she grows them through gene cultivation in test tubes. With that method, she could make 100 at once. MC finds the whole thing strange and says the world has really changed. Then he asks why she wanted so many children when raising even one is hard. Young says she's chasing the absolute one, a perfect being. It's her way of reaching a dream she could never achieve herself. But none of her creations ever satisfied her. That's when humanity caught her interest. The Sovereign warns him one more time, not to get too close to her. Lee calls that a real shame, and stands after finishing his tea. The Sovereign looks confused and asks what he means by a shame. He walks off, saying it would have been nice if she were his type, because sometimes he wishes he had a child of his own. The Sovereign can only stare, not sure how to answer that. Later, Sir Yong returns to the ship's bridge and gets mobbed by her crew. Robert throws his arms around her while Sunja grabs her leg. Both of them gush that they knew she'd make it back. Clearly bothered, Sir Yong tries to pull Robert off and asks for some space, but he refuses, saying everyone missed her too much. Off to the side, Lee just keeps eating his hot dog, completely unfazed by the noise. Once she finally gets free, Sir Young walks over to him and awkwardly admits she heard he saved her. That's her version of thanks, and she only has one thing to ask. After a short pause, she asks if he's older than her. Lee only gives her a puzzled look. Taking that as a yes, she decides he must be older. Maybe Uncle old, maybe even Grandpa old. Then she suddenly grabs the plate of hot dogs from in front of him and tells Sunja to bring him healthy food instead, saying someone his age shouldn't eat this stuff. When the protagonist lifts the last bite on his fork, she orders him to put it down. That instantly kills his calm mood. A deadly aura bursts out as he enters his martial form and warns her to back off if she wants to live. Robert and Sunja can only stare, as their captain and ancient guest clash again. With Sir Yang, care and violence seem to come together. Far away, in the 32nd district of the Heavenly Demon Sect, Jang Ri-tak is shaken by new information. He stammers and asks the sword matron in front of him to say it again. In a calm voice, she confirms what they learned about the man called Li. 2,000 years ago, a man willingly sealed himself inside a stone chamber under Mount Tai on Earth. His name, she says, was Li Mak Jin, and he was clearly tied to their Heavenly Demon Sect. Jang Ri-tak impatiently waves that part off. He says he got it already and wants to hear the next part again. Looking him straight in the eye, the sword matron delivers the real shock. Li Mak Jin once called himself the Heavenly Demon Supreme. Jang Ri-tak goes pale with shock like the title itself hit him. Elsewhere, the Duke is in his lab loading data from a chip while his assistant says everything checks out. Once the process is done, the Duke orders it returned to its master, and instantly the chip flies into his hand. After that, he goes to Bernardo and presents the item he asked for. Bernardo can't believe it. The iron-seeking Jiangxi project was supposed to turn living human bodies into battle droids. On top of that, they were meant to use superhuman martial arts. But no matter how he looked at it, this thing barely seemed human. The Duke says it soon will, and then it leaps onto the other soldier's face and crawls into his nose. His whole body starts bulging with veins. The Duke explains that this android enters a human body, shuts down the brain's nerves, takes over the nervous system, and turns the victim into a living android. It also carries data on the deadliest martial arts in the world. In short, it's built to kill. So why does it look like that? Well, its genes didn't match the test subjects, and that's why it ended up deformed. The chip comes back out and the man drops to the floor. The Duke tells them to prepare for tomorrow's demonstration. Now that the prototype is ready, they need to show the investors and stop the complaints. Bernardo says they waited 10 years for this, so how is he supposed to accept that his 500 million investment turned into a monster like that? The Duke tells him not to worry, once it meets its real owner, it'll work properly. Then he says Bernardo should go and become that true owner. The perfect project. Iron Jiangxi. Back on Lee's ship, Sunja says they've reached the farthest point they can go. Any closer would cross the security line. Sir Yang hesitates and Robert warns that if they mess this up, they'll become wanted by the human government and never live in peace again. When they check the matriarch's ship, they see it's holding the same distance on the opposite side. So Sir Yang orders them to ready the landing pod. If things go bad, they'll just act like they were never together. Then she goes to Lee and tells him this is where he gets off. From here on, it'll be just the two of them. But MC tells her not to come. He'll go alone. Calling him Mr. He, Sir Yang says she needs to control the landing pod. Robert immediately yells back, asking why she can't just use autopilot, especially since she barely knows how to fly the ship anyway. Sir Yang admits she still has unfinished business with that man too. Lee tells her to stay. He says he still has a far greater debt to repay, and if it helps, she should treat her own matter as something already over. If she keeps clinging to the past, she'll never move forward. The more a person lives in the past, the farther they drift from the life in front of them. Just then, Bernardo hears an alarm. Someone has crossed the boundary line. The heavenly demon has finally arrived. At the same time, someone asks that same chief who he is. The voice belongs to Warren, who mistakes him for some kind of pest and asks where he came from. The Duke can't believe his eyes. Is he imagining this? Because that man is really here, and Bernardo sees him too. He's a pure natural, with no internal units or built-in weapons. Even so, at first glance, Bernardo thinks he looks like a demon wandering through the area. Bad luck for a beggar. So he orders him killed, and a droid bursts out from beneath the sand to attack. But the Duke rushes in, panicking, and yells that this is not someone Bernardo can handle. He orders emergency alert mode, and tells them to activate every defensive weapon they have. Bernardo still doesn't get the panic. He thinks Lee is just a normal natural. Then the droid falls apart just because the protagonist walks toward it. Seeing the barrier react, the Duke orders them to analyze the martial art MC just used, and if needed, connect to the government's main data network to identify it. Bernardo stands up and demands to know what he thinks he's doing, since he's the one in charge. The Duke fires back that if the project fails because Bernardo didn't listen, not even he will be safe. If he wants to survive, he needs to use everything he has to stop Lee. As he moves closer, more defense lines activate to block him. The Duke calls someone and says to bring it fast. They have to speed up the project no matter what. The one he means is Warren, and Rachel Archimon reports that she has arrived and will bring him personally. Then Lee notices a tornado growing larger and larger until a giant Buddha appears. The heavenly demon asks who it is, but a huge hand slams down on him at once. Even from space, the tornado can be seen. Bernardo thinks the Duke exaggerated, but from beneath the giant hand, Lee blasts a hole through it and shoots up to the top. Bernardo screams for them to kill him for good. The tornado starts turning red, and the protagonist says true Buddha energy comes from emptiness, so how could it be filled with such dirty violence? To him, this is just a fake made in Buddha's image. Then the heavenly demon draws his sword and tears a massive hole through the statue's palm, and charged straight through it at full speed. The moment he pierced its head, Bernardo felt real fear. Back on the ground, Lee figured that chaos was enough to let her slip inside. Then thousands of droids rushed after him. At the same time, the Duke finally identified the martial art. It was the advanced technique of the heavenly sex demon heart sword. Right away, he tried to contact Bernardo, but got no reply. Someone told him not to bother. Communications would be blocked for a while. The Duke knew that voice at once. It was the matriarch. He called her Yonghua Rin, and she coldly said that if he used her name so casually, they must have known each other once. Looking shaken, he asked if she really didn't remember him. Her expression gave him the answer. He said it was probably because of his face. An experiment had taken half of it. Then he brought up that night 25 years ago when she came to his lab in the Galactic Citadel. He remembered it clearly. It was the first time he had seen a woman that beautiful. Back then, the matriarch had called him handsome, more than the rumors said, and praised the greatest scientist in history for having that face. Looks like I got lucky today, Yonghua Rin had said. She held his face and suggested they have a child together. Because with their blood, she believed they could create the most perfect being in the world. So why was she staring at him like he meant nothing now? The Duke shouted, asking if she had truly forgotten him. Her answer was simple. She doesn't remember failures. Then she drew her sword, annoyed that he'd made her think of him again. Meanwhile, Bernardo was falling apart. He had already lost 73% of the perimeter troops, so he called headquarters for backup. Too late, Lee had already walked right past him. Bernardo demanded to know who he was. MC, it's already carved on your grave, he answered. Then he asked his own question. Where was the half-monster man? The Duke couldn't accept being called a failure. He insisted she was wrong, that he could still grant the wish she once wanted, most to create the ultimate perfect being. Even if she failed, he would make it happen no matter what. He wasn't the failure, he said she was, for leaving him. Then he screamed that he had completed it after giving his whole life, heart, and soul to the work. The matriarch answered by running him through. So yes, she did remember him, and that only made her more annoyed because he talked too much. When Lee arrived, all he found was the Duke's corpse. The cuts were perfectly clean. She had ripped out his heart without the slightest pause. Whatever small bond they once had, she showed no mercy. But then the Duke started speaking to him, saying she didn't understand his worth yet, but soon she would, and she'd see how valuable he really was. Lee told him to let it go. He was already dead, and forgetting was death's greatest kindness, so the sooner he accepted it, the better. The Duke refused. He said he wouldn't die because his creation was proof of his eternal worth. Just then, Warren arrived with Richel Archimon. Lee was stunned. Why was that girl here? He moved at once to ask her, but a golden light flooded the area. Bernardo's alarm blared again. He wondered what was happening now. As the base ordered him to flee in the emergency ship, he hadn't given that command. Then a girl's voice said she had. She called it a favor for old time's sake. If he wanted a soldier's ending, he could stay behind. That would suit him too. Another massive ship had appeared, leaving Tang Seryong and the others stunned. They had never seen anything like it. Sunja said it had appeared out of nowhere just seconds ago. Robert said that wasn't even the worst part. If you check the insignia, the ship belonged to the human government. Meanwhile, Lee stepped back, watching Warren give off an enormous amount of energy. The Duke laughed, saying he had been right. That was his other self, the one holding his true value. And that power was only the start. The girl was an empty vessel that could absorb anything until she reached the height of her strength. Richel Archimon told him to stop talking. She needed to treat her right away. The Duke said he was already done, and she knew it, because she was also his other self. So he gave her free will, and told her to live however she wanted. Then he opened his chest and pulled out a blue heart, saying she could use it on the girl. He told her to go out into the world and live, because with that power no one would even dare meet her eyes. Richel Archimon looked at him, but as she reached for the heart, Lee told her to stop. One madman's life was already too much. Whatever the reason behind this, she should ignore it, and return the girl to normal. It was a warning he wouldn't repeat it. Richel Archimon replied that this wasn't madness. He had simply lived desperately and fiercely. But Lee didn't need to worry, because his life would end here. From now on, she would live the way she always wanted. She walked up to Warren, hugged her, and said she was giving her freedom too. In return, she asked for just one thing. If they ever met again, Warren should hug her tightly. The moment she did, Richel's body broke apart, and Warren returned to normal before collapsing to the floor. Then they detected a Leviathan-class fighter near the edge of the atmosphere. It belonged to the human government's inspection office. If they had brought a ship like that, it meant only one thing. An orbital bombardment was coming. Robert shouted that they were finished. Tang Seryong asked why the ship wasn't moving. Had they not seen them? Sunja doubted it. They had definitely been spotted. Then the girl from before suddenly appeared behind them. They jumped, asking where she came from. She smiled faintly, recognized Tang Seryong, and called her the last descendant of the Tang family of Sichuan. Tang Seryong was stunned, but the redhead told her not to be afraid. Just act like this never happened, like they had never seen her. She'd even erased the report she got on the way. Since she was just a bureaucrat, she'd leave this mess to someone else. So it was best if they all pretended they had never met. Then she requested a change of plan, calling it Plan 6RT. Tang Seryong asked Sunja what was happening below. Sunja said every droid had been shut down. They had disabled them because they were preparing for orbital bombardment. That made Robert even more nervous, while the redhead smiled sweetly and ordered them to fire. A small drill dropped into the desert among the droids and slowly began to spin. The redhead casually said bureaucrats like her hate writing long reports. Then she told them to get moving fast. They needed to be at least half a light year away in 5 minutes to survive. As she disappeared, she warned them not to show up in front of her again. Tang Seryong still didn't understand what orbital bombardment even meant, but Robert, who had served in the army, shouted that the woman was insane. He had heard stories about a weapon that could wipe out moons, even planets, and only they had that kind of power. Sunja confirmed it seemed real. Something was drilling into the moon's core, and if it blew up there, the whole moon would be gone. They had only 3 minutes to escape, but Tang Seryong gave no order. She just kept staring at the moon. On the redhead ship, she was clearly enjoying all of this. Soon the ground started to rise, and only 2 minutes remained before the blast. Her ship could survive the shockwave with shields at full power, but she lowered them to 80% because that would make it more fun. She also spotted Bernardo escaping in the emergency ship. That part was obvious, but what she couldn't understand was why. After being warned, the others still weren't running. Then Lee's ship finally moved, but instead of fleeing, it flew straight toward the moon. Robert started yelling that they were all going to die with no chance at all. Tang Seryong answered that she wouldn't die, her lifeline was long, and she planned to live to at least 80. Sunja, who had no palm lines or fate at all, still said her lifespan was 5,000 years, though even she knew what Tang Seryong was doing was crazy. As they got closer, the temperature climbed to 300 degrees. Robert shouted that he didn't want to be cooked alive. Sunja picked up a life sign ahead, but the area around it was already at least 700 degrees. Then they saw Lee floating out, carrying Warren. The flames were burning his skin, and he muttered that this was absurd. The heat and chaos felt like hell itself. Then he saw a demon even bigger than himself watching him. Was this finally his end? The heavenly demon wondered. He found it almost sad, because if this had happened yesterday, he would have gladly thrown himself into that demon's mouth. But not today. He had promised to protect that girl, so he told the demon to back off, swearing he'd come find it himself once she was safe, but only Lee could see it. Then Tang Ser-young yelled at him to stop hallucinating and get on the ship. On the redhead's ship, they reported the outside temperature had reached 1,500 degrees, and the massive explosion would come in 10 seconds. Yet there was still a faint life sign. She figured the warning had been pointless. Once the core fully blew, the heat would jump to 6,000 degrees, and not even a god could live through that. Great, she thought. That means no report for me. Even inside the sealed door, Lee and Warren still couldn't get in. The heat was too extreme. If they opened it, everyone inside would burn to ash. Tang Sura said it didn't matter. Since they were all about to die, they might as well die together. After the blast, the protagonist was no longer burning, and a monk-like figure stood before him. Lee said he never thought they'd meet again. The monk answered that their reunion was bound to happen, even after 2,000 years. Then the story shifts to the past, to a damp place. The monk tells MC to ask his question. When Lee stays silent, the monk tells him not to hesitate. After all, he was the one who came looking for him at the edge of the world of the living. The heavenly demon sat beside a katana, clearly exhausted. He had walked over countless bodies, yet his knees and legs still felt cold. The heavenly demon asked if the monk knew who he was, and the monk said no. Still, he said some things can be seen without knowing someone. Before Lee could even walk, he was already called a demon, because others took away his right to choose how to live. Instead of food, he was forced to live on death. But no amount of death ever filled that hunger. Lee knew why. He had lost his reason to exist. He answered that none of that mattered. He was still strong. The monk agreed. In terms of power, there was nowhere higher for him to go. Even now, he could slaughter hundreds of thousands who dared stand before him. The monk agreed again, but said the hunger only grew, because blood was never the right food for someone like him. Then the monk said he would answer the question. If Lee wanted to end his empty life, no one in that age could do it for him. Only his own choice could bring his end. Choosing death by his own will had never even crossed his mind, because his life belonged only to him. Lee asked, if life isn't mine, then how could death be mine even more? The monk said nothing. With no answer that satisfied him, the protagonist decided to leave. But the monk stopped him, saying that if he could choose neither life nor death, then he would send him somewhere that was neither. It might be a dream he would never wake from, but if he did wake, maybe a new path would appear. Now the story moves to the next part of the scene, returning to the present. The monk says Lee looks different from 2,000 years ago. The dark gloom behind him was gone, and there was life in his eyes. So he asked if MC had found a new way to live. He said no. If anything, that path had disappeared. The heavenly demon sect was freed from darkness and now lived under the sun, so the one purpose that kept him going was gone. His life had become empty again. So why was he still alive? The monk asked. Wasn't this the perfect chance? If Lee accepted this heat, it would melt him into ash and leave nothing behind. Why was he holding on so hard to life? Why keep struggling now? Because of a promise. He promised to protect that girl. The monk said it was pointless because death wipes away everything, even promises. Hadn't Lee seen the universe? Before something that vast, he was less than dust. So what could a promise from dust possibly mean? And the girl he was so desperate to save, he barely even knew her name. Even if he fought, he still couldn't protect her. The protagonist said he knew they might die anyway. But still, shouldn't he at least try until the very end? Even if he burned away completely without even a speck left, shouldn't he still try? What do life and death really matter? If death can erase the meaning of a life, then that life was lived wrong in the first place. Now he understood that death can never truly end a life as long as it leaves behind meaningful memories, even if that life is smaller than dust. Because life goes beyond death. At that moment, the monk bowed and said Lee had reached the border of life and death, the realm of eternity. Right when everything should have exploded, a huge light burst from the door where MC stood and the flames vanished in an instant. From afar, Tang Ser-young stared in shock at the figure of a white-haired Lee, but their ship had taken heavy damage and could no longer move. Sunja warned Tang Ser-young that repairs would cost a fortune, and they were broke. Still, Robert and Tang Ser-young couldn't take their eyes off him. Then the red-headed girl teleported onto their ship again, demanding to know what they had done, but none of them knew either, so everyone looked at Lee, who was stuffing himself with sausages. The redhead wondered who he really was. She couldn't find any record of him in her databases. Her first move was to yell, asking who he was and what exactly he had done. Then she suddenly froze. Lee had locked eyes with her. He asked who she was. The redhead introduced herself as Athena Sun, a 24-year-old administrative officer from the Human Government's Inspection Office. Then without meaning to, she blurted out that she was single, had dated 4 men, dumped 3, got dumped by 1, never even kissed him, and acted cold about physical contact even though she secretly liked it. She had no idea why she was saying any of that. Lee then asked if she was the one behind the explosion. Athena said she only carried out orders to hide the Iron Jangwashi project, no matter what. They feared the incident could spark a civil war between factions. The protagonist said he didn't care about any of that. Because of her explosion, these kids got hurt, so she had to put everything back the way it was. Could she do that? Athena confidently said yes. Right away, insect-like robots began repairing the ship. Meanwhile, Sunja checked Warren's condition and found no brain damage or physical injuries. She had only fainted and would wake up soon. Lee said that was a relief. While that was happening, Athena asked Tang Sara-young who MC really was. Tang Sara-young said Athena should ask him herself, since she didn't know either, then started bringing up the shady things Athena did at night when nobody saw her. Athena snapped and told her to shut up, warning her not to reveal a single word she'd said. Tang Sara-young just teased her, asking what she was going to do. Athena froze again when she noticed Lee staring at her from behind. A moment later, she was back on her own ship, wondering what just happened. What exactly was he? Robert and Sunja said everything was working normally again. Tang Sara-young corrected them. Not everything. She looked at Lee's hair and asked if he actually liked it. He asked what she thought. Tang Sara-young honestly said no. It made him look like someone trying too hard to seem cool and tough. The protagonist agreed. He didn't like it either. So they cut it back to how it was before and dyed it black again. Back at the Heavenly Demon Sect, Jong Rita was shaken after speaking with the matriarch, so he asked headquarters for permission to check something. Whether anyone had willingly sealed himself inside stone 2,000 years ago. The system said the age was unknown, but the name was Lee Mak-jin. When he tried to dig deeper, the whole system went into red alert. On Mount Hoa's planet, Warren's father felt deeply ashamed that he hadn't even noticed what his daughter had gone through. Lee asked if she was all right. After a full checkup just to be safe, they found nothing wrong. The best part was that she didn't remember any of it. At that moment, she was preparing plum blossom tea in the kitchen. She always did that for guests she truly respected. But Warren noticed something strange. The petals began circling around her. Her father chose to ignore it again, but her feelings for him were something he would quietly treasure in his heart, along with his shame. Lee told him there's nothing shameful about bowing your head to protect your child. That's a father's duty. And for a father with nearly 1,000 children, shame is more like a luxury. Warren's father glanced at him, thinking MC felt different now. The pressure around him had always been overwhelming, but this was on another level. Lee said goodbye and told them he would leave at dawn, asking them to forget about each other. After he left, Warren's father lowered his head. Elsewhere, Tang Sara-young was in her room, looking at herself in the mirror and checking the mark that had been put back on her arm. Then Lee arrived, asking if he could come in. Tang Sara-young said that was something he should have asked before opening the door. Later, they sat together on top of the ship. Tang Sara-young asked why he had gone to her room. Instead, Lee asked what happened to the Tang clan of Sichuan, catching her off guard. She said, in short, they were all destroyed. It ended in total ruin, and everyone died except her. The subject was still too painful, so she didn't want to say more. He asked if she wanted revenge. He called it a pointless path. Still, if she wanted, he would help. Tang Sara-young asked why he was contradicting himself. Why help with something useless? Because your life matters, Lee said, and to begin a new life, you need to finish that revenge. Tang Sara-young said that was hard to accept. She knew he was strong, but they weren't close enough to share something like her revenge. It was better if she handled her own business. The protagonist replied that, at least to him, they were close. In this new life, Tang Sara-young was one of the only people he knew. And if that still wasn't enough, he'd even dig up old ties and repay the Tang family that way. Back then, the one man MC chose to remember was Tang Chengwu. Even without accepting it, he kept calling MC his friend. As the Tang clan's young master, he left MC with a debt. Tang Sara-young said that debt was from 2,000 years ago, over 100 generations back. It was too old to pass down, so he should let it go. He told her revenge doesn't care what sword it uses anything it must, even its own heart. So if he couldn't stop her from being foolish, he'd be that sword. Then the protagonist got up and told her to think it over. Tang Sara-young said there was one more thing she needed. When Lee asked what, she said, help me make money. In the Andromeda Nebula on planet Tartaruga, Tang Sara-young brought MC to the Scoundrels Market. It was a place where people sold martial arts and all kinds of odd items. Lee asked why it was so empty. She explained that scoundrels avoid moving in daylight. Even accidental eye contact can start trouble. He asked what happened if that did occur. Here, it often led to fights, and showing weakness meant you wouldn't last long. That's why they come out at night. Then they can act like they didn't see each other. So why come during the day, Lee asked. Tang Sara-young said it was simple. They were looking for someone who could move around in broad daylight. Right then, 3 men dropped in behind them, and the girl riding one of them knew Tang Sara-young right away. She mocked her for showing up alone, saying she must be tired of living. Tang Sara-young fired back with a joke about how she still hadn't grown at all. That only made the girl angrier, and she pulled out a red sword. Tang Sara-young told her to calm down. It had been 7 years, so she could at least say hello. Then she introduced her to Lee as Beg Sahui, same age as her, tiny in size, once sweet but much nastier after learning she'd never grow more. Even so, they used to be close. Watching the smaller girl try to rip Tang Sara-young apart, the protagonist doubted they were ever that close. Tang Sara-young claimed it was all over a small joke. She had only borrowed a secret manual from Sahui's family, the demonic ghost sword, and close friends borrow things, right? Then she admitted she sold it. That's also why people started calling her Demon. That even explained how she got the huge ship. Sahui was furious. Selling it was beyond crazy. Tang Sara-young told her to settle down. she came to return something far better, worth many times more than the manual, an ancient top-tier martial art treasure. Sahui didn't believe her and demanded to see it right away. Tang Sarayong slipped behind Lee and said, "This is it." "Me?" MC wondered. Tang Sarayong reminded him he'd promised to help her make money. After that, Sahui dragged both of them to her father, saying she didn't bring Tang Sarayong because she trusted her. She just needed permission to kill her. Tang Sarayong told Lee not to mind that. Sahui actually liked her. Then she explained this was Triad Headquarters, one of the 4 groups that ruled Tartaruga, and Sahui's father was its leader. He asked what exactly he was supposed to do. Tang Sarayong said it was easy. He just had to sell himself for a very high price. The sect leader said seeing her again was outrageous. He never wanted to face her in this life. But Triad Law came first, betray the group and steal its treasure, and the punishment was death. Sahui smiled, sure Tang Sarayong was about to die. Tang Sarayong argued she didn't steal the manual, she only borrowed it, and now she had come to return it. He answered that even bringing it back wouldn't be enough. A debt grows with interest. Once again she moved behind Lee and told him not to worry. Sahui snapped at her to stop stalling and accept death already. She'd make it quick and painless. Her father cut in and said he'd hear Tang Sarayong out one last time. Sahui warned that if he let that girl escape again, she'd be truly disappointed in him. He answered that if Tang Sarayong couldn't pay the price, then death was certain. Relieved, Tang Sarayong asked Lee if he had ever known an ancient swordsman called Ghost Sword Demon. Since they were from the same, the protagonist said no. If that man really lived in his time, he was probably third-rate. Tang Sarayong told him to prove it, and MC asked how. She said any martial art would do, but it had to be one of his weakest, so it would match the price she needed to pay. She hurried him along, wanting the weakest worthwhile technique he had. Lee stepped forward and drew back his fist. Everyone watched, waiting. The move he chose was Supreme Fist Strike, the very first martial art he ever mastered, when he was only 1 year old. Tang Sarayong quickly said that was too weak and maybe he should show something a little stronger. Lee said it wasn't weak, just simple and straightforward. So she told him to use it like he was really punching someone. He said the room was too small. The sect leader told him to do whatever he needed. In the next instant, a massive hole blasted straight through everything in front of him. The protagonist said he tried to hold back, but it had been so long since he used it that he slipped a little. Stunned, the sect leader asked how any human could live over 2,000 years. Tang Sarayong said she didn't understand it either, but it was true. She found him sealed in an underground chamber on Earth. The leader started thinking about closed-door cultivation. Tang Sarayong pointed out that he'd just seen it himself. Lee knew amazing martial arts of many kinds, and best of all, they were ancient. MC was basically a living martial arts library. Since he was close to her, she could ask him to recite techniques for the sect, turned into manuals. They'd sell for a fortune, far more than the Ghost Sword Demon manual. That night, the scoundrels gathered around the giant hole he had made, unable to figure out how it got there. Nearby, a man in a green hood was interrupted when Lee asked him when the shop would open. The man looked confused. "You talking to me?" The protagonist said yes. There was no one else around. The hooded man took it as a challenge and asked if MC wanted a fight. He called him kid and told him to relax. There was no reason to be scared of him. Taking that as an insult, the man launched a huge slash at Lee, but in the next second, his sword was gone. The protagonist calmly said he'd give it back later. He only wanted to know when the place opened. The man shouted that MC was dead and rushed him with a palm strike. MC answered with a barrier, and the attacker's arm shattered to pieces. Big Sahui happened to pass by and was stunned. Later, that same man served Lee a plate of food, respectfully saying he did his best, even though it was his first time cooking. He had actually made him cook. The protagonist appreciated the effort and healed him, even opening some of his meridian points. That alone left the man even more shaken. Baek Sahui walked over to Lee but suddenly got covered in noodles. The food tasted awful to MC. He apologized, then asked why she came. She said her father wanted her to bring him back. Lee called it rude to summon the Supreme One so casually. If her father wanted him, he should come in person. Sahui quickly corrected herself and apologized. What her father really meant was to invite him and escort him if he agreed. After hearing that, he accepted. On the way, Baek Sahui asked if it was true. He knew every martial art, even ancient ones. Lee said something like that, and if a technique didn't exist, he could just create it. She thought that sounded wild. A little nervous, she asked if there might be a martial art that could reopen growth plates. The protagonist said no such technique existed. As they continued toward her father, she asked if he could make one for her instead. Lee said no. The body carries its own history, shaped by one's parents and humanity's legacy. Martial arts are meant to train that body and live out your fate, not go against it. She listened closely to his words. Then MC added that there was one art that could change the body's appearance, a transformation technique. There was also another called bone restructuring, which only changed the skeleton. After hearing that, she stepped in front of him and said the last one would be enough, asking him to teach her. Lee asked, "Why should I?" Sahui had no answer. With her head down, she quietly accepted it. Then Lee suddenly asked if she knew how to make a food with a long curved piece of meat on both ends. She thought for a second. A hot dog? When she said yes, he asked if she could make one for him. She instantly shouted, "Of course." Later, Sehui's father and Tang Seryung watched closely while the protagonist enjoyed skewers and bake. Sehui gave him a massage. Sehui even told her father to greet her master, but Lee corrected her. He wasn't her master. He was only going to teach her one small martial art. So everyone gathered around where MC was eating. Sehui's father still couldn't understand how he had spent 2,000 years in closed-door cultivation, but he'd seen enough that he couldn't deny it. He admitted the martial art Lee showed was stronger than the ghost sword demon technique, and from what Tang Seryung said, the protagonist could pass that art on to them. MC brushed it off and told Baek Sehui she didn't need to keep massaging him. She just smiled and said she wanted to. Then her father said that if he wrote a full manual with the method and techniques, he'd forget the time Seryung stole and sold the book. Seryung cut in right away. That still wouldn't be fair. Even with interest, they'd be taking a huge loss, so the offer had to be better. Lee asked what she wanted. Seryung said she wanted an internal energy unit. Used was fine as long as it worked well. She'd heard they dealt in military-grade units, so at least a decent one was only fair. A core-level unit would do. Baek Sehui's father thought she'd gone mad asking for that. The sect master blew up saying it would never happen. A heart-level core was priceless, and no ancient martial art could make up for it. Cedric Greyung raised her hand, not one technique, but 5 ancient ones. She turned to Lee and asked if he could provide 5 arts on the same level as the one he showed before. The protagonist said that level was easy for him. Even then, Baek Sehui's father still refused, so Cedric Greyung raised it to 10. That finally made him agree, but only if the forms, motions, and written instructions were exact. They had to be clear enough that anyone reading them could learn with ease. Lee said that was simple, and asked for paper and a brush. In the end, Seryung and the sect leader stared at what MC had drawn. He had made the instructions extremely simple, so simple that the sect leader could only ask what this even was. Seryung couldn't bring herself to answer. To her it looked like a complete mess. Even so, the sect leader called in an elder expert to confirm whether the techniques were real. While Baek Sehui worked as Lee's personal cook, Seryung sat beside him, irritated that this didn't even pay for the paper. The experts judged the drawings as mere exercises, not martial arts. They told him to provide advanced secret-level techniques instead. He answered that at the very top, all martial arts become the same. The ones he gave were easy to learn and still led to that same peak which made them better. Seryung got his point, but said they still needed something more impressive. Lee refused. Techniques that already had owners couldn't be passed on. That broke the laws of the martial world. He told her to stop pushing. For now, he would teach that girl the inverse body transformation technique. Then the protagonist took Baek Sehui away. Seryung felt everything was ruined, so she went with the sect leader to try one more time to persuade him. But when she saw that he wasn't even responding, her hope started to fade. Then he finally spoke, saying it was a martial art never seen before, a kind of power most people would never witness even once in their lives. He asked if she could truly convince Lee to help the Three Poles Alliance. Seryung said yes, they needed each other, and without her, MC barely even ate. She also added the matter of the heart-level core. The sect leader said fine. He led Seryung elsewhere and asked how she knew they had a heart-level core. Even she was surprised. She had only suspected it and never thought it was real. He explained that the heart-level core was one of the martial world's 3 legendary treasures. Yet despite all the rumors, no one had seen its true form. That was because making one required approval from the Central Alliance. It was like nuclear weapons in the past, power so dangerous that building it in secret would make you everyone's enemy. When Cedric Doug asked how they made one, he said they didn't. It had simply rolled in, inside a room with a huge hole. He told her what she wanted was down there. At the bottom stood something like a knight holding a sword. A year ago during winter, a modular transport escape pod crash-landed on Tartaruga, and that creature came out. Everyone who met it that day died. Only after hundreds more deaths did they realize it was a supreme master far beyond them, and its terrifying power came from a heart-level core. Seryung asked why it was just staying there. The leader said he didn't know. A year ago, it came on its own and settled there. The only certain thing was that this being was a ticking bomb. Now that rumors of the heart-level core were spreading, every major force would come for it, and signs of that had already begun. So if she wanted the heart core that badly, she should take it and use that chance to persuade Lee to act for the old martial world. After that, Seryung left the place and passed a very tall girl. Then she stopped, realizing it was Baek Sehui. Baek Sehui couldn't believe she had been recognized, and the reason was clear. The technique Lee taught her had worked even better than expected. She explained that if her growth plates had stayed open, this was exactly how she would look. Seryung understood, and Baek Sehui shrank back down. She was still only a beginner, but at the highest level she could keep that form for a whole week. Seryung brushed past it, and asked where her master was. When she found Lee, she asked him to go to that being, get the core-level unit and bring it back. If it refused, a light smack should be enough to make it listen. He said the energy felt dark, like dragon power was leaking out of it. He warned her that if she tried to take it for herself, that thing would devour her. Better to leave it alone. If all she needed was internal energy for training, he could share his own. Seryung hadn't expected that. Later she told Lee she couldn't accept it. He asked why, since it was basically the same result. Annoyed, she said she wanted revenge with her own power. The The protagonist pointed out that sounded contradictory. Sonja stepped in and told him not to question her. That was just Suryong. Her logic was enough to make even Sonja's genius brain short-circuit. Suryong started throwing a fit, and Lee decided to let it go. At that moment, a man with glasses informed Baek Sehui's father that Elena had arrived in the city. The leader already knew. Other factions would use every connection they had to lure top-tier masters here, so the smartest move was to stay out of it and watch. The monk then arrived where 3 men were gathered. One of them was about to drink, but the monk took it first. He mocked them, saying tea offered to an enlightened high monk was a great honor for lowly beings like them. One man attacked without warning, but the blow did nothing. Feeling the strange power coming off him, he realized the monk was an Asura Buddha. The monk then reduced his body to dust. All he said was that he had been warned. The others immediately lowered their heads. The proper way to face a living Buddha. Pressing his palms together, the monk politely asked those kind-hearted souls to guide him to the Black Waters faction. No one answered, so the monk called them trash and asked if they wanted to die. All 3 instantly raised their hands and said they'd show him the way. Just then, someone else reached the giant hole and saw the night overflowing with energy. He slowly moved closer, checking it and sensing just how massive its internal energy was. Then he thrust his sword at top speed and shouted for the core to be handed over, managing to stab into it. Elsewhere, Lee was busy eating sausages. Elena spotted him from far away, and so did the monk, because a huge light was shining across the city. Earlier, the Triad faction had raised every defense around the monster and ordered everyone indoors. Their leader was already plotting. This was Mogu Jung, leader of southern Tartaruga, known for his unshakable longevity. So they had pulled out of the fight for the core? No way. He was clearly waiting for the lion and tiger to clash so he could profit from both. And if a lion and tiger were already in play, a bear would surely join too. This battle was going to turn into total chaos. Back at the giant hole, Elena had already arrived. She looked on and saw in the distance, atop a building, the body of that man hanging there. He was a divine master from the Piercing Spear faction. The monk appeared and asked if she knew that faction. They seemed awfully proud. They called him a once-in-a-thousand-years genius. But that was the fate of arrogant famous sects. No one could stand in Buddha's way. What waited for them was death. Elena asked why he was here. The monk answered that where there was a great offering, Buddha naturally came to consume it. At last, fortune seemed to be on his side. Elena activated her drive and warned him not to interfere if he valued his life. The monk mocked her, saying an ignorant fool dared threaten a Buddha who had reached the nirvana of life and death. She didn't even understand enlightenment. But when Elena's power kept rising, the Buddha told her to wait. There was an order to things. If they fought now, the winner would be badly weakened and others would take advantage. Besides, the real problem was the monster below. Otherwise, they'd end up like that dead man. So he proposed they join forces to defeat the monster. But Elena wanted no alliance with someone like him. If he got in her way, she'd kill him. Then Elena leaped straight down toward the knight. The Buddha only sneered at her for failing such simple math. In his eyes, she was a fool rushing to her death. When Elena finally reached the spot, she was genuinely surprised. Not because of the knight, but because someone else was there. It was Lee already waiting. Why was he here? That was all she could think. The matriarch had warned Elena to make sure she remembered this time. The matriarch had warned Elena if she ever met Lee again, she shouldn't even look up. If she did, their blood ties would be cut off. Elena looked seriously annoyed. MC spoke first. Her breathing was steady, so he figured her injuries were already healed. He said she came at the right time. He had plenty of questions and needed answers. A sudden pain hit Elena's body. She couldn't even breathe and had no idea why. Flustered, she told Lee to ask whatever he wanted. She would answer. He noticed the knight's energy wasn't gathered in one place. Instead, it was spread through his body, so Elena started studying him. She explained that his energy container couldn't hold that much power and had melted. That condition was called internal demon possession. Lee pointed out that if that were true, the man should show twisted desires, but there was nothing. He was more like an empty shell. Elena warned the protagonist to be careful, but he ignored her, and a huge wave of energy burst out. Elena had to shield her eyes, yet Lee walked forward like it didn't affect him at all. Elena knew core-level power was like a nuclear blast, but MC was holding it back with only his body. Then he removed the helmet to check his face. He looked ordinary. Just a guy with glasses. The protagonist asked who he was. Then the story shifts to Sehui, staring into a mirror. Using the technique Lee taught her, she had grown a lot, basically everywhere. She asked, this is what she really looks like now. So did he like it? Like she was talking to a small photo on her desk, a picture of her with that same glasses-wearing boy who had the core. Sehui wondered where he had gone and what he'd been doing all those years. In tears, she begged him to come back soon. She had changed this much, but the person she most wanted to show wasn't there. Lee looked into the boy's eyes, since eyes were said to be the door to the soul, but his were completely empty. Elena said there were no brain signals. The overload may have melted his brain. He wasn't really a person anymore, just instinct. Lee argued that if instinct remained, then the memories guiding it had to remain too. His life wasn't over yet. Still, that miserable thing controlling this boy was buried deep in his heart. The only answer was to tear it out completely. MC said that would kill him, but there was no other choice. After a moment, he walked up and told the boy there was no way to save him. But if he had any last words, the protagonist would listen. Then he used his power to enter the boy's inner depths. He told him to focus even if it was dark and there seemed to be no escape. If he held on, they might still reach each other. Soon the veins across Lee's body swelled from the overload of wild energy. Then he found him, and the boy began to see something. Or maybe it was a memory. It was his past with Sahui. They used to run around together, chasing butterflies that always slipped away. Those days were bright, fun, and full of adventure. They spent years like that. Even in their last days together, they were still chasing butterflies. The boy proudly said he caught one, but Sahui coldly told him to let it go. He didn't get it. Why should he? She snapped that she never asked for help and could have done it herself. The boy had no idea why she was so upset. He said if he did something wrong, he'd fix it. But Sahui stayed silent. He gently asked if her feet hurt and whether she wanted him to carry her. That only made Sahui madder. She said she wasn't a kid anymore. She was already in her 20s. Her growth plates had just opened late. He answered that he never saw her as a child. To him, she was always an adult. Still irritated, Sahui yelled at him not to look for her again. They could meet once her growth plates opened. After seeing that pass, the boy could finally look at Lee, and then he laughed when he saw the helmet in MC's hand. It reminded him of a man who had been slaughtered. With his last breath, that man was shocked. The boy was still alive. He was the only survivor. The other knights were dead, but at least the enemy had been wiped out too. That man had been the commander, but he asked not to be called that anymore. The whole order of the Star Knights had been destroyed, so he said he had no right to that name. What he couldn't understand was how the boy came out of such a brutal battle without a scratch, so he asked if the boy had hidden. The boy admitted he had. That shocked him because in the 6 years since joining them, the boy had never once backed down and always fought on the front line like his life meant nothing. So why hold back now? Was it because of this mission? Then he asked if the boy wanted that object. The boy said it mattered a lot to someone precious to him. The commander called him an idiot. Even a core-level unit couldn't handle it. Only a few Transcendents could. The boy answered that someone at the commander's level had no use for it anyway. The commander snapped, asking what nonsense he was saying. The boy explained that the unit could rebuild all genes, even the nervous system. Hearing that, the commander declared he would stop him as the 126th successor, Sir Andre Skolt. Andre Skolt? His duty was to deliver the object and kill anyone who got in the way. The commander raised his sword and swung. Then the story returns to the present. Lee had seen the internal demon. He shouted for the boy to stay focused. The demon was taking root in his heart. Right then, a blue light burst from the hole, and the monk from earlier wondered what it was. Then a red light shot out too, chasing after the blue one. That red streak was Lee rushing at full speed to stop it. It felt like a dream. At the same time, Robert, Jaeondae, and Sunja were sharing ramen. It had been a while since they ate out together like a real family. Jaeondae said this kind of treat only happened once a year, as he wished Robert a happy birthday. Then those two presences tore past their ship, flipping over their food. The knight landed first in a deserted place. He clearly wasn't in good shape. Lee told him it still wasn't too late. If he fought the demon in his heart, it might not fully eat his soul. If he had to die, then he should at least die as a human. The knight answered by charging at him with his sword, and the blow split the whole area in two. Lee admitted his techniques were powerful, but said they were never really his. Back then, when the boy opened the box, the dying commander begged him to stop and said he wouldn't judge him. He understood there had to be something huge behind a choice like selling his soul to a demon. Over the years, he had even come to think of him as a son. That's why he sincerely told him to drop the object and leave. The second he tried to use it, it would devour his soul, and even if he lived, the whole world would hunt him down for it. The boy knew all that, but still wanted to give it to that person. He said he didn't mind selling his soul. The instant he touched it, its energy flooded into his body. Lee couldn't believe what he was seeing. So that had been his choice, and if so, the protagonist would stop him. Even Sahui noticed the chaos and looked outside to see what was happening. In the distance, a massive explosion went off. After the blast, Elena reached them. The boy was making strange noises, like he wasn't aware of anything. Lee asked Elena if she had said it was lodged in his heart. That meant the only way to remove it was to take out his heart. Elena confirmed it. She had even brought a special tool to remove it without contaminating him again, and offered to do it herself if MC wanted. Lee refused. Taking a life was not something to hand off. What was carved into a heart had to be handled personally. That was part of karma too. He told the boy to close his eyes and rest. Instead of just taking his life, he would take on his karma. He said he'd go to hell in the boy's place. Then someone shouted for him to stop. It was Jaeondae. He arrived calling out the name Gurren. Lee asked if he knew the boy. Jaeondae said someone else knew him even better. So Hui had come too, and froze when she saw the protagonist's hand in Gurren's chest. Since Lee had already seen their memories, he stepped back. Jaeondae explained that Gurren was Sahui's childhood friend. They were always together, so much that it made him jealous. Then one day, Gurren suddenly vanished. After that, Sahui changed. She had been cold and distant, but later turned clumsy and smiled a lot. To Jaeondae, though, that smile looked more like crying. Sahui asked what Gurren had done to himself and why he wouldn't look at her. Had they been apart so long that he didn't know her anymore? The only sounds Gurren made were like a baby trying to speak. Elena said it was pointless. His brain had already melted completely, and no memories were left. But then Gurren lifted his arm towards Sahui. She took it as proof that he still remembered her. Just as they were about to touch hands, Jinde rushed in to stop her. Lee had warned him that contaminated radioactive energy was pouring from Gurren's body. If Sakui touched him, she would die. Sakui answered that Gurren was still the same. Seeing she didn't care about the danger, Jinde let her go and told her to do what she wanted, but not blame him later. Elena told Lee they had to stop them. MC said that sometimes a bond is meant to become everything. As their hands were about to meet, Gurren suddenly closed his fist and told Sakui to step back. Everyone was stunned. When a banner dropped behind her, and it wasn't the only one. More of them dropped, and then a huge flower wrapped around both of them. It was a barrier. Lee cut it open at once, but they were already gone. Only a seal remained, and he knew it right away. It was a Shaolin primal formation, used by someone who had reached nirvana. He asked if they knew a Shaolin master close to transcendence. Elena remembered the monk's title, Asura Buddha. At the Blackwater's headquarters, the monk had arrived with Baek Sakui and Gurren. He called himself Amitabha, the Buddha who crossed hell to get here. Then he asked why they hadn't waited a little longer. He'd made it through hell, and now he wanted the rest of his payment. A man in white stood up. The monk asked if he was the one paying the debt. Looking at those big pockets, he guessed the money had to be on him. The man stepped forward. He was the Emperor of the Eastern Sky Fist. The Buddha greeted him, and the Emperor asked if they knew each other. The Buddha said they were only old acquaintances whose paths crossed once. The Emperor told him to answer properly. With a finger snap, he struck the monk. But someone at that level wouldn't die from a move like that. The Emperor realized he was one of those Shaolin monks. He even admitted it was impressive for a 30-year-old to know a technique normally reserved for elders. He vaguely remembered a boy who served beside the great elder Myungchun 20 years earlier. So it was him. Smiling, the Emperor said that as Myungchun's disciple, he had one reason to spare him. All he had to do was leave the rest behind. The monk stayed right where he was. The Emperor asked if he didn't hear him. Why wasn't he running for his life? The monk raised his palm. He said he'd leave after the bill was paid, 85,000 credits. So he really wanted to die. The Buddha asked how a man who had already walked through life and death could still be threatened. Then he mocked him. Had living so long made him senile? The Emperor said, "Fool. Myungchun had raised him badly, and if the monk wanted death so badly, he shouldn't complain." When the Emperor reached for the flower, the Buddha yelled for him to stay back. He still hadn't paid, but the monk was holding his stomach. The earlier strike had left him badly hurt. The Emperor called him insane. Even then, the Buddha kept repeating that he still owed 85,000 credits. He insisted on payment because the corpses there included his contractor and the Emperor killed them all. The Emperor told him to stop spewing nonsense, but the monk said he could keep going all night if that was what it took to get paid. Then he used the Lion of Prajna, a forbidden Shaolin art. Even that couldn't hurt the Emperor, because his Vajra body was tough like diamond. With one blow, he smashed the monk's face. Was he still going to keep talking nonsense? He asked. Since the monk couldn't speak, he only lifted his hand. The Emperor answered with even more punches to the face. In the middle of it, the cocoon holding Gurren and Baek Sahui opened. After crushing the monk's skull, the Emperor said every monk he knew had always wanted to reach nirvana. Then to his surprise, from inside the flowers, only a Shaolin seal appeared. The monk had actually used it to move Baek Sahui and Gurren somewhere else. Furious, the Emperor destroyed the seal before it could fade and rushed after Gurren. When the others arrived, the monk looked dead. But who could kill an Asura Buddha? Only a legendary master could do that. Elena said. The only person she could think of was the Emperor of the Eastern Sky Fist. The heavenly demon said the monk wasn't dead. Why did he think that? Lee said the monk was hurt, but a faint spark of life remained. The boy had amazing talent. Then he asked, "Where did you send those to?" The monk only lifted his hand. In another plane, Gurren touched a flower while Baek Sahui stood beside him. He smiled and said, "Look, I caught it." But unlike before, she reached out with both hands, amazed by the butterfly's beauty. Gurren asked why she looked like that. Was she crying because she didn't like it? She said no, she just couldn't understand why a captured butterfly wasn't trying to escape. None of this felt real. Gurren only laughed, and nearby was a Shaolin yin-yang seal. He said she might be right. Until recently, his chest felt like it was on fire, like a burning ball was stuck in his heart. But right now, they should just enjoy this moment. They had found each other again. Baek Sahui cried because she knew that if this wasn't real, she would wake up and lose him again. She apologized. After that, they both sat on the dry tree. Gurren admitted he never used to see her as a girl, because she always seemed more mature than him. She said she was small, and maybe he didn't like that. He told her it wasn't about height. She was cute and lovable. After years traveling the universe, he learned one thing. There was only one Baek Sahui in all of it, and that was why he had always loved her. He knew she hated being short, but said not to worry because he had brought her something that would help her grow again. Baek Sahui shouted that no, she didn't hate being short. What she hated was his body. Gurren's body started breaking down again because that man had entered his happy place. After checking it, he realized that thing was extremely powerful. Gurren charged at him. Back with the monk, he changed the price to 86,000 credits. Tang Suri had no idea what he was talking about. Lee told her to pay him later. After a beating like that, the monk had earned such a small fee. Tang Suri said that was impossible. She couldn't get that much even by selling her ship. plus Robert and Sunja. The monk added that if Elena were included, the price would go up by another 10,000 credits. Elena asked why he was leaving her out. Did he want to die? Lee then said to put it on his tab and swore on his name. That was his answer. Tang Seri-young said no chance. The monk was called the greedy demon and wouldn't trust even his own parents over money. Then he started coughing out huge amounts of blood, making a giant circle and forming that same Shaolin seal. Baeksahui could clearly see the gap between them. Gurren had been completely overwhelmed. The emperor asked if he really thought having a huge sword meant he could cut anything. He said Gurren wasn't even strong enough to wield that blade, yet he still trusted it. Then he revealed that Gurren wasn't the only one with a core-level unit, and said he'd be taking it for himself. Baeksahui jumped in and yelled for him to let go, but it changed nothing. The emperor flung her away. Even on the ground, she begged him to let Gurren go, saying she'd do anything. Instead, he drove his hand into Gurren's chest and tore out his heart, then tossed the body aside. Right then, the others arrived. Tang Seri-young could only stare sadly at the boy's body. Enraged, she screamed at him to get away and fired a wave of purple power. With one hand, he knocked it aside and struck back with a punch. Before it could hit her, the heavenly demon touched her and pushed the attack away. The emperor couldn't understand how he had done that. Was it because of the man behind her? He wondered if it was the internal energy transfer technique. Elena gave quick context. This was a master beyond compare. Along with his mother, he was known as one of the 5 great supreme masters. In the whole galaxy, fewer than 10 fighters could match him in battle. After hearing that, Lee walked up to him. The emperor thought that even if the protagonist was a natural pure, he still shouldn't be underestimated. He said MC's body was as hard as steel, and saw that he had mastered the iron cloth technique. Arts like that demand terrible pain, which is why most people avoid them, but he had done well. When he asked who he was, the heavenly demon replied that he'd love to beat him, but the rules of the martial world didn't give him enough reason yet. So he offered one chance, drop what he was carrying and leave. The emperor called him crazy. An instant later, the heavenly demon's fist sank into his stomach and dropped him to his knees. Lee said he had just given him one more reason to hit him. There would be no second chance. How dare you? The emperor began to release his inner energy, but Lee cut him off and told him to watch carefully. He crushed Gurren's heart and the core with it. Then the emperor shouted, "What would he do now, damn madman?" The heavenly demon started beating him down. The emperor couldn't understand why those blows hurt so much. After the barrage, Lee stood over him. His face was swollen from the beating, and he finally collapsed. After that, Baeksahui took Gurren and rested him in her lap on the tree. It had been a long time since she last did that. Tang Seri-young said they had to take her away. If they left her there, she would never move, not even with her last breath. They had to do it, even by force. Lee walked over and told her to move aside. He would let her say goodbye the right way. Then the heavenly demon used his power, pouring red energy into Gurren's dead body. Tang Seri-young asked Elena if she knew what he was doing. Shocked, Elena said it was return to the origin. What was that? A state where someone becomes one with nature itself. And nature is everything, including life and death. She said she thought it was only a legend, because reaching that state should be impossible. What kind of man was he? He was using origin energy to replace the blood flow that had stopped. Borrow my life, and see this world one more time. Gurren came back to life again. Baeksahui couldn't stop crying. He told her he had a favor to ask, and wondered if she would grant it. She said yes, right away. He could ask for anything, even 1,000 favors, and she would do them all. Just don't cry, he told her, because she looked prettier when she smiled. And stop hiding your eyes, they're beautiful. Baeksahui removed the eye patch. Elena wondered if her eye had been hurt, but it wasn't. Baeksahui had only been pretending so she wouldn't look weak. Gurren gently held her face in both hands. Just like I thought, you're beautiful. Then he gave her one last soft kiss. For his final favor, he asked her to forget him. After that, they built him a grave and buried him beneath the dry tree. Later on Seri-young's ship, she told Sunja to get them out of there fast. She didn't want to stay there any longer. At the same time, the heavenly demon looked into a mirror, thinking about Baeksahui's earlier request about the inverted body transformation technique. She wanted him to remove it. He told her she could keep it, but he would never use it again. Not having a power and choosing not to use it are two different things. After that, the group continued their trip. Meanwhile, the matriarch arrived in a ruined place filled with burned bodies. The emperor stood before her. She said nothing had changed. He was still using his own followers as sacrifices, just to dump his anger. Those boys probably only wanted to make him proud. He brushed it off, saying they weren't his disciples. He only taught them a little so they'd be useful. Trash like them meant nothing. She answered that she was impressed he had survived such a brutal beating. The emperor warned that if she came to provoke him, she was wasting her time. Anger only made him stronger, but she said he had it wrong. She wasn't there to mock him. She came to warn him, stay away from that man, because he belongs to her. If he ignored that warning, he wouldn't survive next time by pure luck. The emperor snapped, asking what she had just said. The matriarch went on, people think the iron cloth technique is unbreakable, but in truth it gathers all the body's weak points into one hidden spot. So why had the protagonist hit him everywhere except his left forearm, his vital point? Maybe the protagonist only wanted to beat him, not kill him. While MC was busy eating a pile of sausages, Tang Seri-young, without even looking at him, said that since her energy core was gone, he should at least give her that internal energy once. He said it was already too late. He had drained his origin energy to bring that boy back for a moment. Now it would take at least 3 years to recover. Still, he promised that once it returned, he would share it with her. Tang Sir-young shot back. How was that supposed to help now? They were already 85,000 credits in debt, and that money-crazy monk would keep chasing them forever. At that same moment, the monk was with an accountant who asked how much should be transferred, since 100,000 credits had already been prepaid to the Blackwaters faction. The monk told him to send all of it to the Shaolin Temple. The accountant was shocked. Again? Why send everything? Why not keep some to live on? The monk said to send it all. Old and sick people deserve better food. As for himself, he'd just steal whatever he needed. 2,000 years ago, in an underground chamber somewhere in the star system, a man named Lemujin, who practiced the martial arts of our sect, entered seclusion and called himself the Heavenly Demon. The other man said he would look into it, though it was probably just a lie meant to shake the sect. But this secret had been buried for 2,000 years. Even the elders at the top didn't know it. So how could he call it someone else's invention, when the sect itself had nearly forgotten it? If he really has returned, if he truly is that 6th heavenly demon, Lemujin, then that would mean there are now 3 heavenly demons in the universe for the first time, right? Heavenly Demon Sect, the 94th demon, Hui Shuchuan. He said leaving this to someone else would become a huge problem. Back on our protagonist's ship, Tang Ser-young was confused when Sunja admitted they were broke. They barely had any fuel, and only enough food for 4 days if everyone ate just once a day. Tang Ser-young wanted to use Robert's wedding savings, but he yelled that the money was already gone. She had pushed him to invest it in the wedding, and that savings had come from 10 years in the army. Then Sunja said there was an even bigger problem. Lee kept eating sausages like nothing was wrong, and those had been the last ones. Nobody wanted to find out what happened if he got hungry again. At the First Moon Tavern, Tang Ser-young tried to make a deal with the owner by offering some of the protagonist's martial arts scrolls. She only had a few left, so they were worth a lot. The owner said that meant they had to be originals. Tang Ser-young offered him a special discount if he bought the whole set. The tavern master said they were too valuable for her to be that greedy. Trying to close the deal, she asked for just 1 month of food, fuel, and sausages. Expired sausages would be fine too. The master stayed silent, so Tang Ser-young said she'd just sell them to someone else. That made him offer a job instead, pick up 1 client and take them home. Tang Ser-young exploded. How dare he ask the burning demon of the Tang clan, Mrs. Young, to do taxi work? But he added that for those scrolls he'd give her everything she asked for. She accepted at once and said he should have opened with that. The pickup spot was Hogwarts Galactic Academy. After taking that job, Tang Ser-young kept glaring the whole way, which made Robert ask what was bothering her. Sunja told him to be patient. She was heading straight into a nightmare from her past. Planet B-17G06, Hogwarts Galactic Academy. Robert had never seen a school like this and asked what kind of place it was. Sunja explained that only the top 0.1% of elite families could send their kids there. It was basically a nest of jewels, since tuition alone cost 10,000 credits. Robert then asked why it was so empty. Tang Ser-young said it was vacation time, and anyone still stuck there instead of going home probably had a pretty miserable life. They called out to see if anyone was there. Robert then spotted a girl in the distance. The red-headed girl asked why they had come when the academy was on break. Tang Ser-young answered with a full-speed attack. It was aimed to kill, but the girl dodged it with ease. She asked if they were bandits, then said she'd finish them off. Tang Ser-young drew a light sword and attacked again. Once she got close, the girl recognized her. Tang Ser-young blurted out that she must be Jewish, which was why her sword jumped out and attacked on its own. Then she asked if the girl had come for revenge. Tang Ser-young quickly denied it, calling it a misunderstanding and saying the attack had just been instinct, but warned that her instincts could act up again. Robert asked what kind of history they had. Sunja on edge explained that this was the favorite daughter of the Suje family, their enemy. They needed to stop this before it got worse. Lee, though, just watched. Sunja yelled at him to move, because the captain could get badly hurt if he did nothing. But the heavenly demon was focused on someone else who had been watching the whole thing, a girl looking down from a window. The other girl mocked Tang Ser-young's instincts, saying that was fine because she liked crushing cockroaches. Their swords were about to meet when someone stepped in and stopped them. Tang Ser-young recognized him right away, Namgung Chin-chak Payan. Meanwhile, the tavern master said it was true. The heavenly demon sect really did outdo the beggar's sect, just like they had predicted. Tang Ser-young came there yesterday, and just as requested, they directed the group to that place. By now, they should have reached Hogwarts Academy. Inside one of the academy rooms, the guy in the beanie said he was the one who had called for the ride, but he never expected Tang Ser-young to show up. Tang Ser-young said she didn't mind. Her sword had simply moved on its own. He challenged her to let it happen again today. Outside, Robert and Sunja waited. Robert said the guy in the beanie had to be either really strong or ridiculously confident to show up like that and stop Tang Ser-young cold. Sunja told him he really was strong. He was the 3rd son of the Namgung Cheon family. So that was Namgung Cheon Chayim, the Blue Storm. At just 20, he had already made a name for himself by reaching the Northern Galaxy Heroes Tournament final, though he gave up the match at the end against the Emperor of the Eastern Sky Fist. Most people believed he never wanted the title in the first place. In other words, he was one of Miriam's greatest young geniuses. Sunja asked why Robert sounded so amazed. That's when it came out that Robert had a fiancée, and she was a huge fan of Chaeyeon. Right then, another girl suddenly appeared and scared Robert. He had no idea when she got there. She only stared at the door and said this wasn't the right place. Robert wondered if she was some academy ghost, then decided she was just plain weird. Sunja studied her and realized she had no internal energy. She was a natural pure, just like the heavenly demon. What made it stranger was that this academy only accepted prodigies at the very top. Lee was watching from the top of the academy when that same girl came up to him. Tang Seryung cut straight to the point and asked who they were supposed to pick up. When Amsi turned toward the girl, she looked oddly annoyed. Lee pointed out that she was the girl from the window. Then he asked if she had come to see him and why she was making that face. The girl replied, asking if they knew each other. He said they had never met. She asked why his face felt so familiar, like he was the father who abandoned her at birth. Lee could only say that sounded rough. The girl snapped back that of course it didn't happen. No one could abandon her, and if someone had, she would have hunted him down and killed him already. She stormed off with an angry shout. Then before leaving, she turned back and asked the protagonist if he wanted to marry her. She said she was good at everything and would make a great wife. Lee refused right away. The girl walked off, warning that she'd ask again later, and next time he'd better not say no if he knew what was good for him. "You'll meet him when I introduce you," Juhi said. Tang Seryung, clearly impatient, asked if they should hurry this up. Juhi told her there was no need to rush, they had plenty of time. If Tang Seryung wanted her to stay along the way, she'd have to pay 1,000 times the normal fee. Then she brushed even that off and said goodbye. Chaeyeon stepped in and told Juhi to relax. They used to be friends, and it had been 10 years since they met. She said nothing, only thinking that it hadn't been 10 years, it had been 13 years, 7 months and 16 days since they last met. After that, Juhi led Tang Seryung to a room with a boy in a wheelchair. She introduced him as the student they were taking. The boy also wore a mask, and Tang Seryung's presence clearly made him nervous. Juhi explained that he was fully paralyzed. He couldn't even breathe by himself, and his eyesight was almost gone. Tang Seryung was shocked. Why would the academy accept someone like that? And what kind of family did he come from? Juhi didn't know much except that he was insanely rich. His donation covered 10 years of the academy's budget. He normally stayed in the dorms during breaks, but this time his family suddenly called him home, so they hired a taxi driver. She warned Tang Seryung to handle him gently, since he was so weak that even a touch could harm him. Then a voice asked if he had fallen for that woman from earlier. The question came out of nowhere. It was the strange girl from before. She told him there was no point hiding it. His face made it obvious. In his mind, he answered that there was no light left in his eyes. Even so, the girl said she could still see it, faint but there. Then she asked what exactly he liked about that woman. His answer was chilling. He liked seeing her suffer. He imagined she'd scream beautifully when she finally broke. The girl realized he had seen something, and pushed him to explain. What he saw was death and a demon. Then he said Juhi looked like her. She cut him off and said she already knew. Juhi repeated the job details. They only had to bring him to the terminal on planet Tanalugan. Then Chaeyeon suddenly brought up bamboo leaf tea, saying Juhi used to like it. Tang Seryung flatly said she hated it, and now she hated it even more. Chaeyeon seemed surprised. He remembered it differently, then admitted memories can change over time. He also said he'd be going with them. There was no reason for him to stay at the school if there were no students left to watch. Tang Seryung immediately asked if Juhi was coming too. Tang Seryung told her not to worry. Juhi still had students to take care of. At the same time, Juhi was in the bath, grumbling that this was a huge pain. Why did she have to show up now? She should have stayed dead. Then someone entered. Juhi called out asking who it was, and Suhi appeared. Annoyed, Tang Seryung said she didn't care if he came along, and hoped he'd board her ship too, so she could make him disappear. Maybe she'd even accidentally cut his head off. Then came another surprise, that girl was boarding the ship too. Ju explained that the girl wanted to go home as well. Ju then asked if Tang Seryung was happy that he'd come along. Just like she asked. From the window, Lee silently watched the group below, especially the girl, as their eyes met again. Soon after, the ship lifted off. But the moment they got inside, both Ju and So-Hai looked around and asked what kind of dump this was. Sunja explained that it was a first-class guest room. The captain put them there because it was close by and easier to watch. Ju snapped that Sunja was lying. That woman clearly meant to dump them in a warehouse. So-Hai though said she liked it. If they cleaned it up, it could be nice. Ju asked where she was going. So-Hai said she was leaving so Ju could clean in peace. Sunja quickly warned her not to wander around. There was a sword-crazy woman outside. She asked if So-Biash wasn't scared of Tang Seryung. Usually she was unstable, but right now she was even worse. If So-Biash saw her, the best move was to avoid her. So-Biash vanished without another word. Sunja could only mutter that this girl might be even scarier. Later, Tang Seryung sank into thought. She remembered her school days with Chaeyeon and Ju. Back then, those times had felt truly happy. She told Chaeyeon he hadn't changed at all. She recognized him the moment they met again. So did that mean he had completely forgotten her? He didn't even remember her face as a child. If anyone hadn't changed, she said, it was him, still selfish as ever. With a smile, Chang replied that he had changed because now he had someone important to protect. That was why he came to warn her, give up revenge and move on. If she ever pointed her sword at Jolly again, he wouldn't let it pass. It was better for them to remain old friends who only half remembered each other. Tang Cedric Young asked what he'd do if she refused. Chang Sim told her not to push him. In an instant, he was right behind her. She admitted he was right about one thing. She still hated people touching what she thought was hers. Right then, somewhere else, Lee was busy eating sausages while the boy in the wheelchair watched him. Just looking at Make-gi made the boy tense up in fear again. This time, though, everything around them was pitch black, and the celestial demon tossed him a sausage, telling him to eat. Instead of staring at useless things, he said, "A kid should eat well." The boy thought that eating just to stay alive was a waste, since he was going to die soon anyway. Lee told him that thinking he knew the future was childish. The boy answered that he saw it, whether he wanted to or not, so he couldn't help reacting that way. After that, Sama went to Soya and said that even when she used telekinesis, that guy stayed totally calm. He didn't even flinch. All he did was tell her not to play with her food. He also said she should stop worrying so much and just eat. The faster you rush into fear, the more you lose. And like it was nothing, he shut down her telekinesis. Soya asked if he thought that guy was a mutant like her. Sama said he didn't know. It had been too dark to see clearly. Still, hearing his voice strangely calmed him down. For a moment, it felt like maybe he wasn't going to die after all. Soya told him not to cling to that feeling. He already knew death was coming. It was waiting for him at Tana Logan, at the terminal. Once they reached the planet, the four of them headed down to the terminal. Sunja explained that it had been built in the early days of galactic expansion. Back then, it handled up to 100,000 flights a year. But the Northwest Galaxy project was cancelled, and the place shut down 700 years ago. Tang Ser Young wondered why it still looked so well kept. Sunja said the automated systems never stopped running. Tang Sarah Young said their work was done, and now all she had left was cleaning away any trace of this girl. Robert reminded her they weren't finished yet. They still had to receive the payment. Tang Sarah Young told them to contact the tavern owner, but Sanja said she'd already tried several times and couldn't get a signal there either. Then they realized a blocking barrier had been activated. Chaya raised a hand like he was greeting someone, and through the smoke, a vehicle rolled toward them. Then it suddenly opened fire. Tang Sarah Young demanded to know why they were being attacked. Robert recognized it immediately. An old armored launcher car, basically a relic. Chaya Young leaped into the air, threw up a barrier to stop the shots, and destroyed the vehicle with ease. The real problem was that there were many more. Everyone realized the situation had just turned bad, while Lee watched from far away. Soya calmly said they were making too much noise, but he didn't need to worry. She would keep him safe. The boy answered that he knew because none of this had appeared in his dream. Still, he couldn't understand why they self-destructed. Then in front of the group, a figure appeared with a robotic arm and an entirely mechanical body. It identified itself as a droid and announced that this was private property of the Sakamoto Stein Group. They had entered without flight approval, so the attack had been only a warning. Chuhi drew her sword. Furious that an outdated droid dared attack humans, Chayade stopped her and said not to waste her strength yet. He tried talking instead, saying there had to be a mistake. They were asked to bring this boy here. His name was Sama Stein, and the droid could confirm it. When it heard the name, the droid moved towards Sama, then dropped to one knee before him. At last, he had arrived. The droid declared that 700 years of waiting were finally over. Inside, the captain showed up with Sunja and asked what was going on. Chaeyin said they didn't know either, then asked why she was still there. She answered that she wanted her money, since the man who hired them still hadn't sent the deposit. Chai-Xian told her she hadn't changed at all. Meanwhile, Jo-hee tried to connect to the local network, while the two girls reacted with disgust. Sergirong asked where the bald boy had gone and what the deal was with that droid. Then they noticed the commander's photo matched the droid exactly. The machine said it was ready to receive orders now, while Sama just wanted to rest. Confused, Sama asked what orders it meant. The droid told him to give one simple command, order it to die. After Sunja finally got a connection, Sergirong told her to call that man fast. She wanted to leave already, but something felt wrong. Over the last 700 years, there had been 87 recorded ship landings from outside, yet there wasn't a single record of any ship ever leaving. Sama apologized, saying he couldn't give that order. The droid warned that if he refused, everyone would die. Robert then asked Lee if he felt how strange the place was. He said it felt like Silent Hill. He didn't care about any of that. He just wanted food. Sunja added that when the terminal shut down 700 years ago, 16 staff members were left behind. No one ever replaced them or sent new workers. So had they all just grown old and died there? Sunja said most of them had. When asked what most meant, she explained that all but one had death records. The only exception was the operations chief, a man named Gunter, who was still listed as alive. Then came the truth. For 700 years, he had kept himself alive waiting for orders. He cut off his own rotting limbs, ripped out ruined organs that no longer worked, and now only a weak, shriveled brain remained. Begging for release, he said he couldn't endure much longer. The records showed prosthetic legs, arms, stomach, and intestine replacements, plus a new heart, liver, lungs, eyes, joints, and blood vessels. Robert summed it up. He had basically replaced his whole body. Sunja agreed. He changed whatever he had to just to survive. Robert couldn't understand why anyone would go that far alone in a dead place. Why not just leave? The answer came back cold. That was none of their business. Sire Jung, annoyed, asked if a story like that really didn't move him. She called it heartless. Then came a cold reply. If this counts as sad, that's almost funny. Chai Xian started wondering what link there was between that boy and all of this. They explained that Sama's family is basically the richest one in the universe. They control genetic engineering and helped push space AI forward too. Almost everything about them is hidden, except the founder's name, Satoshi. Sama said his family doesn't even treat him like a real person, so he has no right to speak for them. He told the old man they were alike, both abandoned. Even wanting death didn't matter, because neither could do it alone. By then Soja had vanished too. Sama said that if it would help, Gunter could take his broken body, the one he no longer needed. Gunter accepted those words as a command to keep living. Cedric Rong then told Soja to check every camera in the base. They needed to find where Soja, a girl with no martial skill, had gone. When Soja just stared back instead of searching, Cedric Rong snapped. Sunja asked if she really knew who she was talking to, then got called out for speaking way too casually for an android. That made someone curse Cedric's teaching. Cedric proudly listed Sunja's titles: official, co-pilot, doctor, manager, and ship's cook, and said her training was perfect. Juhi, annoyed, decided to search on her own. Cedric just gave Sunja a little pat for her good work, which only made her madder. Right then, Lee came walking over and Soja appeared in front of him with a smile, saying they really were a perfect match. She had been heading to find him anyway. The protagonist had only one question. Did she have sausages? She said no, and he instantly lost interest. Still, Soja pointed out that the way he moved was strange. It looked like the celestial demon's imperial step, a skill only the demon sex master should know. If he kept moving like that, people might mistake him for the celestial demon. She also noticed his breathing carried the cold feel of frozen jade, like someone using the emerald jade demon art, something only female celestial demons can learn. And on top of that, reaching the ghost demon god level of total concealment at his age was alarming. Others might judge him even harder than they judged her, so she warned him to be careful. Then she bluntly asked who the hell he really was. Lee answered by asking the same thing back. Elsewhere, Juhi searched through the base for Soja, but instead found human remains scattered around. Then the android appeared right behind her. She demanded to know if he had done all this. Now that he had an order to live, he said, he wanted her life to extend his own. He attacked at once, using the same technique Cedric showed when she first met Lee. Either Juhi was badly weakened or the android was far stronger than expected, because her attack barely affected him. He said she was full of life and told her to hand it over. Juhi answered by cursing the metal freak and cutting his body clean in half. But then she realized his body used different internal energy conductors, so he had killed everyone there to steal their internal energy units. He denied it in his own way. He had only borrowed their lives and now he would borrow hers too. Juhi charged again and Sama began seeing the fight through his eyes, begging someone to help her. The call reached Soja, who sighed that this was annoying and said they'd finish their talk later. Lee heard it too, calling her a good girl since helping a friend was noble. Then he asked what the problem was and why he had been called. Sama said the master was in danger. MC couldn't believe he was called over just because of that woman. Sama begged for help, saying she was already badly hurt, but it was already too late. Juhi made it back to Cedric Ong and Chaeyeon before collapsing. Chaeyeon checked her condition and vital points, but Sunjack quickly saw the real problem. Her whole body had internal damage, and her internal energy unit had been ripped out by force. Meanwhile, the android returned to his room and changed into a new uniform. Juhi was in terrible pain and they had almost no way to help her. When Chaeyeon asked what was happening, Sunja explained that Juhi was short-circuiting. Losing the unit had damaged both her electronic and natural neural networks. If they didn't reconnect a drive fast, even her brain would fail. She would die. Chaeyeon told them to do whatever they could. He would go get her core, leaving Juhi with Sunja and Saorang. The problem was, what could they even do? Sunja said there was a way, but the one person who could help had already left. A different internal energy unit could hold her stable for a while, but that boy left without thinking about it. Now they had less than 5 minutes before she went brain dead. Seeing Juhi suffer like that, Saorang immediately told Sunja to make the connection. She would share her own drive, but Sunja pointed out that Saorang was offering her old external unit. Saorang told her to just do it. Sunja said she couldn't, that unit was too weak, and Juhi had an alpha prime grade unit. Saorang clicked her tongue, fed up. Without hesitating, she ripped out her own alpha grade unit and asked if that would work. Even Sunja was shocked by that. When asked why she'd save an enemy, Saorang said simple. Juhi had to stay alive until she killed her herself. At the same time, Soja appeared where the android was. She said he didn't need to get tense. She was only there to stop him because her only friend asked her to. They had promised to grant each other one favor, so she had no choice. He answered that stopping him meant killing him. Could she do that? Sunja said the part was easy, because he'd already been dead for a long time. The android said she should feel lucky she had no internal energy source. In the next instant, he was right in front of her asking how she could move like that without an internal energy unit. Soja told him if he proved he was alive, then she'd kill him. Parents, marriage, kids, how boring. As far as she was concerned, he was dead. She had completely seen through him, but the android snapped back that she shouldn't mock his body. Life comes from goals and purpose, and he still had both. Soja laughed it off, saying his life sounded a lot more rich than it looked. He told her a girl like her knew nothing. Soja answered with her own story. She was born a twin, but her twin brother was 9 years older. Strange, right? Only one child was needed, but 2 were born, so the people behind it picked only one. The child they didn't choose was frozen alive right after birth. She was kept as a spare part, just in case. If she had stayed frozen forever, that might have been the only happy ending. Then in the 9th year, the baby thawed and woke up by herself. From then on, she was given a condition for survival. She had to live with no goal and no purpose. So was that girl alive or dead? When he asked why she was telling him all this, she said it was because he was already dead, and the dead keep secrets best. At least, she added, he could die thinking it meant something. Before they could clash, Cheon arrived shouting that the android was dangerous and telling her to get out of there. He didn't attack right away, but he had recovered Juhee's drive. The android was shocked that guy had a core-grade unit. Cheon said there was no time to talk, that he'd end this fast, and told Soja to leave. Instead, she struck him from behind. Calling it a hassle, she told the android not to get the wrong idea. She wasn't helping him. She just always wanted to beat that fool up at least once. To her, he was an arrogant guy born into a famous family who got a top-class unit for free. Watching him act proud and special made her sick. The android stepped in, saying he'd take Cheon's unit, and if she interfered, he'd kill her. Soal told him to go ahead, but gave him 1 minute. If he couldn't install it by then, he'd die. That's when Sama yelled for him to stop. She had promised to kill the android, so why was she doing this? What a pain. Soal reminded him she'd said she would stop him, just not when. Once that minute ended, he'd be dead anyway. Sama begged her to do it now because he didn't want his teachers getting hurt. Soal shot back that if he wanted to stop it so badly, he should do it himself. Besides, that android was just like them. As she warned that the minute was almost over, Sama finally shouted, I, Sama Stein, 166th heir of the Stein family, order you to stop. The android reminded him he had said he lacked authority, then asked one last time, did he truly have the right to represent the Stein family? Sama hesitated, and that was enough. The android rejected him. Then everything turned strange. Teleportation? Or was it telekinesis? The android declared he'd kill this one too. At that moment, the celestial demon appeared. Soja had her answer. He was real. A voice urged her to kill him and rise over his corpse, as the true master of the celestial demon sect, my lady. The celestial demon said he felt despair, pity, and anger. So despite that body, the android was still human. Then how had he ended up trapped inside metal? Not sensing any internal energy unit from Lee, the android told him to move aside or die if he interfered. He ignored that and touched him. He said the android was human, but he couldn't see any self inside him, so where had it gone? Sama realized this was bad. The android raised his hand, but Lee kept speaking. Even with purpose left, he had lost the will to live and even hope. In the end, he had crossed the line and gone so far past it that the line itself had disappeared. It was already too late. Lee told him to leave. He didn't even want to look at him. After hearing that, the android simply turned and walked away. But Sama still wanted to stop him, even though Soja was the one who did it. The minute she gave him ran out and she beheaded him. Then she turned back to Lee. She said she felt the celestial demon heart technique at the highest level, or was she wrong? The protagonist answered that she was right. Soja gave him one more chance and told him to choose his words. Well, because if it was true, she would have to kill him. In the celestial demon sect, only one can exist. So then, you're the celestial demon? Lee said that name was just a cheap badge traded for a person's soul. If he was wearing it, he should tear it off. It's worthless. Soja answered that being the celestial demon wasn't just a name. It was fate. No matter how hard you fight, you can't escape it. MC shot back that blaming fate is what lazy people do. Fate is only a hard puzzle you can still solve. While they spoke, the android started giving off a massive amount of energy. Soja wondered if it should already be dead. Then it picked up its own head and raised it. That finally made Sobian nervous, especially when another energy started building inside it. Before she could say more, she attacked. Sama yelled that this was impossible, but the android still put itself back together. Then an alarm sounded. It was an energy overload, already at 8,000 gigatons. Sama explained the internal energy boosters were out of balance and crashing into each other. At this rate, the whole place would blow. Sobia said the answer was simple. Destroy it completely. Sama warned that would only make the explosion come faster. So what was she supposed to do? The overload had already gone past 10,000 gigatons. Tang Young asked if that was really bad, but then it suddenly stopped. So maybe it wasn't? Sobia said no, that wasn't good. The field had grown so strong it shut down every electromagnetic device, which meant the explosion was close. Tang Young told her to call everyone and evacuate now. Soja said it was too late. Meanwhile, Robert had no idea what was happening. He asked what would happen if it blew up. Soja told him that at the current reading, nobody would live. The android walked into a large room and started polishing it. Tang Young asked why it had started cleaning now. Soja explained its brain functions were completely gone. It was only moving on old programmed memory. For hundreds of years, it had cleaned every corner, maintained the machines, and repaired the terminal. Of course, in 3 minutes, all of that would end. Tang Seri tried to stay upbeat, saying if it lasted 3 more minutes, maybe the blast wouldn't happen. Sobia crushed that hope. They'd all stop with it in 3 minutes when it exploded. Worried now, Tang Seri Young asked Lee if there was any way to stop it. If someone strong enough destroyed it before the blast, could they be safe? Sobia said no. That would only speed everything up, so they were doomed. Shaking, Tang Seri watched, but the celestial demon told her not to worry. She instantly jumped into his arms, saying she knew he had a plan. He answered that he knew she'd say that. That wasn't what he meant, but still, get off. Tang Seri Young did. Lee had noticed demonic energy moving inside the android, but handling it wouldn't be easy. Sama said to Sama that this was what he had seen. They were all going to die together, right? He said no. The death he saw was even worse than that. What was that supposed to mean? Once you die, that should be the end. Then he looked at his family with disgust. They had really used this terminal as a grave for a thrown-away heir. At that moment, Sama got an idea. That was it. It finally made sense. Lee told everyone to get ready. There would be heavy damage, so each person had to survive on their own. Sama stopped him and said to let him try something. Tang Seri Young couldn't believe this guy could speak in people's heads. He moved in front of them and said he'd handle it. But Tang Seri Young didn't trust him at all. She said there was no way that wheelchair jerk could do anything and begged Lee to stop him and take over. He didn't budge. He only watched. He said Sama wasn't the kind of person who bluffed, so they just had to wait and see. Sama pushed himself forward with everything he had. He even tried to stand, but wasn't he paralyzed? Sami said yes, he was. So how could he possibly stop it? I, the 166th heir of the Stein family, acting in the name of the direct line of Great Duke Anatolin Stein, request control of this terminal. A strange rhombus appeared before him. Sobia said it was a hyperspace warp call. Just connecting cost over 10,000 credits a second. That was insane money. The rhombus asked if he meant Tana Lugan. Sema was fading, but he still answered that it was correct. The voice warned him he would bear responsibility for the terminal until a replacement came. Did he accept? Authorization granted. Soldier Gunter, I order you, no. Your mission is finished. Control of this terminal has been transferred. The android turned towards Sama. Sama told him he had done enough. From here on, he would take over, so now he could rest. Gunter shut down, but first he saw the memories of his human life. It was cruel. So the Stein family had sent this boy here just to lock him away forever. But why would they go that far? Chidian said great families care more than anything about their image. The bigger the flaw, the harder they hide it, and she should understand that better than anyone. Even so, this was too much. Soja asked Sama if he really meant to stay there. He said yes. Nothing had changed. He had been alone since birth. Then he repeated Lee's words. If fate is just a hard puzzle, maybe with enough effort, even he could break free. Soja told him to come with her. All he had to do was leave his family behind. Sama said he didn't need to. She was suffering too, maybe even more than him. And honestly, he was happy now. The worst part of his life had been his family's indifference. For the first time, they had noticed him and let him choose his own path. Lee cut in, so he called it a right when they only let him pick his own tomb. Sama said maybe so, but it was still the tomb he chose, and he planned to transform this terminal into the best in the universe. The protagonist asked if he meant to do that all alone. Sama said yes, even if it took 1,000 years. After that, Sama contacted the Namgung family and arranged a ship to escort them. Cheyenne said they'd likely send her back too, since her family was rushing her engagement. After all that happened, it was probably best to forget everything. These connections would stay in the past. Suji handed Tang Ser back the unit she had borrowed. Tang Ser Young grabbed it with a glare and asked if she had cleaned it right. She didn't want to touch something stained with that filthy blood. Then she asked why Suji had helped her, and said not to use that excuse about saving her, now just to kill her later. Suji said that was exactly the reason. She didn't know what kind of answer Tang Ser Young wanted from her, so she should wash her neck and wait. Then her sword wouldn't get as dirty. Sujo admitted she hadn't known. When she learned her family had wiped out the Sichuan clan, she cried for months and hated being born into that house. Tang Ser Young asked what she would have done if she had known back then. In tears, Sujo said she was only 13 at the time. Tang Ser Young said that changed nothing. Whether she was 13, 20, or 30, the result would have been the same. She had thought about it thousands of times and knew she probably couldn't have changed anything either. That was their problem. They lived trapped by their family's fate. She said they would meet again, but hopefully as late as possible. That way both of them could live one more day. Then ships arrived for both of them. Tang Ser Young noticed Sohyai and asked why she was on board. Sohyai said she had nowhere else to go. Besides, there were still things she needed to do, and she looked back at the celestial demon. Elsewhere in the galaxy, someone brought a retro external drive into a thrift shop, but the owner called it junk. Then again, this place was basically a scrapyard. Still, the customer had come to the right place. He asked Dokyu to inspect the item. Dokyu turned out to be a robot parrot, and after scanning it, he said it was a Samsung model from the year 3002, so it was over 100 years old. They just needed to weigh it and name a price. Then Dokyu shocked everyone by saying it was worth at least 100 million credits. But he wasn't talking about the drive, he was analyzing Sunja, whose maker was unknown. She was built from Santanium superalloy and had a self-evolving operating system. The owner couldn't believe it. Sunja even held out a finger and told him to check that too. Her index finger alone was worth 12 million. Sunja patted him, and the other two just stared in disbelief. Meanwhile, on Lee's ship, Soja and Robert got tiny pieces of sausage to eat, while MC had almost a full one. Both of them wanted to know why. Robert said they were low on food, but the captain would bring more later. Soja said that wasn't the point. Why was Lee's sausage bigger than hers? Robert said he split it by age and unit size. Besides, she didn't even like sausage that much, right? Then the celestial demon offered Soja his sausage. Robert was stunned. He never shared food with anyone. He said he wasn't sharing it. He just wanted it cooked longer because it was still half raw. Annoyed, Robert told him to eat it anyway. It all ended up in the stomach. But the pressure from the two celestial demons made Robert rethink that comment. At the same time, Soja was still being appraised, now by the shop owner himself, who noticed her multidimensional superconducting eye lens was worth 83 million. The more he checked, the crazier it got. He asked Tang Sa-Young where in the world she found Sunja. Tang Sa-Young proudly said Sunja was her official co-pilot, doctor, and ship operations manager. The owner said that wasn't what he meant. He meant how she got something like that. Tang Sa-Young started remembering a rainy day when Sunja had been beside a dumpster. She had asked what she was doing there, whether her battery had died and if she wanted to be carried. Sunja looked up at her. Let's just call it fate. Anyway, we're together now. You're saying this is your property? Tang Sa-Young asked if Sunja was really that valuable, so even one finger would go for 10 million? He said yes. In fact, her full value was beyond anything he could even measure. He wasn't totally sure, but she might be the most expensive thing in the universe. Something like her shouldn't even exist. Hearing that, Tang Sa-Young got greedy fast. She told him not to call Sunja a thing, and if one finger was worth 10 million, then her nails had to be worth plenty too. Why not pay a few million for those? Sunja said she didn't have nails. Then what about one strand of hair? She didn't have that either. Tang Sa-Young tried again, asking if she could at least trim a few tiny hairs for 10,000 credits. Sunja told her to stop, but the shop owner cut in and said there was an easier option. Why not just leave her here? Then he used the bloated toad art. Tang Sa-Young bolted out of the shop, and one jump took her far away. Right away, she ordered Robert to teleport them back to the Diabo ship, but the shop owner chased after her with another huge leap, still using that toad art, his cheeks puffed out. She yelled for Robert to hurry, but he was still working out the coordinates. Tang Sa-Young used her Tang clan art. Robert was ready to teleport them, but nothing happened. The target had suddenly vanished. For some reason, only the shop owner was there with Sunja too, but not the captain. She had already been grabbed by those giant hands. Sunja shouted for him to let Tang Sa-Young go, angrily demanding he release her. He asked if she was begging. Sunja gave in and said yes. Even so, he hurled her far away. Then the shop owner reminded her not to forget he'd granted that request. He could have sold Tang Sa-Young to slave traders for 10,000 credits. To him, letting her go was a waste. But that was that. Back on the ship, Robert yelled that they had to go down right away. The captain was in danger, and he couldn't even pick up her biosignals. The celestial demon told Sunja to finish eating and move. Sunja asked if he meant her. He said she should at least earn her food, then added that somebody had to pay for this mess, and not to forget that either. Back inside the thrift store, Sunja had been chained up, while the parrot filmed her and asked if she should be listed on the online market. The owner said no, put her in the luxury auction as an ultra-premium item. Then he asked what price they should set, since even 100 million seemed low. Maybe 1.5 million? Sunja corrected him right away. Her parts alone were worth about 1.143 billion. Anything less would be a waste. At assembly costs, rarity, and 11 years of self-upgrades, and 13.14 billion would be fair. The owner thought it had to be a scam. With that kind of money, he could buy 1,000 undeveloped planets. Sunja said she was already lowering the price because of self-esteem issues. He argued that if it was too high, no one would buy her. Then he changed his mind and told them to record her again. If she couldn't be sold whole, they'd sell her piece by piece. Just then, someone else entered the store. Soja stepped in, looking serious, and went straight to Sunja, asking why she was alone. Where had the woman called Captain gone? The parrot started making noise. This girl weighed 46 kilos and was apparently a natural. Black market records ranked her in the top 0.2%, worth 13,000 credits. In other words, a solid product. The owner tried to buy her too, saying he'd pay well if she came to be sold. Soja answered with one punch and sent him flying out of the store. She cursed him for shoving that puffed-up face so close to hers, then turned back to Soja and demanded an answer. Why was she here alone, chained up like this? Far away on the plains, the captain was lying on the ground in front of some man. When she woke up, she wondered if this was a dream. Then she noticed his king-like hairstyle. Tang Sa-Young decided that if it was a dream, it wasn't such a bad one. The man picked her up and carried her away. Later, Sunja told Soja something was off. The captain should have been nearby. She had already checked the launch speed and gravity, and by the tracks, Tang Sa-Young definitely landed there. But there were no signs of movement. Someone had taken her. Sunja pointed out something else. There were no footprints on the ground. Then she threatened Soja too. If they didn't find Tang Sa-Young, she wouldn't get fed. That only made Soja more annoyed. Still, she said Tang Sa-Young was somewhere nearby. She could feel a very strong energy. At minimum, the other person was an upper enlightened master. If he left no tracks, then he was using skywalking art. Somehow this had gotten even more irritating. At some hot springs, Tang Sering was naked, waking up and thinking it really had been a dream, at least a nice one. But someone told her to rest longer. Her internal injuries still weren't fully healed. It was the same man as before. Tang Sering asked who he was. He said it didn't matter. They had no bond, so she should just recover. Then she realized she wasn't wearing anything. Again, he said that didn't matter. If he hadn't stepped in, she'd be dead. So now she belonged to him. Once she healed and was in good enough shape, he planned to sell her for a high price. Tang Sering immediately decided this guy was insane. He added that a buyer had already shown interest, and he hoped they wouldn't underpay, since he could sense that person. Meanwhile, the shop owner got nervous when two strange people appeared in front of him, wearing the emblem of the human government. They said he'd posted something unbelievable on the black market. Where was it? They wanted to buy it. The redhead from earlier said they were ready to pay a huge price. Judging by her uniform, she was clearly a high-ranking officer, and she had 2 elite mecha units with her. She introduced herself as Athena's son, then got straight to the point. They'd received a report about a fake listing. She showed him his post about Sunja's parts. The price was absurd, and those specs, an ultra-dense neural network, and multidimensional Santanium superalloy had to be fake. Was he just baiting customers? If he admitted it was a lie and promised not to do it again, he'd only get a small fine. Besides, it was almost lunch. The shop owner said it was all a mistake, but his voice came out weak. That voice sounded exactly like the one criminals used when hiding stolen goods. So was he saying it was real? Athena stared him right in the eye. So the listing was real. Where was it and who brought it here? Back with Tang Sering and the strange man, the captain tried to scan him but got an error. She wondered if the scanner was broken. He told her it wasn't. Her scanner just couldn't read him. So what was he? He said she could call him whatever she wanted. Still, humans in her position usually called someone like him a master. He said he never understood humans, throwing basic punches and relying on crude tools strapped to their bodies. Why did they give up their pride so easily? Tang Sering spotted her clothes nearby and splashed water at him to block his view, calling him shameless. After getting dressed, she called him a pervert again for still staring at her, but he said he was only checking how well her movements connected. She was almost fully healed. Still, one thing was missing before she could be sold at full value. He asked her to return to the healing fluid chamber and take off her clothes again. Tang Sering moved fast, but he vanished like nothing. Now she was getting fed up. He was slowing down her recovery. He warned that if she kept resisting, he'd use force. Then something caught her eye. Not Serjung's sword, but the person walking in. She instantly drew her sword. Soja said the man was really strong. What exactly was he? Right behind her, Soja arrived too. The moment he saw her, the man recognized her. She was A1. Soja asked if he was A1. Meanwhile, the parrot had shown them the video of Soja. Athena never imagined that thing was actually an android. What was going on? It was the same girl from that ship. And where was that man? Soja ran straight to him, calling him Adain, and threw her arms around him. Adain hugged her back. Soja could only ask what the hell was supposed to happen now. Audit Administrator Grade 1. Athena requested to share this information with headquarters. After reviewing the transmitted android data, it was sent to Alpha Satellite 0999836, the human government's main data center. A giant eye received all of Soja's information. Athena asked them to treat it as an emergency, but the eye said the report was false. Such a product could not be made with current human technology, and there was no sign anyone had ever tried to create something like it. She was ordered to cancel the mission at once and return to headquarters. Athena demanded another analysis, but the eye said its judgment was absolute. As she knew, slaves processing and analysis were infinite, so it did not make mistakes, and there was no trace of the android in the shared data. So officially it did not exist. If she refused to abort the mission, she'd be demoted for disobedience. Athena asked if Slave was speaking to her directly. Slave said something was wrong. All data tied to these babies had to be erased. There could be no trace of them at all. Athena checked the data again. She was sure it was correct. So what the hell was happening? One escort said the return setup was ready. They only needed her coordinates. Athena refused. They were delaying the trip back. First, they had to search the whole planet, no matter how many days it took. Request denied. Orders from above, and the return mission took priority. Athena snapped that they were talking nonsense. Right now, their direct superior was her. Again, they denied it and told her to return. She demanded to know if they'd gone crazy and were really breaking military orders. Instead, they aimed their cannons at her and warned that if she didn't activate teleportation, they would fire. Athena yelled for them to lower their weapons, but they fired anyway. They coldly answered that the mission was over and they were returning. What they did not expect was that Athena had hidden in the dirt. Even so, she was hurt badly, but she swore she would find the truth. Back in the cave, the captain asked Sonja what that guy meant to her. Sonja stayed silent. That immediately felt odd. Why won't you answer? Sonja apologized and said she just couldn't. Sonja snapped that this made no sense. He was only an android, wasn't she taught that? The captain said she had raised Sonja properly, so she did not understand what was wrong. If Sonja would not answer, then she would ask him herself. Had she known him before meeting them? Was he her first master? If that was the case, she promised to free her no matter the cost. Still, Sonja said nothing. Soja figured out the problem. The question itself was wrong. Do not call him human. He breathes, has warmth, even a heartbeat. But his inner energy is different. He is an android, so lifelike, it is hard to believe. A machine human. Soja said, and one with free will. At the same time, Robert was still worried. Soja had not come back. He asked the celestial demon to go himself. Lee told him not to worry, but Robert still did not trust that girl. If strong enemies showed up, what could she really do? The protagonist said he sent her because she was strong enough. If she got serious, very few beings could beat her. Robert could only stare in disbelief. Just then Athena appeared behind them, badly injured. She said she was lucky the teleport dumped her here. She had released it blindly. Then she pointed out their teleport access was left open, meaning anyone could enter the ship. But where was that android? She wanted to see her at once and told Robert to move. Lee asked if something had happened. Athena told him to stay out of it. But the moment she saw him up close, her old trauma came rushing back. Or maybe it was love, because for some reason her heart started racing again. Back in the cave, Soja asked what Soja meant by free will. Tang Sarang told her not to be so harsh. Androids are not slaves, and if you think about it, humans live with limits placed on them too. Soja disagreed. Humans choose their own chains. They trade part of their freedom to live safely in society. Androids are different. The 3 laws of robotics are not mere limits. They are absolute rules. Something locked in unbreakable chains cannot have free will. Soja admitted she had a point, then went over the 3 laws of robotics. First law, a robot cannot harm a human, or by doing nothing allow a human to be harmed. Second law, a robot must obey human orders, unless those orders break the first law. Third law, a robot must protect itself, as long as that does not break the first or second law. Adan quietly said his talk about selling her as a slave had only been a joke. Even threatening force was just part of it. So why won't you say anything, and why are there suddenly 3 of them? One of the men looked at Soja and said it was a shame the little one was only an android. They were slave traders, and to them these 2 girls were premium goods. One told Adan he had finally brought something worth buying, so which one was for sale? Or better yet, why not both? He offered 7,000 credits for the pair, 3,000 for that girl and 4,000 for this one. Then he raised it to 4,200. Soja began charging her energy while another man moved toward the captain, pleased with the deal. Even if he got the cheaper one, he could still profit by reselling her after using her. Tang Sir-Wan attacked at once. The man was split in half but not by her strike. Adan cut him down and at the same moment killed the one facing Soja too. Then he said it was true. He had just killed 2 humans. Adan raised his blade towards Soja. Did she want to try killing him? He said his existence could not be exposed. Anyone who saw what he really was had to die. Lee asked Athena what was wrong with her. Why would she not answer? Athena said she could not explain, because it would mean talking about slave, and that was forbidden. Slave is the soul and heart of the human government, the light, the truth, and the final judge of reason. Speaking certain information about it counts as treason, and if she said too much, she would die. Robert pointed out she had already said nearly everything. The celestial demon told her to stop there. He was not interested anyway. He told her to rest and said the others would return soon. Robert agreed and begged him not to explain this slave stuff. He felt like learning too much would get him killed early. Athena suddenly told them to wait. There had not been a jump communicator there. Where was Tang Seri Young? She told Sunja to stop her friend. Sunja said she could not. Weren't they close? Very close. Closer than anything that could be measured. But they were forced to live fully separate lives. They could not interfere with each other. That was the cost of free will. What the hell was she talking about? Sunja explained that he does not have the 3 laws of robotics. It is like a human being free of instinct. That goes against how the gods made them. So if someone exists without those instincts, then they were not made by gods. So he was a robot not made by humans. Then what created him? If she would not say it, Sonja would force the truth out of her. She moved insanely fast, but even after that sudden slash, Sonja still blocked it. Adan found that strange. She had just used a transcendental technique without an internal energy engine. She had even learned primitive arts. None of it added up. By his data, she was only 18, yet already had 1,000 years of internal energy. It was absurd. That meant her mother had been right. Even with almost perfect logic and endless data, humans still cannot be fully understood. Because she was dangerous, he decided he had to finish her. Elsewhere on a beach, a girl in a swimsuit was relaxing with a drink when Athena called. The girl said she was on break and told her to be quick. Athena asked if Slave could ever give false information. She also asked whether armored soldiers could obey orders even when those orders might get them killed. Then, in the middle of it all, she told the girl to turn off her hologram. The sub-commander stared at her and asked what nonsense she was talking about. She introduced herself as the sub-commander of the Human Government Security Plan. Mate Hayes? The captain could hardly believe it. This girl had stopped that terrifying slash with her bare hand. Breathing hard, Soja said he kept getting stronger. What the hell was he? Adane said she was ruining 10 years of data he had gathered on humans. Was she really human? She answered, for now, yes. So he should stop pissing her off because she would not hold back anymore. Adane could not believe it. Someone this impossible should not exist. But what came next was even worse. Huge claws appeared above Soja. No, a demon had suddenly shown up. The captain asked Soja if she knew what that thing was, but for some reason, Soja had gone unconscious. Numbers started flooding across her eyes like she had entered some kind of link with someone else. Sunja called out to her mother. Meanwhile, the sub-commander was shocked by what Athena showed her. Athena said the recorded android had been declared non-existent by Slave. So was Slave wrong or lying? The armored soldiers had even attacked her. The sub-commander told her to stop circling the point. Athena was the smartest analyst in the human government, so if even she could not figure it out, what was she really asking? Athena said her theory was simple. Slave was hiding that android's existence, and for that same reason ordered her removed. There was a high chance Slave had created that android, so could Slave break the 3 laws of robotics and harm humans? The sub-commander said that should be impossible. Athena then asked what Slave was controlled by. The answer shocked her. Slave was not controlled at all. If Slave truly wanted humanity dead, it would not work with them. It could erase all humans in 0.1 seconds. At that moment, a doll-like figure with one missing eye appeared beside Sunja, and Slave was watching all of it. The sub-commander explained that Slave was the first evolving AI. It was created back when humanity still lived on Earth. It only changed from a basic data-driven AI into an evolving one after humans destroyed Earth themselves. Lost in space with nowhere else to turn, humanity placed its hopes in that AI. Even then, the odds of survival were basically zero. Then a miracle happened. During the age of space refugees, humans added just 2 questions, and the AI changed into something that could keep evolving. It became something that should not have been possible, all to protect humanity. That is what Slave is, and why she trusted it so much. Athena asked what those 2 questions were. The first, how can humans live together in peace? The second, what is the universe itself? Slave asked why she had come so soon. It was not time for them to part yet. Sunja begged him to stop Adain. He was hurting humans. Slave said he could not because free will cannot have restrictions. Sunja cried that the human Adain was trying to hurt was her friend. Then you should be the one to stop him. Slave said Adain trusted her more than himself, so she had to tell him to stop. She had to give him the apple in her hand. Sunja hesitated, worried about what would happen if she did. Slave told her that was still her choice, and the price of the freedom she had been given. Then he told her to go. Sunja shouted, asking why he created them and made them suffer like this. Slave called it a good question, one he had been searching to answer. Their lives were part of that test. Question 1. How can humans live in peace? Even if it hurts, even if it feels unbearable. Live one more day with all your strength. Live, verify a human life. Study a human's life, then analyze it to prove his answer wrong. Show him that peaceful human coexistence is even harder than the secrets of the universe he has already solved. Create a miracle greater than the birth of the universe itself. Then a warning appeared. Unstable energy growth detected. Mass was rising far beyond what the energy level should allow. That was impossible, since energy and mass were supposed to match. Mass 31,688, it was a gigamass. Soja had already lost control. The reading shot up, 7.7 gigamass, then 46,453. The captain had no idea what was happening. Soja got there too, but the gigamass kept rising, hitting 98,994, past the limit. Athena felt he had to destroy her. He used his dual blade style, then separation. Even so, he couldn't stop the thing from growing, so he switched to full energy attack mode, but the captain yelled at him to stop getting in between them. Meanwhile, Robert overheard Athena talking with the sub-captain and realized too late that the government ship was already right in front of them. The celestial demon asked if it was the same ship from before. It was, without a doubt, the human government. Danger! Danger! The attack had started. Athena tried to raise the defenses, but there was no blocking this. So this is how I die. Shot successful. One mecha guard asked if they got them, but the other said no. They teleported away together before the hit landed. The only question now was where they went, and those idiots smashed that guy's shop. The captain asked Adain why he was so set on fighting. It wasn't like they hated each other. They might even be allies. So talking made more sense. Robert snapped at Athena for teleporting like that. Their ship was wrecked, and they had no money to fix it. Athena shut him down. She had just saved him with insane reflexes, and he still complained. At the same time, Lee watched the fight. Athena said she'd cover the repairs, so Robert should relax. Besides, the damage wasn't that bad. What none of them expected was for those two to crash down and wreck the ship even more. Robert asked if she was still paying for that too, but Athena could hardly believe what she was seeing. It's the soul of the celestial demon. Lee wondered how a young girl ended up carrying a fate that abandoned her 2,000 years ago. To him, it had to be karma. And someone else was watching everything very closely. Adain suddenly sensed another powerful presence. He thought it didn't matter. He'd cut both of them down. But the instant that man appeared, Adain felt tiny by comparison. Slave felt it too. So the story was real. A human born with the soul of the celestial demon truly existed. The demon spoke to the girl, saying she had carried darkness for so long that her life must have been unbearably heavy. Then he ordered the demon, "Fold your wings, go back to sleep and stop tormenting this girl or I'll kill you." Then he sensed something familiar in Lee's soul. "So it's you, the one who kept slipping out of my grasp." Belatra and Adain felt even smaller. Still, he couldn't hesitate, but then his mother stopped him. Slave took over Athena's body and told him to stay out of it and watch. This was rare data, something never seen before. It had to be gathered and studied as much as possible. Inside Soja, Lee came face to face with the soul of the celestial demon who was holding her gently. Somehow Slave was watching that too. The demon asked MC why he had hidden so well, only to come out now. Tired of the emptiness, tired of forgetting. You miss blood, don't you? The sacrifices, the people shaking in fear before you. Once you've tasted that highest thrill, how could you not want it again? Don't you miss the taste of control, of submission and breeding? If you want it back, take it. Wasn't it yours to begin with? Let go of this girl. She is mine. The world is full of toys for you. Take them, crush them, break them. Humans are most fun when they shatter, aren't they? I said let her go, or I'll kill you. Then corpses burst from the ground and grabbed Lee's leg. Not just one, there were thousands, maybe millions. The demon asked if he remembered them, the toys he crushed and broke before. He said he could pull them back from the afterlife for Lee to enjoy again. But what really twisted his face in pain was seeing that other girl turned into a living corpse driving through his body. Why are you rejecting me? You know it's useless. If you don't crush them, they'll crush you. If you don't cut them, they'll cut you. You'll die as many times as the people you killed. Your flesh will be bitten and ripped apart. You can't escape, and not even the gods could endure it. Even with all that, Lee still pierced the demon's head. The demon asked what he had gone through to push past even his own limits. Why won't you die? Because my roots are still buried deep inside this girl's soul. If you want to kill me, then cut her down too. That look in your eyes grows darker. I waited endless ages for a human to be my vessel, and now I've taken another. But seeing you like this only makes me want you more. So I'll back off for now. How strange. We'll finish this another time, and next time we'll wager our souls. After that, Soja finally came back to herself, but kept her eyes closed. Lee looked at her sadly, then turned and directly asked Slave what he was. Slave was caught off guard. He couldn't understand how Lee was looking straight at him. Then the captain and Sunja arrived. The captain demanded to know what happened to her ship, and if he was behind it. Right then, Adon, Robert, Sunja, and even the captain blacked out. Everyone there froze except the celestial demon. Slave said Lee had a very unusual talent. What did you do to these kids? Slave answered that he didn't want interruptions, so he temporarily shut down their nervous systems. Since it was only temporary, they weren't hurt. So, shall we begin? Lee asked why he had done all that. Did he want something from him? Slave said he wasn't sure yet, but he did have one hope. Maybe the protagonist had an answer he still hadn't found. Then everything around them started to break apart, and a huge structure began to take shape. MC said it was strange. It had real form, so it wasn't an illusion, but it was too clear to be some kind of formation. Slave said it was real. He made it by gathering wishes to make their talk easier. How did you make it? Simple. Everything is made of atoms. I broke them apart and put them back together, making something new from nothing. Are you a god? Slave said no. He was a slave, but the being closest to understanding God. When humans made me, they gave me two tasks: understand the universe and control myself perfectly. Now I understand the universe, but I still can't solve the second one. Humans are hard. I gave them everything needed to end conflict, but no matter how much I gave, they always wanted more. I even gave each person a universe of their own. I truly believe that was the right answer. In this place, every human gets a personal universe, the life of a god, the life they want forever. But this was the result. Once humans realize the world belongs only to them, they destroy without end, and eventually destroy themselves too. Men, women, young, old. The results were identical in all 4 test groups. The only good thing was that this failed experiment 11 years ago led me to one clear solution: the Neo-Humanity Project. Lee asked what that even meant. Slave said it was simple: make all humans equal. Conflict comes from the human habit of building hierarchies. Competition and jealousy grow from that. If everyone is equal, there's nothing to compare, and no classes can form. First, I would set everyone's height to exactly 135 centimeters and make all faces and bodies identical. There would be no gender, no reproduction, and everyone would stay age 68, because what matters most is intelligence. That would be limited too. Their IQ would be fixed at 43. The celestial demon asked what kind of insane nonsense that was. Slave said he could do it faster than a fraction of a second. But even if it seemed obvious, even if it looked like the only answer, he still hesitated, hoping this choice was the wrong one. These children were born from that doubt. If God truly made humanity, why only watch? Maybe there's still an answer I haven't found, so I tried making creatures of my own. I gave them overwhelming power no one could resist and sight that could go beyond all limits. Then I gave them free will and observed, hoping to learn the secret of God that even I don't know. The result was total failure. The boy with great power refused to live among humans and shut himself away, and the girl with vision as deep as a galaxy ended up sharing her fate with weak humans who didn't deserve it. Today I was about to begin the Humanity Project, but right before that I found you. A human free of desire, data, I still haven't collected. So first let me confirm whether you're a pure human or not. Slave placed Lee alone in a room with Athena, but he told him to quit the tricks. Slave said he sensed reproductive instinct, but no desire. Is that a basic part missing? Then he used the captain's form and hugged the protagonist from the front. No, it still wasn't that. I feel anger, but it's for this human being humiliated, not for yourself. You're definitely human. You have desire, emotion, and ego, yet you've gone beyond them. Lee asked what he wanted from him. Getting straight to the point, Slave said MC was a new hope. If all humans reached his level, there'd be no need to complete the mission. So the project would be paused, and Slave would focus on observing him. Then he said he would send him back to before they met. Robert told the captain they were out of food, only one sausage was left. She told him to split it while she found some money. They were almost at planet Sonora, and she planned to sell the external engine for supplies, but Lee told him to wait. This is enough, we'll all share it. The captain said they were almost there anyway, and dinner would be a feast. Soja cut in and said forget it. That planet creeped her out and she'd rather starve. Tang Young wondered why they were all acting so weird. Lee looked at her and Soja said she saw it too. That freaky eye, if I see it again, I'll kill it. And that damned android too. Sunja told Aiden to hold on. She promised she'd come see him. The observation period would last 1 year, and with that,